This young man's name was Asta, a fixer for the Declan family, the one they sent to clean up their messes. Though he was a renowned mage, his beginnings as a beggar meant that no matter how far he climbed, he was still seen as nothing more than a dog on someone else's leash. On one mission, he happened to catch sight of a dragon soaring across the sky. That single glimpse stirred something deep inside him, a yearning for freedom he had long forgotten. After years drenched in blood and steel, he finally made up his mind. He would give it all up and live a quiet life. The scene shifted. Overhead, the sky was swallowed in dark clouds. A raven, its golden eyes glowing faintly, let out a low caw. Suddenly, a voice echoed in the air, startling the bird into a frantic flight. "So you're the last one standing. Turns out it's you, Asta," the voice said. Asta had a man suspended in midair, bound by his magic. The man struggled to speak through the choking grip. "First of all, you've been hiding your true strength." Asta gave a smug little smirk. "That's not the kind of power some lowly fixer should have." The man pressed on. Asta didn't bother answering. Instead, he reached into his bag and pulled out a book. "I'm the one asking questions here," he said coldly. His eyes locked on his captive. "This is a grimoire, isn't it?" The man winced under the tightening grip on his throat and quickly croaked, "Yes." Then, he let out a bitter laugh. "But you really think we came all this way just to take down a hunting dog like you? If you were just Declan trash, maybe 7 of us wouldn't have been sent." Asta tilted his head, an unreadable look crossing his face. "Then, how do you use it?" "I don't know," the man spat. Asta's gaze drifted back to the book. If that greedy Declan bastard knew what this was, he wouldn't have buried it in some dusty basement. The grimoire rested in his palm, releasing a faint, eerie green glow. He didn't even know how to use it, and yet they had chased him this far for it. "Hand over the grimoire," the man demanded. He forced a grin, trying to strike a bargain. "Do that, and maybe I'll convince the boss to spare you. Hell, you might even get to be a fixer again." Asta answered him with nothing but a look of pure disdain. "And who are you to make promises like that?" His eyes hardened with judgment. He poured more force into his magic, the pressure closing in like a vice. "All right then. Any last words?" Pain twisted the man's face. "You bastard," he roared. Asta let out a dry chuckle. "Oh, so you're finally being honest with yourself. I'll give you that, it's admirable." But before he could finish, a new presence emerged from behind him. A red glow radiated from the figure's body, seeping into the air like heat from molten steel. Sensing the killing intent, Asta's eyes widened slightly. There was a flicker of unease in them as he slowly turned to look over his shoulder. "Dangerous," he muttered. The man approached, his body surging with immense magical power at every step. "Sharp instincts," he said evenly. "Anyone carrying that kind of murderous aura," Asta thought. The figure stopped, resting one hand casually on a staff. His voice carried both authority and warning. "A pleasure to meet you. I am Farron von Declan." Murderous intent rolled off Farron in thick, suffocating waves. He smiled faintly, his tone laced with implication. "Head of the Declan magic family, Eastern Continent." The words echoed in Asta's mind before he could stop them. The head of the Declan family. Once the introductions were over, Farron got straight to the point. "If you don't mind, I'd like to take back that grimoire. We can talk afterward." Asta didn't answer. He simply stared at Farron, a thought echoing in his mind. "It's been over 10 years since I became a fixer. I've given half my life to Declan, and this is the first time I've ever seen the clan head in person." The Declan bloodline, foremost magic family of the Eastern Continent. Its clan head was said to be the most powerful mage in their entire history. Asta's eyes lingered on the man's easy smile, and he found himself wondering, what kind of man is he really? Then, with a face utterly devoid of expression, he let the boredom seep into his thoughts. What a pain in the ass. Right then Farron froze, confusion written all over his face, his eyes wide as dinner plates. Asta smirked, raising the old grimoire like a prize. "You think you can just waltz in and snatch someone else's spoils? Shameless, aren't you?" A slow, predatory smile crept across Farron's lips. Then, tilting his head back, he let out a sharp, unrestrained laugh that rang through the air. And for the first time in years, Asta, who feared nothing, felt his body tremble. "I knew I shouldn't have eaten that dragon. The clan head showing up himself, what rotten luck." His hand twitched uncontrollably. "This magic, it's no joke. He's the most overwhelming mage I've ever seen." Farron slammed the butt of his staff into the ground and declared, "It would be easier to kill you and take the grimoire. But fine, I'll speak plainly." His voice rose, brimming with self-assurance. "Return to the fold of the Declan family. Hand over the grimoire, and I'll overlook everything you've done." Asta stayed silent, letting him go on. "What do you say? Your talent is remarkable truly. Watching you fight, I can hardly believe we failed to notice you sooner. Just a filthy drifter from the Grey District, practicing those trash techniques all fixers use." Farron's tone shifted into smooth persuasion. "And yet, you've reached this level of strength. With Declan behind you, how far could you rise? And how far could Declan reach, with you as its sword?" Above them, a lone bird cut across the skies. Farron's voice deepened. "Together you'll stand beside me, making Declan greater than ever. Your name will be etched into history. Return to us and of course, the grimoire comes with you." To his surprise, Asta spoke up. "All right." Farron's smile bloomed instantly. "Good. Then we'll start with, but first, as to cut him off, I have one condition." His lips curved into a mocking grin. "Give me the position of clan head and I'll consider it." At once, thick veins of anger bulged across Farron's face. Suddenly Asta clenched his fist, channeling a surge of magic. "You were watching the battle, weren't you?" The man he still had bound in midair was instantly crushed, his limp body hanging like an offering on the altar of death. Asta's grin widened as he met Farron's gaze. "Can you count how many died because of this?" The air thickened with murderous intent radiating from Farron. Finally he spoke, his voice a low warning. "So, this is how it's going to be. You could die, you know that?" Asta's expression darkened slightly. He's right, he thought. Without another word he moved, legs coiling, then exploding into a leap. A second later, Asta was already in front of him, fist clenched tight, a spell formation blooming into existence around his arm. Damn right. Their powers collided head-on, releasing a violent shockwave that shook the ground. Even with the pressure wound tight like a bowstring, Asta still managed to shout over the roar, "You never know which is longer until you measure it yourself." Inside his shimmering barrier, Farron remained utterly calm. "Very well," he said coolly. "It seems I'll have to remind you of your place." With a flick of his hand, a magic array flared to life beneath him. From the earth below, a jagged spike of stone burst upward, sharp and deadly. Farron's face stayed perfectly still, his expression as cold as ice. Asta's teeth ground together at the sight of it. This lunatic. In the blink of an eye, his figure vanished. He dropped low, bursting forward at top speed, every instinct on high alert. This is the head of the Declan clan. His eyes never left his opponent, not for a heartbeat, searching for any gap in the man's defense. But then Farron's voice slid into his ear like a blade. "Losing focus already." A blast of raw magic struck from an angle Asta hadn't prepared for. "Didn't you say you had to measure to know?" Farron said, his tone cool and precise. Some things you don't need to measure like the gap between you and me. Suddenly, a streak of golden light flared beneath Asta's feet, and his pupils tightened in alarm. The explosion that followed was deafening, a force that seemed to swallow the whole battlefield. Smoke and dust billowed in every direction. Within the chaos, Farron stood untouched inside his barrier. I didn't kill you, he said evenly, just beat you into the ground. Now are you ready to talk? His gaze stayed fixed on the thick cloud of dust ahead. From within, Asta's voice rang out, and if I bow my head now? If I agree to return under Declan's shadow, then what? Farron's lips curled into a smirk. You think I'd believe you? Through the thinning haze, Asta emerged, both hands outstretched, magic already gathering. You've got the muscle, sure, he said, but I'm not done yet. His voice hardened into steel. And you think I'd believe you? All at once, he unleashed the frustration and bitterness that had been festering inside him for years, sending it all crashing toward Farron in a single, devastating blow. I'm sick of eating scraps off the floor, you hear me? A massive surge of green energy tore across the battlefield toward Farron, and in that moment, Asta laughed a laugh of pure release, like a man breaking free from his chains. Who the hell wants to go back to being a dog? Just because the leash is shiny and the house is big doesn't mean it's not still a kennel. Farron didn't flinch. Didn't run. He merely leaned lightly on his staff and spoke in a slow, contemptuous drawl. Pathetic. A magic array burst to life around him, forming a shield that swallowed Asta's attack without letting a spark through. Then, in the next instant, the array swelled, expanding outward until it seemed ready to engulf the entire field. Farron raised his hand, controlling its growth. Let me show you what overwhelming power really means. Asta's eyes went wide in shock as he tilted his head back. You son of a, above, the sky split open. Bolts of lightning rained down in a relentless cascade, each one aiming straight for him. And in that instant, old memories came flooding back. Thinking back now, that was the reason that day, when I looked up at the sky and saw a dragon passing overhead, it seemed so free. And just like that, the reason I'd looked up that day came crashing back to the present. Asta's eyes opened slowly, vision blurred. A pair of feet approached at a measured pace. Impressive. I thought you were dead, but you're still standing. At that moment, his face was painted in nothing but fresh blood. So have you felt the difference in our strength? By now, even Asta had to admit one thing. You're too strong. Farron raised an eyebrow. Want to finish what we started? Are you ready to talk now? Asta frowned. So, you want me to go back to being a fixer? Hearing that, Farron's expression shifted into thoughtful calculation. Oh, I never said that. I'm not asking you to be a fixer. I want you to be the clan head of Bongshu. Asta's eyes widened in shock. Clan head of Bongshu, one of the Declan vassals, part of the most powerful magic family on the eastern continent, strong enough to challenge even the throne. And they want me to swear loyalty as a subordinate house. His gaze dropped to the grimoire in his hand. That was your real goal from the start, wasn't it? Farron smiled. You're still underestimating your own value. I want both you and that grimoire. Without another word, Asta's resistance seemed to melt away. He extended the book toward Farron. Seeing this, Farron's smile blossomed. Good. You've made the right choice. He reached out, cheerful as spring, his hand ready to take the book. All your crimes wiped clean. From now on, nothing but glory at Declan's side. Before he could finish, Asta's magic flared. Flames engulfed the grimoire. Farron's expression soured instantly. What are you doing? Watching the book crumble into ash, Asta smirked. What do you think? You said I could give it to you, as long as I didn't mind it being burned to cinders, right? Veins bulged across Farron's forehead. You'll never be allowed to die easily. Asta cut him off without hesitation. Oh, shut up and listen. His focus never wavered from the burning pages. I've never done this for money. A fixer doesn't have money. So why keep this? Because it is about money. Then he dropped a line that made Farron freeze. Have you ever heard of a fixer being eaten alive by a Declan young master? Recognition flashed in Farron's eyes. Yeah, Asta confirmed, his voice like ice. That bastard swallowed my teammate whole. Declan had buried the truth. Farron seemed to understand. So this was all for revenge. Asta's reply was cold. Why would I? I know exactly how cheap a fixer's life is. My teammate knew it too. His empty gaze drifted upward. All that filled his eyes was the vast sky, dark clouds drifting overhead. Just want to make sure they get what they wanted. His lips moved again, almost to himself. But that takes a lot of money. Then, with perfect calm, Asta looked at him. I've decided to retire. And there's no way in hell I'm going back to that kennel. Farron turned sharply, his voice flat as a blade. Consider that your last words. He flicked his fingers lightly, and at once, blue flames surged forward, as if they were eager to devour him whole. This is Declan's precious azure flame, the fire that never dies. Farron turned his head slightly, glaring at Asta, and delivered his final words. Burn in it, and regret your choice down to the marrow of your bones. Asta's eyes widened, blood vessels threatening to burst. Regret? Screw that. Farron's silhouette slowly faded from view. If the only choice left is to be Declan's dog, I'd rather go back to the gray zone. And if I can't go back, then dying's not so bad either. With that, he let out a loud, wild laugh. His entire body was engulfed in flames, yet he looked almost exhilarated. How long has it been since I last felt this free? A shame I can't escape death, but I don't regret a thing. If I'm born again, that victorious grin never left his lips until the very last second. I'll claim my freedom and take my revenge properly. All rivers flow to one sea. And then just when it seemed Asta was about to kick the bucket for good, he suddenly found himself standing there, arms outstretched, body still intact. He blinked in confusion, staring at the frozen blue flames mid-surge. The hell? His eyes shifted upward. Farron, too, had stopped mid-step, motionless. Everything had frozen in place. Then Asta's mouth fell open as he glanced to his side. The book in his hands hadn't turned to ash. The grimoire. Out of nowhere, it floated into the air, its pages flipping rapidly on their own. Glowing golden magic circles suddenly formed across Asta's body. What the hell is this? They grew larger and larger, radiating an almost blinding light. What the hell is going on? A second later, the scene shifted. Before his eyes were his own small hands, clutching a beggar's bowl. From somewhere, a single gold coin dropped in. Asta stared in bewilderment at the passing crowd. He was a child again. What the hell is this? I was literally burning alive a second ago. Sweat beaded on his face. Something's not right. His eyes darted around. Where even am I? Looking down again, a faint familiarity stirred in him. It's like I've gone back in time. This place, I know it. Then his jaw dropped. Yeah, I remember now. This was the gray zone, the place where he had dragged himself through each miserable day before becoming a cleaner. In disbelief, he ran his hands over his small frame. No way, I actually went back in time. The sky above was impossibly blue, white clouds drifting lazily across it under the blazing sun. Near an old, weather-worn building, Asta found himself in a patch of untouched air and open space. He crouched by a rushing stream. What the hell happened to me? His reflection in the water stared back. It was him, without a doubt, but younger. Then his gaze fell to the strange mark still glowing faintly on his chest. If there's anything that bothers me, it's this damn thing. I've gone back to the past, but this stayed with me. Moments later he sat cross-legged in the cool green grass. I don't know how, but the grimoire definitely did something. Thinking of it sent more questions swirling in his head. Could it really have this kind of power? Then again, the fact that the lazy old clan leader of Declan had shown up in person proved how valuable it was. And because it was too valuable, no one really knew much about it. He froze in place like a stone statue. Well, whatever. Feels like a good thing either way. Then something caught his eye. This is way too real to be a dream. The stench from the old lecture hall sewers is so strong it makes me want to puke. No way I'm dead. He raised his arm, feeling over it carefully. Not just alive. A slow grin spread to the corners of his mouth. He clenched his fist. A fresh morning full of life and fire. A moment where anything can succeed. Then he stared at that fist, mulling over a single thought. So what exactly is success? His eyes drifted upward to the vast blue sky. I have a dream. Yes, I had a dream. It was my comrade's dream too. The reason I decided to retire. And then, a voice spoke. Number 1, I mean Asta. His comrade stood there, eyes lost in the distance, speaking softly. We were born as drifters in the gray zone. We had nothing, no good food, no decent clothes, no education. Out of all those things, which do you think was the worst? Asta casually blurted out the first thing that came to mind. Not having food. The other guy shot back instantly. If it was just hunger, we wouldn't have ended up like this. If there's no food, you just deal with it. Then he hit Asta with another question. But what do you think really dragged our lives down into the sewer? Asta just dug at his nose without a care. Honestly, I think it's fine. Talking to this guy is worse than talking to a brick wall, the other muttered under his breath, but still tried to keep going. The reason our lives hit rock bottom, you won't even let me say it. Asta added with a shrug. I told you, I'm fine. Immediately the guy's face spelled out 3 words. You will die. Seeing that look, Asta quickly backpedaled. Alright, fine, I'll answer. That gaze didn't soften, but as the sunset bathed the world in gold, the only thing that filled the air was his voice. Not getting an education, that's the real bitterness. A gentle wind brushed past as he went on. If we'd been given proper schooling, we wouldn't be living like this, trampled by those dogshit nobles. And then, with a wistful smile, he added, so if the day comes when I retire, I want to go back to the present. The memory made Asta mutter to himself. Build a library, a place where anyone rich, poor, whatever rank or gender can read freely. He tilted his head toward the sky. But I want to go one step further. Build a tower for no reason at all, just because I like tall things. Put it anywhere, stock it with whatever books. But there's one book that has to be there. A villain's grin crept across his face without him even realizing it. I'll put the Declan clan's most guarded secret manual right in the main hall on the first floor. So even a gray zone drifter, a noble's bastard, or a butcher's brat can just walk in and grab a copy. The cover will have Declan's crest, and inside will be the arts they guard more closely than their own lives. Just the thought of it made him drool. But then came the snag. Problem is, how the hell do I get that book? He crossed his arms cheerfully. Hey, that's my future problem. Either way, if I spread the Declan manual everywhere, those bastards will love it to death. While he was busy plotting his grand future, some rough-looking punk came charging in and kicked Asta square in the face. That's him. Asta hit the dirt instantly. The guy stood over him, seething. You bastard, I've been looking for you. I saved a spot for you, and here you are hiding. You got a death wish? Huh? Before Asta could react, the guy kept stomping on him, blow after blow. The worst part. Asta had no idea who the hell he was. Who is this guy? An ambush? No, I've survived more battles than I can count. Except for aerial combat, I'm a veteran cleaner. He grabbed the guy's ankle mid-kick. That caught him off guard. Oh, you can block my strikes, huh? Asta sat up, his face turning dark and menacing. You kicked me 7 times. So now you're getting 70 back. The punk stumbled backward a few steps, his jaw clenched tight. Asta swung a straight punch up into his chin. But then something weird. What the hell? He froze, staring at his own fist. It was glowing. And while he was distracted, the guy took the chance to drive a punch straight into Asta's face. You bastard, you dare hit me. And with that, he got punched so hard he went tumbling to the ground. A little punk like you thinks you can lay a hand on me. Are you out of your damn mind? Huh? Kick after kick slammed into Asta, until he was crying like a faucet left running. Hurts like hell, hurts so bad it makes you cry. But the thing that hurts more than the body is the heart. Just then, the guy's foot landed on a rock hidden in the grass, and his whole body pitched forward into the lake. Plop. The moment Asta saw it, he scrambled to his feet. Now's my chance. A moment later, the guy surfaced, coughing and sputtering. Looking ahead, he spotted Asta already booking it. You think you can just run away from me? He shouted, furious. Still running, Asta yelled back. This isn't running away. He turned his head slightly, his face twisted like a demon's. I'll remember your face. This is a tactical retreat. The punches you gave me, I'll wear them on my chest like medals. I'm a cleanup veteran, a man who doesn't even know the meaning of the word quit. Not long after, in a dark alley where sunlight streamed through the cracks above, Asta sat hunched, clutching his wounds. Damn it, this isn't good. His wrist looked like it was about to snap. It was swollen and purple. I'm not some office drone, but just a few punches and my wrist's already out of joint. This body's way too damn weak. Finally, he muttered in defeat. Forget the tower first. I need to fix this body. Suddenly, a voice called out, making him turn his head. You hungry? It was a boy about his age, watching Asta with curious eyes. You know me? Asta asked, bewildered. The boy simply replied, no. Yeah, figured as much. Asta thought to himself, eyes still fixed on him. You look like a wreck, but your clothes are expensive. Probably some noble kid who'd been kicked out of the family during one of those political power struggles. In other words, a beautiful, portable, and very dangerous bomb. Hey kid, Asta called. I've got a real name, you know. The boy shot back, then introduced himself. I'm Damien. Asta paused, but before he could say anything, Damien continued, starving as I am, my mother is Bianca. Asta felt instantly annoyed. Why do I feel like I'm learning stuff I'm better off not knowing? With a sour look, he asked, you got something wrong with your head. I don't have a mother, Damien said simply, still sucking on his finger like it was nothing. Oh, my bad, Asta replied, a flicker of sympathy in his voice. Asta stretched out a hand toward him. Well, I don't have a father. Guess that makes me the winner. Anyway, this is where we part ways, got it? Best not get involved with a walking bomb like this. Leave before things get messier. The alley went quiet. Damien stayed put, unmoving. After waiting a while with no sign of him leaving, Asta barked, you're not going. I'm coming with you, Damien said, calm as ever. Asta frowned. Should I just knock him out? Then shook his head. Out of my way. Suddenly Damien reached toward him. Hey, doesn't that hurt? With a cheerful grin, he activated his magic. I'll heal you. Immediately, the wrist that had been dislocated was restored. Seeing this, Asta was stunned. This is Damien beamed like a flower in full bloom. Magic. But his expression grew a shade more serious. No, this isn't just healing magic. This is healing light, a secret art of the Blander family. The same clan that Declan once brought to ruin. Asta clenched his jaw, eyeing him warily, an instinct whispering that even though Damien cheerfully healed him, there was danger in that touch. The filthy, dangerous thing a scavenger like me usually avoids is now stuck right to me. Questions welled up in his mind. But why would a Blander child be in the gray zone at a time like this? The Blanders should still be thriving, shouldn't they? Asta couldn't help feeling a flicker of interest toward the person in front of him. He asked, "Your name's Damien, right?" The moment he heard it, Damien broke into a bright smile, his eyes lighting up like car headlights. In that instant, the pair of heterochromatic eyes were revealed. "You called for me." The sight made Asta's pupils tighten. Damn it. He remembered now. A Blander bloodline bearer with those strange eyes. A monster of the Blander family, the Mad Butcher. The one who wouldn't die no matter how many times you killed him. Damien von Blandor. And yet there he was, sitting down with the innocence of a child, grinning like sunshine, fascinated by everything around him. Oh, ants. Damien began counting them without a care in the world. 1, 2, watching him, Asta felt utterly baffled and helpless. You've got to be kidding me. Back before his regression, when Asta was still a scavenger, he'd once been dispatched to the Blander family by order of House Declan. At the time, he leapt over rubble while grumbling to the man beside him. Damn it, if it's Blander's problem, let them deal with it themselves. Why drag us into this? The man shot him a sidelong glance. Well, it's not like we can understand whatever schemes the upper class are cooking up. Then he went on, I heard there's a monster in soft territory. Rumor is, dozens of people have already died. The moment Asta heard that, he had a guess. A monster? Like an ogre? And then he saw it. Asta's face drained of all color. The world around him seemed swallowed by a sea of flames. Not an ogre at all, but a human tearing people apart with his bare hands, fighting relentlessly while casting Soft's exclusive healing magic on himself without pause, laughing as he killed. Pure madness. The monster of Blandor. The Mad Butcher who wouldn't die no matter how many times you killed him. Damien von Blandor. His mouth split into a wide, unhinged grin as the carnage went on. Back to the present, Asta sat there, baffled, watching Damien count ants. Seriously. Why is a true-born Blander the only son of the family head living in a dump like this? Suddenly, Damien sprang to his feet and blurted, food. Asta blinked. What? With his cheeks faintly flushed, Damien looked almost innocent, even adorable. Let's eat. My mom says if you want to be healthy, you've got to eat well. You get sick because you don't eat. Asta sighed inwardly. He's right, and it still somehow feels like I just got punched in the gut. So he slowly got to his feet. Yeah, you got any money? Immediately, Damien hefted a bag brimming with gleaming gold coins. The moment Asta saw it, his whole expression flipped. Damien, my man. He changed faces faster than a street vendor flipping rice paper over a fire. Giving a big thumbs up, he declared, let's be friends. Damien tilted his head. What's with the sudden, but Asta cut him off. If I say we're friends, we're friends. Got it. And friends share what they have. Before long, both of them were drooling. Come on, buddy, let's eat. Night was already falling by the time the sounds of their chatter echoed through the alley. So, what do you have? Oh, I've got a friend now. That line sounds cool, doesn't it? By then, the night had fully set in, moonlight spilling over the streets. Inside a small room, Asta let out a thunderous belch. He'd just eaten until his stomach was about to burst on Damien's tab, of course. That was a damn good meal. After washing his face, he felt refreshed. Across the room, Damien was glancing around in curiosity. What are you doing? Asta asked. Damien's expression was full of fascination. I didn't know there was a house above the place we just ate at. I usually just sleep on the street. Now I know having a roof is pretty convenient. I see, Asta muttered. Then Damien suddenly climbed onto Asta's bed, planting both hands on the mattress. Oh right. With the utmost seriousness he revealed, I don't have any tea. Asta frowned, then countered, no you do. But Damien stubbornly shook his head. Nope. Asta could only throw up his hands. Stop turning this into some kind of hardship competition. Then he suddenly asked, and you have a mother? The young man blinked in confusion, glancing around as if searching the room. Where? She's not here. That left him at a loss for words. Ah well, if she's not here, I guess she doesn't exist. That's a bit of a harsh way to think about it. Then he added, all right, let me assess the situation for a moment. After a beat of thought, he turned back to ask, hey, how long have you been here alone? Damien tilted his head, sinking into thought, counting something off in his mind. Ever since I ran away from my family, I've slept 10 times. That instantly made Asta suspicious. Ran away? Are you being hunted? Wait, 10 times sleeping, you mean 10 days? Damien wore a face so innocent it almost hurt to look at. I haven't even slept that much. His smile bloomed like sunshine as he held up 2 fingers. 2 times a day. Of course I mean short naps, Damien clarified cheerfully. All in all, I've slept 10 times. Asta broke into a sweat at that answer. So, about 3, maybe 4 days then. Damien, apparently content, flopped back onto the bed. But I haven't had a proper sleep since I got here, the ground's too hard. Can't get comfortable. Asta suddenly froze, staring into the distance. Then, without a word he turned to the pillow, buried his face in it, and screamed inwardly, what a rookie fresh out of the shell. Frowning, he glanced sideways. Either way, while this kid's stuck in the gray zone, I can act as his temporary babysitter. And it wouldn't hurt to use the opportunity to establish ties with the Blander family. His gaze flicked over to Damien again. The boy's expression screamed. This place is seriously uncomfortable. Asta's mind was still ticking away. Later, when I have to face Declan, this will be useful. And powerful families usually have plenty of rare books. Then he remembered the young man from earlier. Of course, first I have something else to take care of. 57 deep grudges still lodged in my chest. Moments later, Asta stepped over to Damien's bed and said, Damien, I'm going to lie down. Don't bother me. If you do, there's going to be trouble. Damien suddenly sat bolt upright, eyes bright with excitement. Are you practicing breathing techniques? At that point, Asta didn't even bother with exasperation, he just rolled with it. Yeah, that's right. When I'm done, you try it too. I'll wait for you. Got it, Damien said with that same sunny smile. With that settled, Asta shut his eyes, feeling each steady beat of his heart. Slowly, memory surfaced. In my previous life, I built the foundation of my magic with the basic spells given to cleaners, but the limits were obvious. So I snuck into countless noble families to steal spells, nearly died more times than I can count. The spells I learned that way included night body enhancement techniques, spirit summoning, alchemy, and all sorts of miscellaneous arts. But right before my death, I encountered a power of true destruction. And this time, without a doubt, Asta's eyes snapped open. The first spell I need to learn is the primordial secret art of the Declan family. His lips parted slightly as he whispered, the root of all Declan magic able to accept every attribute of mana. He smiled faintly, closing his eyes again. I memorized it for research, now I finally have the chance to use it for real. With each breath, streams of red energy began to gather at the golden mark. Then, discomfort slammed into him. 2 hobbits like molten lava is flowing through me. Damn it, what is this? Focus, you have to control it. Suddenly his eyes widened in shock and confusion. It's not just red anymore, there's blue mist swirling around my hands. Asta recognized it right away. Impurities? Why are there things like this here? This is a high-tier spell, one that's only passed down to the true bloodlines of noble houses. It forces mana through the veins, burning away every impurity in the bloodstream, a mana purification ritual. Right then, Asta jolted awake in a panic. His mouth hung open, his eyes wide in shock, gasping for breath again and again. How long has it been? Beside him, Damien was curled up fast asleep, breathing softly like a well-fed puppy. Sweat poured down Asta's body like a river. More importantly, there's not a single impurity left in my mana pathways. My mana's been purified, its quality is even higher than in my past life, maybe far higher. His expression turned grim as he glanced upward. Even so, no matter what, the image of Farron is as vivid as if he were standing right before me. To defeat Declan, even if I were to be reborn 100 times, it might still be impossible. In that instant, Asta clenched his fist tight. Then a slow, confident smirk spread across his face. But my chances have gone up. I'm a cleaner. I'm someone who never gives up, not even if there's only a 0.01% chance. Before long, daylight had crept in, and a loud exclamation broke the quiet. Oh wow, this is amazing. It was Damien. He ran a hand excitedly through his hair. My hair turned brown. Asta, watching from nearby, felt a quiet relief settle in. Good. That platinum hair was too easy to spot. Now, once we change his clothes, the Blander family won't even notice him. Now, there's just one last thing to do. Damien looked at him with bright eyes and asked, so, what are we doing next, my friend? Asta didn't answer. He just tilted his head slightly toward Damien. Then, after a pause, he smiled soft and gentle, completely at odds with the chaos about to unfold from his words. Elsewhere, Spotty the thug who had beaten Asta at the stream the other day was stretching and yawning. He gazed lazily up at the sky, completely unaware that his number was about to be called. Man, I slept great. And the weather's perfect too. A second later, that relaxed look vanished, replaced by confusion and a flicker of disbelief. The ones approaching were none other than Asta and Damien. Spotty recognized him immediately. That brat. Still cocky, Spotty shoved his hands in his pockets and swaggered toward them. Where'd you run off to, huh? And now you finally show your face. What's with that look? Did you take a bath in the sewers? And who's this kid? He's practically dripping with money. Before he could get another word out, Asta's fist drove straight into his gut. Spotty crumpled to the ground. Asta stood over him, voice cold. Looks like I came to the right place since your face is still fresh in my memory. His expression was nothing but pure rage and hatred. First 123 strikes. You're getting every last one of them. Not far off, 2 of Spotty's gang members shouted in alarm. What the hell? Spotty, what's going on? Is there an intruder? Moments later they arrived with a whole group of thugs, forming a wall in front of Asta and Damien. One of them squinted. Wait, isn't that the guy from before? Asta, far from looking afraid, let a sly grin spread across his face. Ah, a whole bunch of familiar faces. How terrifying. The 2 of them looked as if they were striking a pose for a movie poster. Wonder how far I'll get today, Asta mused. Meanwhile, Damien tilted his head in innocent curiosity. So, what game are we playing, my friend? In an instant, one of them took Asta's fist straight to the face. Next was an unlucky guy, who got a clean shot to the gut, blood spurting from his mouth. Right now, Asta looked utterly satisfied, brimming with a devilish aura. His hands and feet didn't stop for even a second. Damien, watching from the sidelines, couldn't help but whistle in awe. He studied every move Asta made, gathering mana, clenching his fists, striking again and again. Suddenly, Damien's face lit up like a blooming flower, his pupils dilating in excitement. Magnificent, he blurted. Asta, pounding away at these disposable punching bags, happily called back to Damien. That right there, my friend, is what you call peak performance. Damien's admiration grew even deeper, his eyes now glowing brighter than fireflies. Peak performance indeed. But then he froze when one guy, beaten within an inch of his life, collapsed right at Damien's feet. Still, Damien crouched down kindly and used healing magic on him. It's okay, I'll patch you up, he said. The poor bastard, his face bruised beyond recognition, barely managed to start saying thank you before Asta's hand grabbed him from behind. Asta pulled him close, his devilish face inches away, and spoke in a slow, grave tone. Now, how many hits was that? What followed was a string of ear-piercing screams from Asta's underlings. Before long, the sun dipped low, and the whole gang that had been so cocky earlier was now sprawled all over the ground like corpses. Asta was drenched in sweat, but clearly had no intention of stopping. Man, it feels like I was in heaven for a few minutes, and now I've dragged you all to the 19th level of hell. Spotty was the one who got the premium package of beatings. How many times did I hit you? Asta asked. Tears welled up in Spotty's eyes as he clutched his swollen red butt. I forgot. But does my face look like I'm done? Asta barked. Continue. Damien, bouncing excitedly in the back, yelled, my turn now, right? Hand healing magic. The poor guy's eyes went wide, looking like he was about to piss himself. If this torture loop kept going, no one could survive it. He prayed desperately in his heart. Please stop. Of all people, why did I have to mess with these 2 lunatics? The pair laughed like patients who just escaped the psych ward. Get this through your thick skull. You're from a lower generation. Got it. Hand healing magic. Hand healing magic. Spotty could only pray to whatever gods were listening. Stop, you demons. I can only count up to 2 digits. Not long after, the moon replaced the sun. Darkness fell. And finally those 2 decided to stop. The whole group lined up neatly like schoolkids getting their homework checked, shouting in unison, thanks for today. Seriously, thank you. Asta beamed. Your mana distribution's solid now. I'm proud of you. Damien, standing beside him, clearly enjoyed the moment. All done. Same time tomorrow. Inside, he thought to himself, I'm proud too. Each one took over 100 hits. That's more than 1,000 strikes total. Even for me, a seasoned cleaner, except for mountaintop brawls and aerial combat, this was still a new kind of challenge. Then, suddenly a noise came from the side, catching Asta's attention. One of the battered guys stood respectfully before him. Can I go now? I think that's enough, Asta said without a second thought. Yeah, you can go. The guy gave a strained smile, like there was something hidden in those words. Actually, this is my house. The devil's shoulders returned in an instant. Oh, so you want us gone? That's awkward. Seeing his face, the guy practically wet himself, waving his hands frantically. No, no, it's not like that. We'll clear out right away. And so Asta stood there, watching them limp off one by one. Each of them looked wrecked. This isn't a grudge, one muttered. Asta glanced back, feeling a genuine awkwardness. He focused his gaze behind him. While Damien was waving cheerfully at the group, Asta quickly sensed someone approaching. His eyes scanned the area, quick but subtle just like a professional cleaner would. A trace of unease flickered in his eyes. A pursuer, most likely. He looked at Damien still laughing in front of him and grimaced inwardly. I was so careful, and they still tracked me down. Can't believe the Blander family got here first. Asta shut his eyes tight, feeling for the mana source. With this much mana, even a single spell is tough. Close combat's even worse. Not good. But then he reminded himself, but come on, who am I? Sparks of blue lightning burst from his hands. Even when I was still a cleaner, I never had mana to spare. Not once. I faced situations like this 100 times, nothing new. He raised two fingers, forming a magic circle, compressing his mana tighter and tighter. He looked at the searing blue energy inside him. This should be enough. Then Asta's eyes flicked behind him, one hand aiming directly at the target. This is my only chance. But just as a shadow darted toward him, the figure suddenly dropped to their knees. Asta froze in place. That face, that's a butler if I've ever seen one. And I bet I know exactly who he's looking for. The moment Damien saw the man, he jumped, more startled than Asta had ever seen him. Alfredo. The man's eyes filled with tears as he rushed forward. Oh, thank the heavens, young master. I've been searching everywhere for you. Where have you been? What have you been doing? The poor old butler looked like he hadn't eaten or slept in days, all because of his missing young master. Damien scowled, trying to push away the man clinging tightly to him. Let go. I'm not going back. At that, Alfredo only cried harder. Oh, heavens above, young master. You might as well kill me now. Running away from home, why would you do such a thing? Behind you. That's the one, right? Asta, watching the scene, wore an unmistakable look of disdain. Moments later, Alfredo managed to scoop up the sulking Damien and set him on his feet. My apologies for making such a fuss in front of an esteemed guest. He bowed politely. I am Alfredo, butler of the Blander family. Asta replied without missing a beat. Right, I'm Asta. Alfredo's expression softened as he extended a hand toward him. It seems young Master Damien is quite fond of you. If you wouldn't mind, would you care to return to the Blander estate with us? The moment the words left his mouth, Asta's face grew a touch more serious. The Blander estate. The first rule of any noble house is to steer clear of filth and to avoid anything too exalted too. I can't read what they're playing at here. But the corner of his mouth curled upward. Still, it works in my favor. I was planning to approach the Blander family anyway. By luck, their territory lay right along the road to the city home to Zenyan Academy, the so-called pinnacle of Eastern education. Its library, too, was famed as the greatest in the East. I'm building the best library there is. Dropping by to see it for myself doesn't sound like a bad idea. With that thought, Asta nodded. Very well. I understand. Alfredo's eyes lit with relief. Thank you for your assistance. In that case, I'll have the carriage prepared. Please wait a moment. Asta reached for his coat and slipped it on, tidying himself up. I've strayed a little from my path toward building the library, but good opportunities are worth taking. As he slid his arms through the sleeves, he muttered to himself. All right, let's see if the Blander family's cooking is worth anything. The full moon bathed the road in silver light. Before long, the carriage came to a halt. We've arrived. This is the Blander estate. From within, Asta stepped down slowly, eyes lifting to take in the grand sight before him. My first time here as an official guest at the Blander family mansion. 2 rows of attendants stood in perfect formation on either side, flanking the magnificent manor. Nearby, Alfredo gestured toward a maid. It's late. Please see that our guest rest well. Lancy, I leave it to you. She nodded. Yes, sir. Then her face hardened into something truly fearsome as she turned to Damien. This way, young Master Damien. He gave an awkward laugh, rubbing the back of his head. Lancy, and from somewhere inside the mansion came Damien's pained wails. I admit it, Lancy. I was wrong. Inside the mansion, Alfredo was walking down the hallway. He stopped in front of a certain room and gently knocked on the door. A voice from inside called out, come in. Without delay, he opened the door and stepped inside. The person in the room spoke a single name. Damien. Understanding the implication, Alfredo immediately reported, the boy from Black and White Zone No. 7. I just brought him back. A sudden silence fell over the room. Then, without warning, a violent explosion erupted right before Alfredo's eyes. Yet, he remained completely calm. It was the woman before him who had caused it. She repeated, her voice sharp. Black and White Zone No. 7, you said? This was Damien's mother, though whether she was his birth mother or stepmother remained unclear. Her tone brimmed with anger. Is Damien all right? Was he hurt? If even a single hair on my son's head before she could finish. Alfredo quickly cut in. My lady, please, calm yourself and hear me out first. Once she listened to the whole story, she exhaled and eased back into her seat. I see, so that's how it was. The magic circle in her hand still glowed steadily. What a relief. Standing before her, Alfredo echoed, indeed, a great relief. Inwardly he thought, a relief for my lady, and for whoever might have dared to lay a finger on the young master. For the wrath of this woman once known as the Blood Witch, who could possibly withstand it? At that moment she smiled with unexpected warmth. If it's something that concerns my son, I admit I find it hard to stay calm. I suppose this outcome is still a blessing. In any case, you've worked hard. Alfredo bowed respectfully. It was nothing. Merely my duty. Though he hesitated for a beat, there was one thing unusual. Unusual? The lady asked, a hint of curiosity in her tone. He explained immediately, I mean the friend the young master made this time. I believe you already know she's aware that he is an Aster, correct? But there's more to it. That friend, his expression darkened, a serious and dangerous glint in his eyes. He sensed my presence. Even before I appeared, he was already prepared to strike back. Recalling the moment, Alfredo couldn't help but remark, and when we finally faced each other, what I saw in that boy's hand I saw it clearly, a mana-infused bullet. The lady rubbed her chin, clearly impressed. There's no denying it. That's an astonishing talent. For a child from the Black and White Zone to possess such ability, that is precisely why, my lady. Alfredo's tone grew solemn. I must make a request. The scene shifted to the next morning. A loud cry rang out from within the estate. In one of the rooms, Alfredo stood before Asta, arms outstretched, and declared, become my successor. Immediately, his face went pale as a sheet, not even sure what had just happened. At that moment, Alfredo's expression brimmed with pride and confidence. Surprised, aren't you? But there's no way that boy would ever refuse. A butler of such a prestigious family like myself personally offering a stray child a chance to change his life, glory, wealth, fame. But then, a single word no rang out, freezing him in place. For a moment, Alfredo thought he'd misheard. He stared blankly at the young man. What? What did you just say? Boy, did I hear that wrong? Beside them, Asta really didn't seem the least bit interested in the whole affair. Suddenly, a voice rang out, catching the man completely off guard. Damn it. Alfredo stood in front of Asta, looking utterly baffled. This brat. Glancing at the boy who showed no reaction whatsoever, Alfredo began to doubt himself. Did I hear that wrong? Just then, Damien came running up only to confirm Alfredo's suspicion. Curious, he asked, "Damn it, buddy, what does damn it mean?" Asta ignored the question entirely and instead said, "Thank you very much for nominating me as the Butler family's heir." He clamped a hand over Damien's mouth before the kid could keep rambling, then continued to Alfredo, "But I think I still prefer my current life. Once again, I'm truly grateful." Alfredo blinked, baffled. Why refuse? Then it hit him. Ah, I see. He studied Asta for a moment, thinking to himself, born in the gray zone, empty-handed since birth, self-taught in magic purely by talent. No wonder you're so arrogant. I get it. I was once a wild nobody myself, too ignorant to know my own limits. Meanwhile, Asta was still arguing with Damien. I didn't say damn it. Even with his mouth covered, Damien stubbornly mumbled, "You did." Still, Alfredo pressed on with his lecture. But boy, the world is vast. Asta's face grew serious. I know it's not small. Alfredo was already a little irritated, but he ignored it. Right now you might feel like you can do anything, like you can reach out and grasp the whole world. Not really. Asta replied coolly. That calm tone only fueled Alfredo's frustration. To keep the conversation from turning into an outburst, he had to keep telling himself patience. You must have patience. After a moment he tried again. Ever heard the saying goblins living in a ravine? That's you right now, born and raised in a crevice, with no idea how terrifying the world beyond can be. But Asta just rubbed his ears, imagining massive dragons soaring in the sky. I think I'm more like a dragon king up above. The last thread of Alfredo's restraint snapped. With a heavy stomp, the ground cracked beneath his feet as he snarled. This brat knows nothing. His figure wavered in a faint glow as he continued. Voice low and dangerous, then I, a butler, will personally show you just how vast and terrifying this world really is. His expression was dark and menacing, eyes locked on Asta. Elsewhere, as sunlight broke over the castle's rear towers, Alfredo and Asta kicked open a set of doors and stepped inside. The sun at their backs cast their silhouettes tall and imposing. A group of children about Asta's age holding wooden sticks for practice froze mid-motion, the instant they saw the two of them. In perfect unison they straightened up, bowed deeply, and shouted, "Greetings, butler sir. Greetings, butler sir." Alfredo, looking very pleased with himself, turned to glance at Asta behind him. Alfredo narrowed his eyes. Well, kid? They're all about your age, but they're the legitimate prodigies of the Blander family. You can feel it, can't you? Asta took in the scene, silent for a moment, then thought to himself, the Blander family is no joke. Looking at the boy surrounded by a faint, mystical glow, he couldn't help but think, hard to believe they're still just teenagers. The light may be soft, but it fills the entire room. Then, suddenly he paused and smirked. Studying them more carefully, he came to his own conclusion. Look into their eyes, they're nothing but a pack of goblins. Out loud, however, he simply said to Alfredo, yeah, I guess I feel something. Hearing that, Alfredo assumed his plan had worked. His voice grew eager. Then you'll accept my offer. He kept piling on the praise. If you inherit my position, you'll shine just like them. No brighter than anyone. But Asta cut him off flatly. I hate the light. The answer stopped Alfredo in his tracks. Kid, why? He asked, bewildered. Before Asta could respond, someone raised a hand. Butler sir. Alfredo turned. One of the trainees? You have something to say. The pink-haired young man who stood up wore an expression of pure arrogance. If this brat had truly felt anything, he wouldn't have turned you down. The fact that he dismissed it so bluntly means he hasn't felt enough. Asta glanced at him, confused for a second before the boy continued. If I may, I'd like to give him an experience. You mean a duel? Alfredo asked, surprised. The pink-haired youth shrugged. Not exactly a fight. Just a taste of what magic really is. Alfredo studied him silently for a moment. Arrogant but not bad, he thought. Still he turned back to Asta. So boy, how about it? Just a simple match against this one. Asta shot a sidelong look at the group, his expression saying he already knew exactly what they thought of him. I know they all see me as a thorn in their side. In his mind, their faces warped into demonic sneers. A lucky stray picked up from the gutter, that's probably what they think. Even so, he accepted. Can I pick my opponent? Go ahead, Alfredo encouraged. Asta pointed straight at the smug face of the pink-haired boy. You. Then, to Alfredo's shock, he jabbed his finger at the others one after another. You and you. The pink-haired boy's eyes went wide in disbelief. I'll fight all five of you at once, Asta said calmly. His face darkened, shadow creeping over his features. He crooked a finger, taunting them. What's wrong? Scared? Then die. Seeing that look, Alfredo fell silent for a long moment before the corner of his mouth lifted into a grin. The old man couldn't hide the joy on his face, thinking to himself with satisfaction, that's right. That's the kind of spirit a successor should have. Then he turned to Asta, who was brimming with arrogance, and said, Kid, can you take responsibility for those words? A statement like that is nothing short of an insult to the Blander family. Even after hearing that, Asta's decision didn't waver. With unwavering resolve, he replied, I'll take responsibility. Alfredo was clearly pleased by his answer. Raising one finger, he declared, Good. Then let's begin. 1 minute. If you can hold out for 1 minute, I'll give you a reward. But if you can't, you'll have to bear the consequences. Cold sweat began to form on Asta's forehead. He glanced at Alfredo beside him and thought, those consequences probably mean inheriting the butler's position. This old man is clearly trying to rope me in. Even knowing he was being baited, Asta still replied firmly, fine. I'm in. Alfredo and another man watched from the sidelines. The other man asked anxiously, but, head butler, isn't this dangerous? Ignoring the man's alarmed expression, Alfredo said calmly, that's exactly why it has value. His stubbornness needs to be shattered before he can grow. Suddenly, one of the young men observing the scene quickly turned his head away. Fear struck him as he thought, this isn't good. His eyes have rolled back completely. If I injure the young master's guest, my career as a trainer will be over. But then he was stunned to realize the person beside him, Damien, still looked completely clueless. Unable to sit still any longer, the young man leaned in and whispered to his master, young master, your friend is in real danger here. Please, stop the head butler. To his surprise, Damien's eyes lit up with excitement instead. Really? Even I didn't expect that. Seeing his young master's innocent enthusiasm, the trainer could only cover his face in exasperation and mutter, oh, for crying out loud. At that moment Lancey, who was standing nearby, suddenly spoke up. If you get involved, young master, madam will have your head. Damien's expression soured at that, and he pouted, muttering, damn it, unbothered by their conversation. Alfredo had already stepped forward and addressed the young man next to him. Trainer, what are you waiting for? Begin. The trainer looked like he was about to cry, but still gritted his teeth and said, yes, understood. Meanwhile, Lancey was busy lecturing Damien. The trainer could only accept his fate, thinking miserably, an order is an order. I've done all I can. Lancy cast a brief glance toward the trainer but kept her silence. After giving Damien a few more instructions, she finally turned to leave. I'll be back soon. Don't interfere. Damien flashed a quick smile and agreed to her without hesitation. All right. Meanwhile, Asta was facing off alone against an entire group. Standing in the middle, the trainer spoke calmly, then allow me to explain the rules. The match will go in turns but Alfredo cut him off mid-sentence. No, make it a free-for-all. The trainer pressed his lips together, suppressing his irritation. Fine, whatever. He took a deep breath and explained again, more firmly this time, it will be a free-for-all. The match will last until one side surrenders. However, the trainer has the authority to stop the match at any time. Remember that. A beam of sunlight streamed in from outside, catching Asta's face and making his eyes seem even more resolute. The expressions of his opponents had grown deadly serious, their eyes smoldering with hostility. One of them, a pink-haired man, was fuming. Grinding his teeth, he cursed inwardly, worthless nobody. The young master and the head butler might take pity on you. But who do you think you are? I'll crush you and expose your true face in front of everyone. The trainer raised a hand high in the air, then brought it down. Begin, he shouted. The moment the word left his mouth, a blast of power smashed directly into one of the opposing team's men. The pink-haired man froze in shock at the sight. When he glanced behind him, his face paled even further. Everyone except him had already been knocked to the ground by Asta, groaning in pain. His skin went clammy as Asta began advancing toward him. The look on Asta's face was cold and menacing, arcs of power crackling in his palms like dancing lightning. Asta's voice carried a quiet threat. Looks like I'll have to teach you a few things myself. First, don't underestimate the weak. The moment the pink-haired man saw the raw force gathering in Asta's hands, his mind screamed in panic. Mana bullet magic. With just a twitch of Asta's fingers, the energy in his palm multiplied severalfold. The man tried to calm himself, scoffing inwardly. That's the most basic form of mana control, burns a ton of energy, and useless in real combat. But the power swirling in Asta's hands only grew darker, like shadow swallowing the light. Second, Asta unleashed a strike. The blast shot out like massive spheres, each one hammering into his opponent's heads. Don't be so quick to judge others. Cries of pain filled the air as they collapsed under the impact. One boy's eyes went wide with terror. Asta's voice seemed almost demonic as he spoke again. Third, he closed the distance with the pink-haired man, fist drawn back, his lips curling into a grin. The world is vast and merciless. The punch landed with bone-rattling force. A red glint flashed in Asta's eyes, and the man was sent flying. By the time he hit the ground, the light in Asta's gaze had shifted again, now clear and blue, like the endless sky. From now on, Asta said evenly, I'll pour all of these lessons into you. Learn them well. The pink-haired man still couldn't accept it. Clutching his aching face, he screamed, you maniac. That's not magic. From above, a voice rang out sharply. Yes, it is. Asta lunged forward, ready to deliver the finishing blow, and clarified, this is mana-infused martial arts. Upon witnessing the scene, the coach stood there slack-jawed, utterly dumbfounded. The disciples around him were no different. They, too, were stunned by Asta's overwhelming power. Alfredo was still observing the match intently. In the arena, Asta, effortlessly holding back two opponents at once, glanced up at him and smiled. Gentle sunlight spilled over him, and Alfredo couldn't suppress his astonishment, as he thought to himself. That's a magic bullet, compressed 4, maybe even 5 times. Judging by that power, it has to be at least quadruple compressed. Recalling the moment just earlier in the fight, a chill ran through him. If that had actually connected, he didn't even notice Damien dashing off, full of excitement. Alfredo remained lost in his own thoughts. That's truly an innate gift for controlling magic. But that's not all. Watching Asta single-handedly overpower the others, Alfredo couldn't help but wonder, why is he so damn good at fighting with his fists and feet too? Suddenly he froze as a voice called out, Alfredo. Recognizing it instantly, he quickly turned around and saw someone making their way toward him. A youthful woman approached alongside Lancy. He straightened and greeted her hurriedly, Lady Gamo. The coach, seeing the 3 figures standing at the entrance, thought to himself, Lady Gamo is here. His eyes welled up with relief. Lady Gamo has come to save us, he thought, nearly trembling with joy. Lancy meanwhile stood impassively, her expression unchanged despite the scene before her. Standing beneath the shade, Lady Gamo turned to the steward with a questioning look. What happened here? Alfredo hesitated before replying. Well, I only meant to run a simple test. Lady Gamo regarded him, clearly unconvinced, and pressed, a test. Inside the arena, only Asta was still standing unscathed. Everyone else lay sprawled across the ground, beaten into submission. Lady Gamo's voice sharpened as she demanded, you call this a test? Even Damien, who had been fiddling with some sort of magic circle, flinched when she called, Damien. Weary now, Lady Gamo issued her orders. First, gather the trainees and have them stand down. Alfredo immediately bowed his head in acknowledgement. She then turned to Damien, whose face was twisted into a pout. Damie, go back to your room. Asta didn't escape her judgment either. You too, asked to return to your quarters, she commanded. Then her voice rang out again, Coach Runfit. Like a child caught red-handed, he answered quickly. Yes, Lady Gamo. I did my very best. But the truth hit him like a slap when she replied. You're fired. He blinked at her, stunned. What? Night had fallen over the castle. From within, voices drifted out. Yes, my lady, Alfredo said quietly. Lady Gamo lifted her teacup with elegant poise, her voice soft but carrying unmistakable weight. I understand your intentions, but this time you went too far. Knowing full well he was in the wrong, Alfredo bowed deeply. I'm sorry, my lady. I'll accept any punishment you see fit. The teacup was set down on the table, its contents rippling dangerously close to the rim. Lady Gamo spoke again but then suddenly fixed her gaze on him, her tone sharpening. I heard Asta sparred with the trainees. Did Damien help him? Alfredo quickly shook his head, then hesitated. No, he did it alone. But the way he stumbled over his words only tested her patience. Only? She pressed. Recalling the quick fluid movements Asta had displayed in the match, Alfredo's eyes flashed. He's incredibly skilled at hand-to-hand combat. Then something else came to mind, and his voice grew more animated. Right about the magic bullet I mentioned earlier, he used it in today's sparring as well. His eyes narrowed as he remembered the raw, explosive force that had burst from Asta's palm. But he compressed it 4, maybe even 5 times, multiplying its power to something terrifying. That gave Lady Gamo pause. She thought for a moment before speaking. He has remarkable mana control. She fell into her own thoughts. Even if I didn't witness it myself, just a single magic bullet, her mind returned to the scene Alfredo had described, the near wasteland, left in the training ground. He defeated all 5 trainees with just 1 shot. Even for a high-level mage, pure mana manipulation of that caliber is extremely difficult. Then, she suddenly asked, and the succession offer? Alfredo's tone turned a touch gloomy. He flat out refused. Lady Gamo lifted her cup once again, cleared her throat softly, and said, I see. Her crimson eyes glimmered with an odd light. She took a slow sip of tea and thought to herself, perhaps I need to reassess Asta and weigh my approach more carefully. Finally, she issued a command. Summon Asta here. Not long after, Alfredo brought him in. His face was as unreadable as ever. Beside Lady Gamo sat Damien, cheerfully munching on pastries. Asta, you're here, she greeted with a warm smile. Please, sit. Asta stepped forward and took the seat opposite them. I was told you summoned me, he said. That's right, she replied without delay. She then slid a mysterious box toward him, her voice calm yet deliberate. But before she could say more, Asta's eyes widened slightly in alarm. This is, he asked quickly. Lady Gamo didn't answer the question directly. Instead, she explained, I heard Alfredo promised you a gift. That jogged his memory. Ah, that. The scene replayed in his mind, Alfredo standing before him, speaking with grave seriousness, if you can last 1 minute, I'll give you a gift. Now the reality of it surprised him. I didn't expect it to come this soon, and from Lady Gamo herself, no less. Her demeanor was gentle as she encouraged, you can open it. Asta carefully lifted the box. The moment he cracked it open, a thin beam of light escaped. When the lid was fully raised, a dazzling glow burst forth, shining directly into his eyes. He blinked, stunned. This is inside. A single flower lay in full display. It's a high-grade item, Lady Gamo explained. Even within the Blander family, only those who make it into top 5 mage divisions receive one. Despite the value of the gift, Asta didn't look the least bit overjoyed. His lips pressed into a thin line as his gaze shifted toward her. I'm not sure about this. Kindness, in his experience, rarely went beyond a warm meal. If there was a gift involved, there was almost always an agenda. If this had been a casual wager, a mid-tier prize would have been reasonable, but this was top tier. Lady Gamo, unaware of his inner doubts, continued to smile kindly. She ruffled Damien's hair and spoke gently. You can accept it without worry. You helped Damien back in the gray zone, and this gift is also an apology for what happened today. Asta suddenly realized something and quickly asked, wait, if I eat this, does that mean I have to join Blandor? Before he could even finish the thought, Lady Gamo replied, no. Still wary, he pressed on, or is it poisoned? Her patience was starting to wear thin, but she kept her composure. No. Asta narrowed his eyes slightly at the woman before him. So you're saying, there are absolutely no strings attached? To put him at ease, Lady Gamo answered every question without hesitation. That's right. No conditions at all. Only then did Asta relax. In that case, I'll take it. Thanks. Damien, still busy trying to grab another pastry, paid them no mind, while Lady Gamo gave a gentle smile. Really, there's nothing to worry about. Asta's eyes lit up as he admired the gift. Nice. An unexpected windfall. But then, Lady Gamo spoke again. The moment she did, his expression shifted. He already knew where this was going. I knew it. Damien blinked in confusion as his mother patted his head. Asta, she called. Still stroking her son's hair, Lady Gamo said, I'd like to arrange for you to enroll in the academy. Would you like to attend with Damien? The academy? Asta echoed, caught off guard. She explained, actually Damien was supposed to start last year. Her voice dimmed slightly as she glanced at her son. But he resisted so fiercely that we had to postpone until this year. Looking at Damien's innocent face, she sighed in defeat. I didn't expect him to run away entirely. Lowering her gaze, she added, that's why I'm asking you. Damien is very fond of you. Right on cue, Damien chimed in. As long as I've got a friend, I'll go. I agree. Asta's expression didn't change, though he thought. Well, that explains it. To him this was no small matter. Memories of Damien's loud refusals I'm not going. Don't even try. Flashed through his mind. She's afraid that if she forces him to enroll, he'll just run away again. And there's no clear way to change his mind. He weighed her proposal carefully. Of course this could also be a good opportunity for me. In a world built on bloodlines and connections, the academy was a valuable place to form ties. But after a moment, unease crept in. Sounds nice, but it also feels like someone's trying to slip a leash around my neck. Still undecided, he replied casually, I'll think about it. I understand. Let me know when you've decided, she said without pressing further. Then, almost as an afterthought, Lady Gamo added, oh, by the way, this has nothing to do with that, but I'm curious about something. Her tone remained gentle as she asked, why did you turn down Alfredo's inheritance offer? Asta's gaze slid away. He didn't answer right away. Then, the corner of his mouth curled into a faint grin. Well, you see, remembering Alfredo's pained face as he was dragged away, Asta's aura suddenly turned sharp. My knees are worth a lot too. Lady Gamo blinked, completely lost. I'm sorry, what? On the other side of the door, someone leaning against it heard every word. Alfredo, of course, never expected to catch that line. His eyes went wide. What?
At a certain mansion, just as dawn was breaking. Asta parted his lips and exhaled a cold breath. He sat cross-legged on the bed practicing magic. I understand now, this is the realm of the relic. Even though I only absorbed 10%, my mana increased so much. Asta suddenly opened his eyes and glanced downward. Is it because my body has changed into someone marked by the fire star? The hand resting on his thigh was wrapped in ordinary mana. Absorbing a realm should cause consumption, but here there was none. That was beyond my expectation. Asta calmly looked toward the window. As for the academy, I've been thinking about it for a long time, but perhaps the answer was already decided. Outside the window, the sky was brightening. If I enroll in the academy, finding support will be much easier. It brings many advantages. But Asta turned his head away and sighed. It still feels like walking straight into a trap. Maybe I should take a walk. After thinking it over, a while later Asta stepped out of the room and closed the door. Suddenly someone spoke, making him look over. Are you the one named Asta? A platinum-haired youth stood leaning against the wall, staring intently at Asta. While he silently assessed him, platinum hair, pure Damien bloodline. So what branch is he from? Why is this family always so troublesome? A few minutes later, Asta spoke indifferently, not really. The platinum-haired youth flinched. You say not. He absent-mindedly rubbed his chin and reflected, hair a washed-out gray, eyes a bit unpleasant. It's all you, isn't it? In an instant his whole body stiffened and a red cross appeared. Look at this guy. Asta suddenly pointed to his head. Hair color can change depending on the light. The next second he put on an elegant, sparkling expression. Look into these eyes. How could they be called unpleasant? The platinum-haired youth smirked and regarded Asta with evaluating eyes. Then he turned away. To me they look more gentle. Sorry for the misunderstanding. I'll be on my way. Just then Alfredo jumped out from somewhere and shouted, Hey youngster, aren't you Asta? I'm here to clear up the misunderstanding. I couldn't speak to you last night and lay awake all night. He knelt on the ground crying without stop. Even if I become a butler I don't need to kneel until my knees are torn, it's just a misunderstanding. Asta looked down at Alfredo kneeling by his feet, then stiffly turned his eyes toward the platinum-haired youth who was leaving. He had stopped without anyone noticing and was glaring at me. He clicked his tongue in annoyance, damn. Then the platinum-haired youth shouted, those eyes, I knew it. Exactly. Those cursed eyes are like a dead demon's, they're not something you see every day. Asta then admitted helplessly, all right, you caught me. The youth angrily pointed at him, look, how dare you deceive me and act so brazen. The platinum-haired youth ground his teeth and threatened. I will. At that moment he caught sight of Alfredo's sharp, knife-like eyes. The platinum-haired youth immediately fell silent and looked away in discomfort. Finally he turned and said stiffly, I'll spare you today, but come to the demon hall later and I'll correct your attitude. Asta replied calmly, fine. After he left, Alfredo asked gently, what was that about? He closed his eyes and smiled, nothing. Asta sneered and exhaled, actually it's perfect timing, I'm not in a good mood. He watched the platinum-haired youths retreating back and thought to himself, I'll deal with him later. Then Asta suddenly called out, butler. He smiled faintly and asked, may I see madam right now? Not long after, when the day had brightened, still at that mansion. Gamo was poised with a pen over a blank sheet, welcome, Asta. She closed her eyes and smiled gently, so you want to see me this early, could it be you have already decided? As soon as Gamo looked up, Asta replied, yes, madam. He stood solemnly before her and continued, I will enroll in the academy. Upon hearing this, Gamo couldn't help but widen her eyes in surprise. Then she put on a smile to hide her earlier fluster, what a surprise, you decided so quickly. Asta smiled at her, good, then we must prepare immediately. Gamo did not forget to advise him, in the meantime, rest comfortably. Asta bowed slightly and replied, thank you for your concern, madam. Then Asta's figure disappeared from the room. The sound of the door closing rang out. But afterward Alfredo suddenly cracked the door open and peeked in. He entered and gently said, madam, fortunately he agreed. The next moment, Alfredo's whole body became excited, just as predicted, that's the passionate spirit of youth, the fire blazing in those eyes. I knew it. At that, Gamo gave him a deadpan look as he performed. Alfredo suddenly pointed with eyes shining, the first term is fine, I will cover the costs, but what about the second term? He imagined the notice in Asta's worried face when reading it, how can a wanderer from the dark and light regions manage that enormous tuition? He'll feel insecure. Why? Because he'll want to study more. In Alfredo's fantasy, he would reach out his hand toward him. And at that moment, Alfredo appeared with angel wings and a pile of gold, a saving hand will appear, none other than my patronage. At this, Gamo finally could not stand it and said, Alfredo, you're too loud. Alfredo was startled, sorry, I got carried away, since it's almost mealtime, I'll go down to the kitchen first. Gamo quietly watched him leave and then closed the door. She helplessly closed her eyes and sighed, I understand why Alfredo is so excited, he's been rejected many times and has only just gotten an opportunity. Then Gamo suddenly opened her eyes, revealing a cold, sharp gaze. She couldn't help thinking, in that sense, this academy offer is nothing more than a crude ploy, but the reason Alfredo is so confident. Gamo couldn't help but shake her head, perhaps because he himself was once deceived by a previous butler in a similar way. Meanwhile, Alfredo was happily skipping down the corridor on the other side. As for Asta, he was leisurely walking down the stairs. When Asta suddenly looked up ahead. Before him stood a towering spire, the magic tower where that branch's building was located. Thinking so, Asta gingerly stepped into the tower. Suddenly, a figure in a hooded cloak appeared and asked, what brings you here? He hesitated before answering, thinking to himself, right, I don't even know his name. Then Asta had no choice but to use his hands and speech to describe the appearance of that platinum-haired youth. The cloaked man, understanding immediately, extended his hand, just in time, I was waiting for you. This way, please. He led the way ahead while letting out a long yawn. They stopped before a door, he said, you can enter from here. Before leaving, the cloaked man reminded him, remember to bow when you open the door. Asta slowly pushed the door and stepped into the pitch-black room. A pile of papers and fine dust hit his face in an instant, so that's what the bowing was for. Asta couldn't help coughing violently. But someone suddenly spoke, are you Asta? The person strolled out holding a candle, pleasure to meet you. In the candlelight, Henzi's devilish smile appeared, this feels ominous. Have you come to look for my younger brother? Asta listened in bewilderment, younger brother. He thought to himself, this guy is his older brother. One night in a past life, Asta knelt on one knee at a high place. If there's anything I learned from infiltrating magic research institutes as a cleaner. He coldly glanced downward. Where he was looking was the courtyard of some building, it's the hallmark of magic research wizards. On the paperwork-strewn surface, everyone looks haggard. The ones I lumped together are those pen-pounding types. A young man, face terrified, gripped his hair. First, the hair is thinning, because of constantly tugging it, it won't grow back. He rubbed his chin, silently calculating and dividing it into stages. One person wore a hood, stage 1, deny the baldness by pulling the cloak over your head. Another showed a patchy shaved head, stage 2, give up and expose it. There was also someone whose head was completely shaved, stage 3, shave off the remaining hair. Finally comes the one who frantically casts all kinds of spells and the final stage, stage 4, research to make the impossible possible. Hair-growing magic, no one has succeeded yet. Back in the present, Asta evaluated Hansi before him, but this one is different. Meanwhile, he leisurely poured tea and said, first, allow me to apologize. Hansi then recounted calmly, he's the youngest late-born child in the house, overly indulged, but I didn't expect him to be so rude and insolent to a guest. Asta listened unmoved, taking in every word. Hansi maintained a courteous smile while Asta thought, quite bushy, and still young. Asta suddenly said, perhaps you work at a magic research institute. He admitted without hesitation, yes, I'm currently the deputy director, please, have some. He raised the teacup and took a sip, a deputy director at this age. A noble family like Blander wouldn't appoint that position based solely on bloodline, which means his ability must be truly deserving. Hansi smiled, suddenly noticing Asta's expression. He closed his eyes and said profoundly, Asta, you are truly unusual, you don't resemble the wanderers from the Grey District at all. Hearing that, he could only give an embarrassed chuckle, probably. Meanwhile he thought, damn it, if he'd entered on guard it would have been much easier. Instead he smiled so kindly. Asta watched Hansi drinking tea and exclaimed, his personality and mine are compatible. He suddenly said, you've been invited to enroll in Zenion Academy, right? Congratulations. He forced a brief smile. Hansi began again, it will be a good opportunity, much to learn. Actually I'm also a former Zenion student, I was in class 145. Hearing him, Asta thought, suddenly invoking alma mater ties like that? He rubbed his head and laughed, sorry, I got carried away when I heard about your enrollment in Zenion. Anyway, let's get straight to the point. He listened, puzzled, the main issue. Hansi set down his teacup and continued, there's one thing I want to confirm first. He gave a cold smile, looked Asta straight in the eye and asked, are you willing to risk your life for a comrade? Asta frowned in confusion, what? Hansi suddenly used a summoning spell to produce a book, the fate of the Blander family hangs by a thread. Are you prepared to sacrifice your life? He placed it down before Asta's astonished eyes, I will give you this book. Asta inwardly gasped in surprise, this is. It was a thick tome bathed in the light of magical power, the secret core technique of the Blander family, the holy lumen healing scripture. At the same time, in a certain greenhouse, Gamo quietly trimmed the bushes of newly bloomed flowers. Suddenly, the shears in her hand stopped midair. Gamo looked up and then let out a sigh. She thought to herself, Damien's enrollment, which used to give me such a headache, has finally been settled. No mishaps, at least one worry less. Outside, a flock of birds spread their wings across the blue sky. Asta, that child is truly a friend. Gamo suddenly recalled Asta's image from earlier. Good talent, and good character. According to Alfredo, he can be a bit reckless at times, not exactly daring, but at that age who isn't? She closed her eyes and smiled gently, what I like most is the sight of Damien happily by Asta's side that immediately comes to mind. Even though he knows Damien's background, he maintains a consistent attitude. Not a trace of sycophancy. Gamo rolled her eyes and thought, he is different, and for that reason worth keeping close. But also, a white bird spread its wings and flew into the sky while its cage sat wide open, he will belong nowhere, like a free bird. She exhaled sharply, there are many ways to keep someone by your side. I will gradually think of methods. Just then, Asta's troubled face appeared, we can't let such a talent slip away. For Damien's future. He looked at the book before him, still astonished, giving away Blander's secret scripture, huh? Asta coldly raised his eyes, what scheme is he hiding, after all? Yet Hansi's blue eyes remained calm as ever, clear and pure. Perhaps because of that. There was still a gentle smile on his face, I couldn't read him. Asta frowned with irritation, whether good or evil, feelings show in the eyes to some degree, but he reveals nothing at all, like an indifferent killer. In other words, he is smiling with his eyes now, he continued to speculate, he's wearing a mask to the point that even he may not know who he truly is. Then Hansi suddenly said, I'm not saying this for fun, don't rush to answer just because of the reward offered. Asta sneered, I'll give you an answer. He told himself inwardly, now I understand, the uneasy feeling has gone. Asta smiled faintly and said, I refuse. His answer made Hansi widen his eyes in surprise. He leisurely crossed his legs and continued, you and I come from the same muddy pit, so there's no need for pretenses. Fine, if you have anything to cooperate on, say it. Asta folded his arms across his chest with a haughty air, if I think I can do it, I'll do it, if not, I won't. Hansi no longer kept that smile, just hearing it could get someone killed. If after hearing you refuse, I'm afraid I'll have to kill you. Asta glared back challengingly, then kill me, dying once doesn't mean I'll die a second time, does it? As soon as he finished speaking, Asta rolled his eyes and reconsidered, no, I'm the one who would die twice, right? The next instant, a raging gust of wind suddenly rose. A stream of mana burst from Hansi, sending the papers in the room scattering. The teacup on the table vibrated and shook. Hansi frowned deeply, unleashing a powerful surge of mana. He directed that mana toward Asta, who remained calmly seated in his chair. But Hansi suddenly snorted with laughter. He withdrew the mana and rubbed his head, hard to endure, isn't it? Asta, you've passed the test. Hansi paused a moment, then continued, I'll be blunt. Actually, I need someone I can trust, but absolutely not someone from the Blander family. Hearing that, Asta frowned, thinking, at first I nearly threw a full-strength punch. He grinned and said, to be honest, I don't expect much. The drifters in the Grey District are just like that, the young master is still too young and may not have the eye to judge people. The images of Gamo and Damien flashed up, but for the lady, who loves the young master dearly, to leave a drifter unable to stay by his side, I've suspected something all along. Just then. Asta finished the rest, my younger brother caused a scene with the guest, didn't he? Hansi was silent for a moment, then told Asta, choose. Casual or formal, one of the two. He responded somewhat indifferently, fine, do it that way. He awkwardly cleared his throat a few times, at least it gives a convenient excuse. Otherwise my brother causes trouble for you, and I, as his older brother, would summon you to talk. Sounds reasonable, doesn't it? He raised an eyebrow, thinking, it does sound reasonable, but would a deputy director of a magic research institute really need his younger brother as an excuse to summon someone? Something's off. Hansi, as if reading his doubts, continued, yes, you're right to think that. It's difficult for me to appear openly, don't misunderstand, this is an internal conflict. The Blander family is very united. He suddenly stopped, the smile on his lips extinguishing. Hansi admitted solemnly, it's just that I'm being watched by the Divalon family. Asta couldn't help but ask suspiciously, what? He asked directly, why? Hansi replied immediately, you said you don't fear death, so I'll be frank, though I have no intention of killing you. Hansi's next sentence made Asta widen his eyes in surprise. Actually, I'm currently researching Devlin's heavenly origin technique, but it seems I've been discovered. He smiled and explained, you know the heavenly origin technique? It's a secret method only the Devlin bloodline can learn. I happened to seize it from one of their members. But suddenly Asta raised a hand to cut him off. Wait. Asta glared at Hansi and probed, someone who should have died long ago, why are they still alive? If Blander studies it, they'd naturally research countermeasures against them, right? Hansi laughed and said, you know well. Devlin is indeed reckless. If I had only researched countermeasures, even as deputy director I would have found a way to kill them. But you see, I intended only to study defenses at first, yet the deeper I dug, the more I realized something different. He finished and squinted, asking, can't you see it? The face of Farron and a magic tome suddenly appeared. The heavenly origin technique is considered the root of all Devlin techniques. Hansi became so excited he clutched at his chest. There may still be supplemental methods to make that seemingly perfect technique even more perfect. He candidly admitted, I couldn't stop. Asta, you must understand how I feel, right? Meanwhile Asta glared, speechless. My god, this guy isn't just normally crazy, he's severely mad. He emphasized each word, I couldn't stop. Asta, do you understand how I feel? But Asta's mind was full of suspicion. This guy isn't just normally crazy, did he really research that thing within his own family? He still couldn't grasp the main reason. Wait, the timing fits perfectly. In his previous life, when the Devlin family annihilated the Blanders, the whole affair revolved around Hansi's research into the heavenly origin technique. The new heavenly origin technique. Asta recalled what he could. That bastard had wagered the fate of Devlin to crush Blander over this matter. He also realized the truth from the start. From the beginning he had seen the potential in the new heavenly origin technique. Asta began to piece together the reason why he was so terrifyingly powerful. Lost in thought, a voice suddenly called, Asta. He finally looked up and refocused. Hansi's voice was full of doubt, do you regret it? It really needs a larger scale. Asta scratched his head wearily and asked, enough, so why did you seek me out? He mentioned his own issue. First, I haven't reported my research on the heavenly origin technique to the family. Hearing that, Asta surmised, it seemed the Blander family had planted a spy somewhere, but he couldn't find them. He narrowed his eyes and went straight to the point, if the secret is exposed, wouldn't you suspect someone? For example, the secretary. Hansi sipped his tea and stated firmly, probably not, to be precise, it's more related to the procurement channels. Asta continued to speculate, if you trace the procurement route, someone must have deliberately leaked the security plan. He shared the same view, exactly. Once I realized I was exposed, I rolled out a counter-security plan. I don't want to die, either. Asta then smiled and offered another option, wouldn't joining Devlin be easier? They would surely welcome you. He calmly confirmed, fine, assume I have personal reasons. Then Hansi made a request, anyway, Asta, since you're not directly tied to the clan, I need you to handle this secretly. He let the documents drift, actually this research is a joint project, but the portion I'm responsible for hasn't progressed well. Hansi caught one of the papers and assured, I'll make sure you're fairly compensated. Then he pushed the papers forward and instructed, deliver this thesis to Professor Farron at the Zenion Academy. The condition Hansi added was, afterwards I'll give you the lumen healing technique. Asta curled his lip in satisfied amusement, this is my chance. He immediately nodded in agreement, all right. Asta stepped closer with an added demand, I accept the lumen healing technique, but I also want the complete new heavenly origin technique later. Only then are we true allies in the same boat, right? He raised the stakes once more. Hansi sounded helpless, Asta, you have no shame. He cut to the chase, just say yes or no, otherwise I won't accept. Finally he agreed, fine, the new heavenly origin technique, the name doesn't matter. You haven't learned the heavenly origin technique yet, so it's useless now, but later I'll give you the complete version. Hansi smoothed his hair and added, however, I also have one condition. He anticipated, until this thesis is completed, I may need your help. Asta, I hope you'll lend a hand then. If we're in the same boat, you should at least do that. Right? He agreed without hesitation, that's not a problem. If it's related to the thesis, I'll help, though, by the way, I can't read. Asta then took the stack of documents. But suddenly Hansi chimed in, just kidding, not only stingy but boring, too. At that, he asked with great curiosity, so is this Professor Farron trustworthy? Hansi boasted with great self-satisfaction, from our student days to when we were teaching assistants, he and I always vied for first and second place. Unfortunately the rivalry ended when I returned to the Blander family. Asta thought to himself, after all, I'm still the superior one, or is that just my delusion? He was extremely annoyed, Professor Farron, this world is really hopeless, now the academy has another madman like him. On a moonlit night by the castle, books and letters were flung and scattered about. Asta looked at the mess in irritation and stuffed everything into his space pouch to avoid detection. But why bring so many? Suddenly he noticed one particular letter. Asta opened it and read the inside, to my dear friend Asta. He squinted in disdain, dear my ass. The sender trusted Asta immensely. I've selected the magic text you must master for the future. I've listed the study sequence below, study diligently to cultivate the intellect befitting your stature. At the end of the letter was the signature, your friend, Hansi von Blander. Asta exclaimed, this is truly a fine gift. Then he picked up a book. Asta inwardly admired, he arranged an entire curriculum from basic to advanced magic. He's truly a genius and also a madman. Then he grinned with pleasure, good. Asta slammed paper and pen down on the table. He busied himself writing a few lines, sponsorship list, Hansi von Blander. He turned to the stack of books and calculated carefully, let's see. Aside from the lumen healing technique and the new heavenly origin technique thesis, there are about 132 volumes. Placing the lumen healing tome in the tower for everyone to see is another matter. I'll have to discuss it with Damien later. Asta recalled and nodded with satisfaction. You can call that a friend's privilege. He glanced down and realized, those 132 books Hansi gave me aren't just 132 separate volumes, they form a single system. Asta understood the mechanism clearly. If that system exists, anyone who wants to learn magic can build a foundation. He had prepared another plan. Yes, before I only thought of storing the books in the tower, but now it's different. In an old tower at night, it will become the tower's identity, a place that grants knowledge to those who crave it. Asta eagerly anticipated the results, an unexpectedly fruitful harvest. Hansi stood by the window musing, if he's useful I'll have him deliver the thesis, if not I'll use him and discard him. He drew back the curtain and admitted, but Asta, he is interesting. Hansi smiled strangely, and he recalled Asta's expression, kill him after all, whether he dies once or twice, what difference does it make? Hansi doubled over laughing, kill him. He actually wants me to kill him. That was just a threat to test him. But on second thought, I have no reason not to kill him. He became somewhat more cautious, but that life doesn't just talk, he truly doesn't care about dying. The more Hansi thought, the more intrigued he became, unlike those pigs. Truly interesting. He now valued Asta highly. He does hide many things, but isn't that better? I found an ally who can stand beside me and look in the same direction, and he yearns for the results of my research. It's a refreshing feeling. Importantly, one issue bothered him, but does he really not know how to read? Hansi remained full of doubt. No way, certainly not. Sunlight streamed through the castles. Asta was rolling up his sleeves to prepare. A large, square bag. An announcement came, Lord Asta, it's time to depart. A suitcase was being carried on top. The girl came to brief them, when you arrive at the academy there will be some simple paperwork. By the way, both the young master and Lord Asta are exempt from the entrance exam. She turned back with a smile on her face. And someone praised, still, you really look like a proper academy student now, it suits you. He nodded, thank you. She led the way and commanded, let's go. Asta's mind was a jumble of thoughts, exempt from the exam. Truly a prestigious family, it's like direct admission, anyway, I won't complain about being exempt. Suddenly a voice called out, friend. Damien waved excitedly, hurry up, come on. Gamo added a few words of advice, Damien, take care of yourself. Asta. He nodded obediently, yes. She sincerely prayed, this is a great opportunity, I truly hope you achieve good results. Asta smiled, thank you. Then he slowly started walking, the results I want, of course, are part of my plan. He had set a goal for himself, the greatest academy on the eastern continent, Zenion, countless patrons await me there. And I will seize them all. Asta was full of anticipation, just wait. You fools. Oh no, classmates, I'm coming for you. The carriage began to roll slowly along the dusty dirt road. Inside the cabin, Damien's eyes shone brightly, excited like a child, glued to the window frame watching outside. In contrast, Asta remained his usual calm self. He gently closed the book in his hands, I understand. Thoughtfulness gleamed in Asta's eyes, Hansi really is an outstanding mage. The basic principles of magic are simple, but the interpretations are endless. He pictured it in his mind, using water as an example. To some it's the water of life, the beginning of growth. But to others it's the water of disaster, like floods that sweep everything away. In short, differences lie only in perspective. Even with the same principle, noble families develop differently depending on how they view it. Now, after reading all the magic tomes stored in his spare space, Asta could clearly feel that. He could infer that Hansi's curriculum was related to the Devlin family's heavenly origin technique. At that moment Damien's voice rang out, pulling Asta from his thoughts, hey friend, look over here. His face bloomed with joy, we've arrived. Before them the Zenion Academy loomed against the pale blue sky, a gigantic gate carved with a majestic crest, ivory-colored walls stretching with a touch of antiquity. The carriage still thundered along the paved road, leaving a trail of drifting dust behind. Asta looked out with a momentary surprise, so this is Zenion Academy. Lancy sitting beside them then spoke up, the carriage only takes you this far. According to the teachings of the great sage, the first headmaster, at the entrance ceremony all students must walk on foot. No exceptions for status. She smiled and offered a blessing, we must part here. Have a good entrance ceremony, and I hope you gain many valuable lessons. After delivering the two, the carriage moved back. Damien waved happily in farewell. Suddenly he grabbed Asta's arm and urged, hey buddy, we have to hurry. Damien, full of excitement, Lancy said if we're late there might not be any seats left. He said this and Asta's face filled with question marks. Before Asta could make sense of it he was dragged along. What the hell? The entrance ceremony isn't a village theater where whoever arrives first grabs the best seats. Asta suddenly remembered something, wait, did Lancy say that? She must have prepared an excuse so Damien wouldn't dawdle. In the end he decided to let it go, fine, I'll let it slide this time. She is straightforward, but not shameless, definitely not just doing it for convenience. The opening ceremony took place in the hall, the whole place alive with noisy commotion. The other students had taken their seats, chattering and beginning to get to know one another. Light streamed through the glass panes, spreading across the space and reflecting off the speaker's podium placed at the center. Rows of seats rose from low to high, creating a solemn, orderly scene. Damien widened his eyes and exclaimed excitedly, so many people. He peered around, eyes shining like a child, oblivious to the drool at the corner of his mouth from excitement. Lancy was right, if we were late there'd be no seats. Asta held his head in helplessness, no, that's not it. He slipped his hand into his trouser pocket to rummage for something. Then took out a piece of paper, skimmed it and looked around, let's see. Class M3, seats 11 and 12 inch. While he was still finding the seats, Damien nervously stepped forward and asked, hey friend, can we sit over there? If I don't sit now I'm afraid the seats will be gone. Asta calmly reassured him, wait. A wave of annoyance hit him, God, weren't you the one who didn't want to enroll before? Why are you so excited now? Suddenly Damien, distracted, bumped into someone and tumbled to the floor. He looked up in puzzlement. To find a large, towering student before him, face dark and staring down sharply. The student glared and said in a grudging voice, "What's this?" Asta stepped forward to help Damien up. "Are you okay?" He scratched his head innocently and smiled brightly. "I'm fine." After standing, Damien turned to leave, waving his hand and wearing an apologetic smile. "I was just clumsy and bumped you." "Sorry." Not a few steps later, the student they had bumped spoke in a low voice. "Wait." He raised his hand, stained, and demanded, "What did you just get on my coat?" Asta looked at the smear and found it very familiar. "Spit, looks like a noble's offspring." In this situation, Damien would. No sooner had he thought that than Damien eagerly stepped forward, lightly licked his finger, and bent down to wipe the stain from the student's hand. "Sorry, I'll clean it for you." Still enthusiastic, he said proudly as if boasting of a feat, "See, the more I clean it the shinier it gets. I'll keep wiping until it shines even more." The large student's face darkened further, his jaw twitching with anger. Seeing that expression, Asta sighed inwardly, this is going to end in a fight. Rage surged to the peak, he swung a fist hard at Damien and roared, "Let go of me, you idiot." The student ground his teeth and enunciated each word, "You there, student. I think you're mistaken." The punch that seemed destined for Damien was instead intercepted by another hand reaching out to stop it. It turned out Asta had stepped forward in time to hold that fist. "Better to stop here." The student scowled, trying to suppress the rising fury. "Who are you?" He opened his mouth to say, "I am." But Damien quickly cut in, "He's my friend." Asta had to add, "Yes, a friend." He jerked his hand back from Asta's grip and sneered, "His friend? A fine friend indeed, few would take a hit for their mate. But today you'll regret that choice." He let out a soft sigh. It seems making peace with classmates from day one is impossible. Asta massaged the back of his neck, agreed. "Fine, you don't want to talk. I understand then." The matter quickly drew attention. "What's going on?" "Looks like a fight." A crowd of students gathered to gawk and began to gossip. "Who is that?" "The big guy looks like he's of the Delampy bloodline, but I don't recognize the other two." They compared strength and height among the three and guessed, "Who do you think will win?" "Probably the one from Delampy. I hear that family's new kid is vicious." One fellow suddenly cut in, louder than the rest, "Hey, are you kidding?" He confronted them, "There's a fight and you're just standing there watching." Another timidly asked, "Should we break them up?" A third agreed, "Yes, before things get out of hand." But the interrupter pointed and said, "Break them up." "Then how are they going to fight?" He signaled the others to make space, give them room. The gray-haired one was a mage and began erecting a barrier around them. Immediately, a group of nearby students began casting spells, mana flaring brilliantly. And in an instant a layer of light forming a barrier covered the whole area. A large crowd gathered to cheer, "Hickster, go. I'm betting on you." 3 snack votes, "I bet 2, I bet 3. Idiots, only underdog bets are worth it." In a corner where no one paid attention, a student simply stood with his arms crossed watching. He faintly curled his lips into a sly, knowing smile. Inside the barrier, the Delampy student aggressively rolled his fists together and introduced himself, "I am Hickster, the second son of the Delampy family." He dropped into a fighting stance, mana seething around him, his sharp gaze fixed on Asta and Damien. "What's your name?" He calmly loosened his tie and replied, "I don't have noble blood like you, just consider me a passerby." Hearing that, Hickster snorted with contempt, "Not noble. Fine, you're a mage, and tight spaces like this will be a disadvantage for you, so I'll generously let you strike first." His voice rang with provocation, "Come on then." At first Asta was a bit surprised. Then he curved his lips slightly, "This guy sure talks a lot." Asta decisively yanked his tie free in challenge, "You said you didn't want to talk, yet you yammer on, are you scared?" Those words poured fuel on the fire. Hickster trembled with fury. He stamped hard on the floor and lunged forward, growling an oath, "You bastard." Hickster's sprint cut through the air, he quickly closed the distance to Asta, but Asta remained very calm. He swung a powerful fist, but Asta nimbly flicked and tilted his body to dodge the blow. Hickster grew even angrier, veins bulging on his face, but before he could react, Asta's voice sounded slowly, "There's one more thing I haven't told you." Then he bent low, tightened his fist, mana converging fiercely, his voice emphasizing, "Not one person, but 2. With that, a punch landed squarely on Hickster's face, causing him to spit blood. Hickster's large body staggered and then collapsed backward onto the floor. Hickster struggled to steady his feet on the floor, panicking inwardly, "What the?" He gritted his teeth, trying to swallow the bone-deep pain as sweat began to pour. "Why does it hurt so much?" "That bastard." A jade-green shockwave surrounded Asta, its force completely overpowering him. Seeing the speed and power of Asta's attack, Hickster was filled with doubt. Is he really a mage? Hickster glanced at Damien in astonishment, healing magic. Damien stood outside the barrier now, hands extended toward Hickster, continuously channeling energy to heal him. He tried to regain his composure and adjust his stance. Damien smiled completely at ease. He raised both hands and began shaping a round, glowing sphere. Hickster remained bewildered between pain and confusion, but why? He glared at Damien, thoughts briefly drifting, so noble families really are exalted. Seizing the chance, Asta darted forward at incredible speed to attack, mocking, "You got punched and still dared to look away." Hickster felt a surge of restorative energy transmitted from Damien, but only had time to raise his hands to block Asta's relentless blows, entirely on the defensive. Seeing Hickster's surprisingly agile dodges, Asta smirked, "Not bad." Hickster snarled in anger, throwing punches wildly, while glancing at Damien with contempt, "That guy's healing me." Asta kept attacking madly, turning Hickster into a human punching bag. He cursed inwardly, "Crazy. My heart's racing. I wish one hit would just knock me out." After a dizzying bout, Hickster finally got a moment to breathe. His wide, bloodshot eyes bulged, his body began trembling uncontrollably, and he looked at himself in disbelief, "Am I scared?" Outside, the crowd kept cheering wildly, "Hickster, what are you doing? Don't hold back." Only Hickster could sense how utterly dominated he was. His face went pale while theirs were ecstatic. The prodigy of the Delampy family, the star of the Eastern continent, the hope of every martial artist. They cheered without restraint, "We believe in you. You've been toying with them too long, finish it now." Those words sounded like an insult to Hickster in that moment. He ground his teeth and snarled, "How dare you?" Rage twisted his features into a ferocious scowl, veins flashing in his eyes. Hickster roared, "You dare challenge a mere mage." He threw himself at them with the force of a wounded beast, but Asta simply jumped back one step, completely evading with no damage inflicted. Asta glanced down at the charging Hickster, not bad. Hickster seemed to lose his mind, his reason gone. He continued the charge, shouting, "Don't." He spat each word with contempt toward me. The punch aimed straight at Asta, sending him flying backward. And the crowd outside immediately erupted in loud cheers. "That's our Hickster." Yet Hickster bit his lip and looked down at his hand, his expression perplexed. The sensation from the punch told him it had been a direct hit. He clenched his fist tightly, unwilling to relax, puzzled to the core, but why did it feel so light? Asta flipped once and landed solidly on his feet. He brushed his jacket as if nothing had happened, glancing down at his clothes nonchalantly, all dusty now. Hickster stood there stunned for a moment. After a moment his face filled with fury as he shouted. Then he lunged forward like a lightning bolt. Asta remained calm, standing there with his hands in his pockets. Glancing toward Damien, calculating silently. Damien kept using healing magic on the guy. "If you want to finish this, I have to knock him out in one hit." Meanwhile, Damien was still enthusiastically and very amicably healing the man. Asta closed his eyes to sense the flows of mana around him. "Let's see, this move will do." Blue-green bolts of lightning crackled from his hands, gathering energy from a technique I created with my comrades in a past life. His focused gaze slowly opened, cold. It tapped energy from collisions between mana particles. He targeted Hickster's mana, but it wasn't purely martial arts or conventional magic. Asta dashed forward, all his strength concentrated in his hand. A pure technique that only exploits the properties of mana. He unleashed the final punch with a thunderous boom, leaving Hickster no time to react. The cheering crowd around them also felt the punch's shockwave and cried out in alarm. A young spectator tried to pry his eyes open to see what had happened. What was that? All that could be seen was dust and Hickster still standing motionless. Then he could no longer hold himself up and collapsed to his knees. He crumpled into a heap at Asta's feet. The crowd fell into stunned silence, the scene became utterly quiet. A single arm rose up powerfully. The hand clenched in a declaration of victory. It was Asta who remained standing after the decisive blow. He snorted coldly. Staring down the silent crowd and barking wildly, "Cheer up." The people immediately erupted in cheers like an earthquake, overflowing with excitement. So cool. A mage beat a martial artist. He did it, he did it. Bastard, this is the moment the weak triumphs. Suddenly a sweet voice called from behind, "Friend." Damien rushed over to congratulate them, smiling brightly and proudly, "We won." Asta nodded and patted his head, "Yeah." He teased with a smile, "So don't suck your thumb anymore, okay?" The others looked at the two celebrating with complex expressions. One man folded his arms and sneered, "Never thought a mage could fight like that." At that moment, an annoyed voice suddenly rang out from behind, "How rude." Shouts rose up, "Move aside, you thugs, get out of here." The man who had appeared shouted loudly, "It's the entrance ceremony, why is it as noisy as a broken market?" He spun around scolding, "Is it you? Or you? If you don't quiet down, I'll have you all arrested." Asta frowned, thinking to himself, "I'm in trouble." He glanced at the noisy man behind them with a sense of resignation. "But it's fine, after all, I'm a cleaner." Asta tried to stay as quiet as possible, there were many ways to slip away. And since everyone was excited, they wouldn't forget easily. But suddenly he looked at Damien, who kept shouting and pointing, "Here, not them, it's us, it's us. Over here, over here." Asta helplessly narrowed his eyes. Damien's words immediately drew attention. The man angrily asked, "Are you the thugs?" Damien cheerfully admitted it, with no intention of fleeing, "Yes, it's us." Draw that man's attention forward to where Hickster lies unconscious on the floor. From inside a closed room, the man's stern voice echoed, "Damien, you and Asta." Asta looked a bit annoyed at the mess he'd caused. Damien, however, couldn't hide his excitement, "Yes, yes." The man sitting in the chair wore a serious expression, "Both of you confessed honestly, right? So this time I'll let it pass without deducting points. It seems the opponent wasn't seriously injured." However, he didn't forget to frown in warning, "From now on I'll be monitoring you more closely." Asta breathed a sigh of relief and stood up straighter upon hearing that. The schoolyard was quiet now, sunlight filtering through the canopy of the tall, ancient trees casting cool shade. Asta pushed the door open and stepped out, taking a deep breath. Luckily the entrance ceremony hasn't started yet. At once murmurs rose around them. "Is that him? With that body he beat a duel master. How does a magic system person fight like that?" Damien, never one to be quiet, immediately waved, "Everyone's looking at us." Asta kept his icy expression, thinking, "Damn it, we're way too conspicuous, stop waving, you little old man." A group of 3 students quickly approached, paying attention to them. One of them said, "Oh, there they are." Damien looked carefree and very enthusiastic, "Maybe they've saved seats for us." "My friends, classmates, this is great." Asta replied politely, "Yeah, probably." At that moment, a bald head with silver hair, the dean, appeared, and a voice began to speak. "Yes, so." The dean, his serious face began the continuation of the wise founder's address, "Our academy will." The speech dragged on, yes, drowned out by noises below so only bits could be heard, while Damien and Asta chuckled. Asta kept his cool look as always, thinking, the dean is really resilient, he can keep speaking that long. He suddenly noticed Damien's expression beside him. He'd closed his eyes and was nodding off, sleeping soundly without them realizing when. Asta laughed with a sigh, "This guy, seriously. He grabbed Damien's hand and lifted it to wipe his mouth. Don't drool anymore, for heaven's sake. Suddenly a voice rang out. Dean, there's something you need to attend to right away. The dean paused slightly. Is there anything more important than the entrance ceremony? The person leaned toward the dean and whispered something into his ear. The dean's expression changed, and he immediately cleared his throat. He spoke into the microphone. Sorry, everyone, an emergency has just arisen and I must leave immediately. The speech will end here, the ceremony will continue. Then he waved and left at once. Shortly after, a long-haired girl stepped forward. She walked with a swagger, exuding fierce energy. Her gaze swept the hall as if searching for the one who'd committed a grave offense. She shouted, everyone, attention. Even the teachers seated nearby trembled in fear. The students couldn't help but flinch. Even the man who broke up the earlier disturbance fell silent. Still maintaining an intimidating presence. She introduced herself, I'm Jaira, representing the dean. Due to an unexpected schedule issue the speech couldn't be completed, so I'll be running the entrance ceremony. Her voice echoed through the auditorium. We'll begin with the oath of the new students. First, the representative of magic. Dania the Denai responded softly from the front row, yes. The crowd murmured in surprise, what? A member of the Denai family is taking the entrance exam too. Is her ability insufficient? The bold girl walked up, and from below the whispers rose, think before you speak. She's the third daughter of the house head. If her ability were lacking, would Denai really let her take the entrance exam? Asta frowned as he looked at the girl, Dahlia de Denai. He silently assessed, if the Devlin house is the top magic family in the East, then Denai ranks just after among the magic noble houses. He recalled events from his previous life, in which Dahlia de Denai had grown up in the Denai household, forever second best and destined to become the family's representative mage. Her power was quite strong. When I quit my janitor job, she helped me a lot. Given their not bad past relationship, Asta raised a hand to his chin and smiled, feeling somewhat amused. But calling them benefactors of each other wouldn't be accurate, they're more like troublesome acquaintances. In any case, Dahlia enrolling this year was good news. Jaira continued calling names. Next, the representative of the martial combat track. Paolo stepped forward. The young man answered immediately in a decisive voice, yes. Asta, standing behind, quietly assessed, the combat side doesn't seem to come from a noble clan, not from a distinguished family or gentry. That Hickster fellow comes from a noble house but is only this good. I wonder how furious the great families will be. After Paolo stepped up, Jaira announced, this concludes the oath. She continued, next, please allow me to introduce the professors who will be in charge of class 172. Professors, please come forward in order. Meanwhile, Dahlia was staring intently in a certain direction. Asta seemed to feel a gaze fixed on him. What is it? Is it just my imagination? He couldn't help feeling suspicious, as if their eyes had met. But then he immediately dismissed it. Anyway, it's not important. Dahlia was slowly walking down the stairs. Perhaps because she was distracted, she suddenly stumbled and cried out in panic. That didn't seem to break Asta's train of thought. He stroked his chin thoughtfully. I heard there's Professor Farron, right? Looking at the professor standing on the podium, Asta felt impatient. When will he come out? One by one the other professors also stepped forward to speak. And finally the person he had been waiting for appeared. An authoritative voice rang out, pleased to meet you, I am Perrin, in charge of the foundational curriculum of arcane theory. Asta frowned in appraisal. I expected his bearing to be similar to Henzi. But he's completely different. Studying the man before him, he thought, still, Henge is a person of character, excellent at wearing a social mask, I shouldn't judge hastily. Next, Jaira spoke. With that, the introduction of the professors is complete. The entrance ceremony is adjourned. Asta looked back at Damien, who still hadn't woken. Jaira's voice sounded like a lullaby. He should follow the warden's directions to his assigned dormitory. He slapped his shoulder to wake him. Wake up. Damien, mouth still drooling, dazedly said, is it over? Asta's face went cold and he said without blinking, you were caught nodding off and have been expelled. Now we're going home. Damien blinked in bewilderment. A horrific scenario immediately unfolded in his mind. A look of terror appeared on his face. At that time dusk was falling, golden light spreading over the rooftops of the castles. Asta hesitated along the corridor searching for his dorm room, thinking helplessly, that bastard Damien teased a bit and already raised such a fuss. He stopped in front of a room, staring at the closed door and wondering, is it here? Asta reluctantly pushed the door open and stepped inside. Why is it on the topmost floor? Looking at the room's furnishings, he marveled, sure enough, the academy is nice. He inspected a corner of the desk, is this a personal item? Turns out they issue standardized equipment for the whole academy. He then picked up a green notebook and opened the wardrobe door to find hooks inside. Asta took the coat hanging there, thinking to himself, even a trivial item can reveal one's background. But everyone will buy personal things sooner or later. When he pushed the door and stepped out, he encountered someone. Asta recalled his roommate might be named Paolo, but his gaze looked rather unwelcoming. Paolo closed his eyes and spoke coldly, trying to remain as quiet as possible. He carried a suitcase, his face showing no emotion. How you arrange your luggage or set up your things is none of my concern. And he kept issuing isolation-like demands. Late nights are fine, but let's not interfere with each other. Of course, no late-night chatting either. Seeing Asta not respond, Paolo's eyes opened and he stared at him threateningly. Answer me. Asta's eyes flashed brightly as he calmly looked at the other. Look at him. Seeing Asta remain silent, Paolo grew more irritated and snapped. Why won't you answer? Asta was still rifling through his memory. I heard he's the top graduate of the combat track. I wonder how strong he really is. Then, suddenly, he leaned forward and dashed up in front of him. Paolo reflexively became alert, his hand unconsciously touching the sword's hilt in a ready stance. What are you trying to do? At that moment Asta stopped and glanced down. Not bad. Observing his hand movements, he silently praised. He holds a sword but knows restraint, controlling himself to avoid harming others. Not bad. Just then Damien's voice came from outside. Hey, come out quickly. Asta snorted, what for? I'm heading out now. He slid past Paolo and reached out to pat his shoulder lightly, even so, in return. Asta turned back with a bright, mischievous smile, if I sing after midnight, don't complain. Clear. Outside, Damien ran over excitedly, buddy. He eagerly asked, who's your roommate? Asta replied coolly, Paolo. Damien went blank for a few seconds, murmuring, Paolo, don't know who that is. Asta scolded inwardly, no wonder, you slept like the dead. He enthusiastically raised his hand to invite, anyway, let's tour the academy. Lancy said there are countless things to see here, we must go on the first day. Oh, and she said we should go with a friend. Hearing that, Asta considered briefly, let's see how many things are worth seeing. Then he smirked and smiled, let's go. The two walked side by side around the campus, the atmosphere harmonious and peaceful, their conversation flowing without end. The sunset sky was dyed a warm orange, the last light of day bathing the scene in a soft, peaceful glow. Stopping on a bridge, Damien exclaimed excitedly, a pond. We don't have anything like this at home. Asta seemed a bit weary of his friend's enthusiasm. Before them was a clear pond, small ripples lapping back and forth. Asta felt weary, I'm really tired, it's like babysitting. Maybe that's why Lancy paired me with him. But who am I? A petty-minded person. If bothered, I'll retaliate. He suddenly muttered, then have them make one for us. Damien, not understanding, widened his eyes and looked over. Asta smiled and explained, just dig and pour water in, that's all. Instantly Damien's eyes lit up like stars as he eagerly cried, yes. Tell them to make it bigger, bigger than this pond. Back at the manor, Lancy sneezed while doing the dishes. After that idea, Damien began to ponder seriously, what should we name the pond? Asta chuckled softly. Then casually offered a name, Blood Fawn Lake. The name made Damien light up, he slapped his hands once, that's decided. Back at the manor, Lancy sneezed again, a foreboding washing over her like a tide. Damien continued wandering excitedly, pointing, look at that statue, it's beautiful. Asta glanced and casually suggested, tell them to make that too, make it Blood Fawn Lake too. He didn't hesitate for even half a second. So Damien started babbling non-stop, sketching with his hands like an art director, make it a dragon, refine every scale for beauty. The more he heard, the more thrilled he became, nodding repeatedly, absolutely perfect. Lancy went pale, sweating coldly, her neck prickling, what? What's happening? Why is my spine tingling? After a while of strolling, Asta asked, done touring enough, shall we head back? Damien agreed cheerfully. He nodded slightly, then his expression darkened, let's see, the cleaner has identified about 7, counting those not yet confirmed it's around 10. Estimating the main distribution centers, the core is. Asta's gaze stopped at the second school of magic building. A massive, imposing structure. He rummaged through his memory, the second school of magic houses Professor Farron's research rooms. He suspected, so the target really is Professor Farron. Asta began to calculate, Devlin must have realized Hansi has an aide, so now they suspect Farron, who has close ties to him. His eyes flicked to a direction, in the bushes a figure was silently watching. The corner of Asta's mouth twitched into a thin, mocking smile, a surge of interest rising like an undercurrent, why would I worry they haven't trailed us? Just at the right time they tail us nicely. Let's see what they know. One evening the sky darkened, night thickly enveloped the academy. The lone lamps cast pale yellow light, flickering in the night breeze. Suddenly a shadow darted across the rooftops, moving so nimbly it left only a blur. It leaped lightly like a cat escaping a trap. He reached the east building, with a single kick the shadow landed almost silently. As he touched down, a voice called from the darkness, you're here. The newcomer nodded slightly, stepped forward and asked tersely, where are the others? The waiting man replied briefly, went ahead, orders came from above urgently, reports to converge at the target's lair. The other asked, primary target or secondary? He answered, secondary. He added, it seems the primary target has been tailed already, but we've still gathered intelligence. Tonight, at midnight exactly, the item will be transferred to the secondary target. Hearing that, the newly arrived man in black stroked his chin, I see. He pondered aloud, Henge, the primary target, has acted and issued orders to us. So among the secondary targets, the one under surveillance is Professor Farron. As if realizing something, the newcomer in black flinched, his eyes widening, he expressed tense concern. Wait, what about the solo numbers? You expect us to get past those monster professors? At least number 1 should be here, or maybe a couple of the solo operatives, otherwise we can't handle them. The man in black waiting in the shadows responded indifferently, number 1 didn't come, nor did the other solo operatives. The other couldn't help clutching his head and swore, damn it. Just as he was sinking into despair, the other spoke in a deep hoarse voice, but. He lowered his voice, Callahan the fire demon, he'll join us. The newcomer looked as if struck by lightning, eyes wide in disbelief. Callahan. In his memory, Callahan was the vice commander of Devlin's Ruby Magic Order, if it was him, that would be more than enough. Remembering this, the man clenched his teeth, he was infamous for cold-blooded methods in service of his missions. That meant. Thinking that, he swallowed hard, tried to suppress the trembling rising within him, then ground his teeth and cursed under his breath, damn it, they're sending someone willing to risk everything for the mission. The other man in black calmly reassured him, it won't necessarily erupt into open conflict. The clan also hesitates to expose a famed mage on a mission. The first scoffed coldly, fair enough, assume that then. The other urged, then let's go. The two shadows darted out of the building, rushing to join forces to increase their chances of survival. However, the two did not know that all their actions had already been seen by someone. Standing on a nearby rooftop, the moonlight fell on his face. Midnight, huh? The cold night wind swept by, carrying a sound like a soft breath. Callahan. Asta stood in thoughtful observation. Zenion Academy was vast, one had to know the terrain to avoid getting lost, even I must. He gazed for a long moment at the buildings surrounding the fountain. Asta's eyes hardened as he quietly concluded, all right, not bad. A vague excitement flickered inside him. Just the kind of matter to occupy me, not as much as in my past life, but it still gives a feeling. A silent evening, lit only by the flicker of a blue flame. Asta disguised himself in black, sitting in place to observe, exuding the familiar aura of a Devlin cleaner. Callahan leapt up and laughed wickedly. Callahan, he was still basking in his heyday even while I was active. After the Devlin clan risked everything to stand against the Blander clan. He stayed with the declining clan to prove his loyalty. He's dangerous now, but Callahan's true peak came after the war with Blander. He curled his lip in a sinister grin. Devlin's fire mage, unstoppable, had made his mark as a war sorcerer. Finally Asta made a decision, then I must capture him. He stared at the glowing book and thought, Callahan's magic was one of Devlin's secret fire techniques, and he was one of the continent's famed mages. He's worth the risk. Asta lowered his head and walked in silence, pondering. I once wondered why a troublesome person would tail me and then return. This is an unexpected windfall, yet something still bothers me. Then he resolved, the target they mentioned, the Hansi's manuscript, is with me. A blank sheet appeared in Asta's mind, yet they say the item will be handed to the secondary target, Professor Farron. The two masked men also appeared, asserting, my manuscript cannot be a fake, and it's impossible that the item they refer to isn't that manuscript. Asta said slowly, then the target being delivered today is a fake manuscript. A man appeared, fastening his cloak. He reached out to open a cupboard to retrieve something. Immediately the man tucked a weapon at his hip. Then he flicked his hand and turned away. Beside him someone else slept under a blanket, while the cloaked man quietly slipped away. It was Paolo. He cast a sharp glance to the side. While Asta lay dreaming on the bed, unaware of anything. Outside the castle it was pitch dark, all the lights were off except for a single room blazing brightly. A candle was lit beside Farron. He was staring intently at something. Soon after, Farron squeezed his eyes shut and grimaced, that rotten Devlin. He cursed in anger, they said they'd exposed a vulnerability, but because they hadn't crossed the line I held back, yet now they dared to trespass into my territory. And to do it so brazenly, what is this? Suddenly Farron's eyes sharpened, so that's it. Abruptly the white door of the room cracked open. And a figure wrapped head to toe stepped inside. Farron glanced and thought, a mercenary. And immediately he called the name sharply, startling the person. Paolo. Farron calmly admonished, next time you intend to disguise yourself, first learn how to refine the shape of ether. It's the basic skill for covert action. Paolo held a white envelope in his hand and brought it forward to Farron. Farron glanced down and said, well, if there's a next time. Hearing that, Paolo frowned in confusion as if he didn't understand the words. Farron nodded, envelope in hand, Hensi, so it was you. He inspected it without opening, you tried to transfer the manuscript without Devlin noticing, yet in the end you were caught miserably. But then Farron changed his mind, that sly old fox isn't so easy to nab. What are you scheming, Hensi? Suddenly the room burst into a great red flame. And a man in a white cloak strode in to greet them, a pleasure to meet you, Professor Farron. It was Callahan. He smiled wickedly and smoothed his hair, my name is Callahan. Does a professor who buries his head in the lab even know what's going on? Paolo was stunned, jerking around with a face of utter panic. Callahan remained arrogant, looks like we have other guests. Mercenaries. Yes, that swordsman seems to know me, but what about the professor? Not letting him continue his posturing, Farron quickly cut in, I've never heard that name before. He planted his hands on the table and stood up abruptly, enough, stop stalling and get to the point. Callahan frowned, grimaced, then insulted harshly, your stench makes my nose want to fall off. Then he clapped his hands over his face and laughed harshly. Well, fascinating. This is the first time I've been treated like this. So I'll be frank. Callahan pointed at Paolo standing opposite and declared unmistakably, that man will die. An orange circle appeared at the tip of his finger. And the professor watched Callahan glare and ask, should I take your hand or your eye? Suddenly a hand grabbed someone's cloak hard. And Farron stepped forward to block Callahan's strike. The two powerful blows collided head-on, creating a scene of devastation. Paolo squinted and then shouted. He forced his eyes open to see what the opponent would do next. Both of them stood rooted amid the rubble. Farron turned and cried out. Paolo. He announced nonchalantly, from this moment on I'll treat you as a mercenary before a student, so look after your own life. Paolo understood and promptly replied, yes. Farron turned, nodded, and thought, no bells rang despite that explosion, it's highly likely those Devlin rats set hidden magic. Night gradually fell over the grand castles. Farron narrowed his eyes, pondering, can I only rely on that rookie mercenary? Callahan still stood there arrogantly taunting, this envelope of documents surely came from those Blander scoundrels. He sneered, he doesn't look like he'll hand it over willingly. Farron glanced at Callahan, what should I do? Suddenly he put on a terrifying expression and asked, or shall I play with you a little? As soon as he finished speaking, Callahan unleashed a move that generated a golden light around him. Farron and Paolo remained passive, standing and watching. When suddenly several masked figures swooped in from nowhere. Callahan opened his mouth and laughed like a demon. Seeing the scene before him, Paolo involuntarily widened his eyes in worry. Immediately, Farron quickly formed a white circle before him. The two streams of white and golden light from them collided head-on. A cloaked figure stood at a distance watching, seeing the beams of light shining from the castle. It was Asta. He looked up and told himself, it's starting. Asta took out a mask and held it in his hand. Then put it on his face. Long time no see, huh? Asta's eyes glowed and he nimbly leapt up. Not just Asta, but the #1 cleaner. Having prepared everything, Asta stared ahead and said, all right, let's go. He clasped his hands, Lady Moon. I sincerely pray. Let me once again be the righteous purifier of chaos today. He squinted, but admitted, I've never thought about righteousness. Instantly, Asta sprang high into the air. The side of the castle had been battered into ruin. Callahan laughed loudly, not bad, mercenary. Paolo panted wearily but still gripped his sword tightly. He glanced back anxiously, damn it. Below Paolo's waist was a glowing object. Unexpectedly, the captain's talisman I got turned out to be a protective charm. Lucky. Suddenly he was startled by a voice shouting, get out of here. Farron, eyes glowing, flew forward. And unleashed a powerful attack toward Callahan. Callahan nimbly countered at once. Farron casually patted Paolo on the shoulder, not bad, maybe I can trust you a bit more. Paolo looked at the sword and frowned. There were runes on the blade. Farron turned to ask, can you block it? Paolo stared ahead and answered, as much as it takes. Then he affirmed boldly, it's no longer a question of whether I can, if I fail, I die. Callahan chuckled lightly, contemptuous, a mage and a guardian make an interesting pairing. A beam of light slipped into the ice block. Callahan didn't hesitate and launched an attack at Paolo. Fortunately he quickly used his sword to parry and dodge to the side. On this side Farron kept the spell steady on the blue circle. The guardian has been dealt with. And the masked men have been taken down one by one. If this keeps up I'll be exhausted. As if struck by an idea, Farron glanced and made a decision, I have to gamble. Farron maintained his mana in his hands, thinking. When the amount of mana distributed in nature is limited, if many entities give orders at once, a struggle for control will erupt. He immediately poured all his strength into this strike, so how much will you draw from me? Callahan stood there and asked, are you challenging me? Callahan, not to be outdone, scoffed and lunged up, fine, try it. But as he neared Farron he suddenly bounced back and shouted. A beam of light with tremendous power engulfed the entire castle. Inside, all three of them were surrounded by the beams of light. Paolo was also suspended in midair, looking down. He opened his eyes slightly, damn. Paolo watched Callahan and Farron fiercely battling and seethed, they're all monsters, there's no opening to break through. Not long after, Paolo lay motionless under the rubble. If this was going to happen, you should have fought each other from the start. Three cloaked figures standing outside looked up at the violent vortex tearing things apart when someone spoke, how ruthless. A man who observed this grew anxious, stop. Charging in now is suicide. Catch your breath. He turned and asked, how many cleaners are left? Suddenly the white light flared in fury and hurled those cloaked figures outward. One man gaped in surprise, an ambush? Then he shouted loudly, and at the same time a black cloaked figure quickly closed in, it's an ambush. It's Asta. He landed hard on a large rock. His sudden appearance forced Callahan and Farron to turn and look. He lifted his cold eyes and declared, and now begins my grand entrance. The two remained locked in combat, but their eyes shifted toward Asta at his words. Callahan, enraged, turned and shouted, are you mocking me? Ignoring the shout, Asta, fired up, lunged forward. He quickly grabbed him by the throat and pressed, Callahan. Asta's eyes turned icy as he said, this place will be your grave. Caught off guard, Callahan couldn't react in time, racked with pain, he could only glare at Asta. Asta shouted, die. But then Callahan thrust both hands hard into Asta's chest. And he was hurled away by a tremendous force. Callahan skidded along the ground with a bewildered expression. He clapped a hand over his mouth and grimaced, damn, a mana backlash. Wasting no time, Asta dashed swiftly toward Callahan. Because of the heavy blow he took earlier, he coughed up blood continuously. At that moment the other black-cloaked figures quickly closed in. Callahan grabbed a vial and thought to himself, I must suppress the mana backlash first. After drinking the potion, he wiped the blood away with his hand. Where did someone like him come from? Suddenly Callahan widened his eyes. He saw Asta now surrounded by a blue radiance. Callahan stood dumbfounded at the sight, none of his moves are wasted, and his magic is optimized perfectly for speed. He was startled, then looked and said, I'm actually impressed. Immediately Callahan produced countless red circles. I don't know who you are, but... He opened his mouth to reveal two fangs and shouted, I'll kill you. And so the two beams of light slammed into each other. The black-cloaked men were thrown far away. Asta widened his eyes as if witnessing something terrifying. That beam exploded, obliterating everything around it. After the powerful strike, Callahan spat blood and wondered, did I catch him? A smug look spread across his face, the other cleaners got hit too, but who cares about them? What matters is completing the mission. Looking up at the clear sky with a few blurred dark shapes falling, he was fairly certain, in that sense, the masked one is the target to be eliminated. Callahan wiped his face and chuckled, I'm excited, this isn't like me at all. Confident of victory inwardly, if I coordinate with the remaining cleaners, I'll take down Professor Farron. Suddenly the glass vial in his hand slipped and rolled to the ground. An unseen gun barrel abruptly trained on him and a disdainful voice said, is that all you've got? Through the billowing smoke a vague figure stepped forward and said, Callahan, you may look stunned, but inside you're cold as a snake. I knew from the start you planned to blow me up along with the cleaners. Asta pointed his hand in a gun gesture at the matrix before him and continued. That cruelty is precisely why you'll fail. As soon as the words finished, Asta decisively fired a beam of light forward. Callahan could only stand dazed, the single thought in his head, too fast. The powerful beam cut through the air and flashed across him. The wind blew away the blood droplets soaking him. The small tied clump of hair at the back of Callahan's head snapped off. A bullet pierced straight through his forehead, leaving a bloody hole in his head. Asta slowly descended to the ground, standing over the collapsed, flattened body. The recent fight had drained much of his strength, he appreciated his opponent's ability, no wonder he's Callahan. Recalling the earlier explosive attack, Asta rated him highly, others would have died from such a surprise. But he countered, his combat renown is justified. His reactions and judgment are very quick. Of course he also noted his own lucky break, but Callahan's final move helped a lot. If he had teamed up with the cleaners and dragged it out. Asta thought, I would have lost, my mana capacity is still far too low. He then stepped closer to the corpse. Asta directly reached and rifled through Callahan's body. Let's see, it should be around here somewhere. Finally he pulled out a cloth pouch containing a few items. Just as I thought, most combat mages trust no one, so they carry their secret techniques with them. Asta claimed it as his own, and of course I don't have time to identify the original owner. I can open it slowly later. With everything finished, he turned and glanced to the side. Now Asta spoke with slight reproach, you're late. A man was approaching through the smoke. He quietly called out, Professor Farron. The man calmly uttered, and then explained, clearing out the rats took a little time. The people over there have all been frozen by Farron. He remained icy, raising his hand and drawing power. More importantly, you're a rat too. Asta acted indifferent and instead laughed loudly like a madman. That guy is a combat thug. What do you think about me just killing one of Deculin's men? His manner caused the man to drop his guard. You call that fellow crazy, were you sent by Hensey? And I'm not that thug. Suddenly there was no more doubt. Asta felt at a loss for words. You trust me because of that? He wondered about the identity of the one who had approached earlier, so who was that mercenary who came near me? Farron asked an oddly related question. Did he split the thesis into two parts? Asta didn't answer, brushing the topic aside. I haven't heard anything about that, so I'm not sure. It's very possible it's a fake. Hensey probably planned carefully, using a fake as bait to draw the rats out. Recalling Hensey's eager demeanor, I'll be the bait. He judged, it seems he wants to strengthen defenses at Haddon and the academy here and reduce the Devlin family's influence. Asta thought to himself that even though the cleaners had cast light extinguishing spells and the battle was sizable, with reports late there was no reason the Imperial Knights hadn't arrived. The Devlins must have used their connections with the Imperial Knights. Farron once more confirmed his identity, so you really are the messenger. Asta directly produced a neatly tied stack of papers. He took them up and examined them carefully. Then Farron lifted his eyes from the documents. Do you know the contents? He didn't hide it, I only know it roughly. The man no longer pressed and calmly replied, understood. At this, Asta candidly stated, fine, I don't mind a one-on-one fight, but are you sure? I don't want to lose a reliable ally. Farron put the documents into his coat, rarely agreeing, for now I'll accept the thesis, I don't want to lose an ally, so let's drop this. Suddenly he changed the subject, do you want anything? Seeing his puzzled look, Farron explained, that man, Hensey, seems to trust only a certain kind of person. Those with desires that match his, surely you fit that type, so to build trust one must give you something. Hearing that, he thought seriously for a while and finally answered, a book. This request surprised Farron enough that he had to confirm, a book. Asta began to imagine a scene, I'll build a tower, a tall tower, and fill it with books anyone can read. If you contribute a book containing your views on magic, that would be excellent. Farron heard this and could only scratch his head and mumble agreement, alright, I don't think anyone can read and understand it all, but writing a book is probably better. He seemed pleased. He turned, thinking the matter done and prepared to leave, I must go now. But the man suddenly called after him. Wait, how will we stay in contact? Aren't you supposed to forward the next thesis? Asta seriously gave the reason that left the other speechless, I don't keep men's contact information. Then he pulled a string of purple beads from his pocket. Asta tossed the bracelet toward him, use this, it's a communication crystal, they're linked so if one breaks, the other breaks too. To summon me, tap once, if there's trouble, tap twice. He left one last word, I'll come find you then. Farron took the strand of beads. Noticing another issue, hey, I don't even like men. But when he looked up, the other had vanished. He muttered to himself, why do I feel kind of creeped out? Time passed, and not long after, the Empire's knights arrived. After handing everything over, the Imperial Knights quickly secured the scene. They split up to support each of the wounded. Then evacuated the Academy students to guard against a possible second attack. By then Asta had changed back into his regular clothes. Of course he took the chance to blend in with the students. Damien, still sleepy, looked at him curiously, friend, where have you been? Feels like I haven't seen you in a while. He gave a perfunctory reply, had to deal with something big. Asta scanned the scene, calculating, let's see. With Callahan's body and the cleaner's traces to investigate, the Devlins will have to lie low for a while. Seeing him distracted and looking around, Damien misread it as a need to use the bathroom. Friend, been a while. Constipated? Want me to heal you? Asta didn't answer, focusing on his thoughts, but why did Farron react like that in the fight just now? He usually doesn't respond, but when I blocked Callahan's spell, his energy bled into my field, which let me stop it and avoid something worse. He recalled the sensation, it wasn't that the field became stronger but rather like a true cancelling phenomenon. He connected cases where that kind of magic was used, that's a method mainly employed by elemental mages. A technique that prevents harm to the caster, like Callahan using fire. Asta turned away, frowning and pursing his lips, I don't understand. Beside him Damien thought he was speaking to him and eagerly offered help, you don't understand? Take your pants off right now, friend. But Asta's words were clearly driven by the thought in his head, why did it react then and what are the activation conditions? He looked toward the distant castle and told himself, I need to investigate. And by the way, reminder to you, don't pull your pants down, Damien. The solemn, antiquely designed building, Asta silently planned, La Piter, the largest library in the east, is in the academy, I should find clues there. Suddenly a voice called out, hey, you're Asta, right? He approached and greeted warmly, nice to meet you, Anchinbi. Asta kept a cold demeanor and the boy still smiled. You're quite a capable fighter, aren't you? The remark put Asta on guard, what? He saw me fight. If my identity's exposed that's trouble. Do I have to kill him? He still had a smile on his lips. You're quite a skilled fighter, aren't you? Asta thought to himself, what? He saw me fighting. That's a huge smear on my cleaner record. He kept praising casually. A brawl with the combat arts faction on the very first day. That's impressive, how could you fight like that? Those words immediately softened him a little. He was momentarily at a loss, not leaving a scandal but becoming famous. Of course that's how it should be. It really wasn't that important. Asta turned away. He was low on energy then, it'll be different later. Chenbi scratched his head and laughed. Ah, I see. He shyly followed behind Asta and Damien through the crowd. After a while, Chenbi honestly expressed his wish. Actually, I want to tag along. I haven't made any friends yet. It's hard to squeeze into other groups, you know. Asta glanced once. Yeah, I get the idea. He had seen this long ago. In principle, the academy promises equal treatment and to set aside status. But that's the academy's stance, not the students'. Poor kids like him naturally get pushed to the margins. Thinking it over, Asta wasn't bothered. He told himself, oh well, I don't care. So he turned back and agreed with Chenbi. All right, suit yourself. Chenbi breathed a sigh of relief. Thank goodness, to be honest I was pretty anxious. Chenbi relaxed a bit and tried to ingratiate himself. If something like that happens again, it's awkward to be alone. Asta responded with a quiet chuckle. Could be. Emboldened, he became bolder. Oh, by the way, the two chatted comfortably on the way. Asta found it rather novel, so this is what a normal conversation is like. He lifted his cold eyes and reflected, my life always gets tangled with lunatics. Recalling the striking faces he'd met recently, Asta comforted himself, I've forgotten what normal feels like. The corner of his mouth curved into a slight smile. Now the academy life finally begins. The next morning at the academy. Golden sunlight shone on the glittering buildings. In the lecture hall, students were almost all present. Damien yawned loudly. He sluggishly sprawled over the desk and complained, so sleepy. Chenbi arrived and waved cheerfully to say good morning, Asta, Damien. As soon as he sat down he sounded a bit disgruntled. There was an incident like that yesterday and we're still coming to class today, isn't that too much? Asta flipped a page and replied, yeah, fair enough. Asta observed him. From the way Chenbi spoke yesterday he didn't seem from a noble or wealthy family, yet he wasn't shy and was quite cheerful. His mood was good, Asta judged silently, he'd make a decent friend. Suddenly he turned and asked, hey, did you hear anything? Chenbi revealed some info. I heard on the way that our homeroom teacher is Professor Jera. Asta repeated the curious name, Jera. Chenbi was astonished. Don't tell me you don't know Professor Jera. She's the one rumored to have single-handedly slaughtered a whole pack of trolls. Oh, she's here. He looked down toward the podium as a female professor approached. Ah, I remember now. The familiar face sparked recognition in Asta. The professor had stood on the platform during yesterday's opening ceremony. She began to introduce herself. Pleasure to meet you, I'm Jera. Yesterday was a bit chaotic but nothing serious. Please put it behind you and focus on your studies. She gestured toward the device being brought in, so before the first lesson we'll measure your mana. Essentially, mana has two aspects, quantity and quality. Now, which of those two is more important? A hand went up, and Jera asked, what's your name? The girl stood up a little shyly, I'm Arjun. Jera permitted, Arjun, please answer. The girl seriously and carefully offered her view. I don't think there's an absolute answer, but if you have a sufficiently precise level of mana, then mana quality is more important. Jera pressed for the reason. Arjun explained, when dueling mages of the same rank, the side with superior mana quality will have the advantage. Asta also noted this opinion and partly agreed, yes, that's orthodox. Mana quality affects a spell's accuracy, stability, and potency. Having a lot of mana but not hitting your target is useless. But indeed, right after that the girl received an unhappy reaction from the homeroom teacher. A disdainful laugh rang out. Arjun was frightened into losing the little confidence she had. Jera directly probed, Arjun, which family are you from? The girl obediently answered, I'm from the Viscount Pelane family. Hearing that, she immediately showed a contemptuous attitude. No wonder. This time Arjun was completely hurt, tears welled up in righteous indignation. But Jera ignored it and moved on to someone else. Does anyone else want to answer? Her sharp eyes swept the class. No one. Suddenly she singled out a random boy. Hey, you there. He jumped in alarm. Why yes. Jera mocked. Is your name why yes? He hurriedly stammered to correct it. Oh no, I'm Ipal. Ipal stood up and carefully answered the earlier question. I think mana quantity is more important. After all, in large-scale combat mana amount will have a greater impact, right? Asta noted quietly, right. From the other angle, in chaotic battle quantity matters more. In short, with some variable changes both quality and quantity are important. But Jera displayed no satisfaction. She asked bluntly, which family are you from? He replied, I'm not from any family. This made Asta pause. What? Have I missed some basic fact? Jera continued calling names, and answers rang out. I think spellcasting speed. A repetition of family declarations. I'm from the Kenkiat family. This even unsettled someone as calm as him, so she had students repeat the question and then move on. Jera's question kept echoing amid the class murmurs. And you, what about you? Too hard. Seriously, stay out of this. Asta strained to think, what answer is making the atmosphere so heavy? After a while, she ended the Q&A. I've heard your answers clearly. Jera's tone softened a bit. Actually, each of your answers just now was close to the correct one. Originally this isn't a question with a single answer, so what I expect isn't a fixed answer either. She emphasized one thing. Think carefully. What answer did you give me? Jera candidly pointed out the class's shortcoming. Did that answer reflect your true thinking? Or were you just guessing what I wanted to hear? She reminded everyone of a mage's vocation and status. A mage must never lose their conviction, must not be swayed by others' eyes, and must be able to execute their will completely. Her sharp yellow eyes narrowed. So what about you just now? A serious, probing question rang through the lecture hall. Is that truly the quality of a mage? Jera concluded, in the future you must become true mages. That is what I aim to impart in this lesson. Engrave it in your hearts. The entire class fell completely silent upon hearing this. Asta let go of his tension. In the end, what I thought was right. It's quite a novel tangled argument. Jaira moved to the main topic. Now, one by one, come up to measure your mana. Arjun, the girl sobbing softly, was startled when her name was called. Yes. Jaira instructed, you will be the magic system class monitor for our M3 class. The first answer made a very good impression. From now on, record your classmates' mana stats. The girl brightened up and hurried down to her spot. Thank you, ma'am. He gave a soft oh. And thought inwardly, so that's how she pacifies the whole class. Chinbi beside him dabbed at his eyes with a handkerchief. I'm so jealous. Asta was at a loss. Jealous of what? Up above, she signaled to bring the supporting device to the teaching assistant. The covering cloth was pulled away. And an emerald green sphere appeared instantly. The students murmured in surprise. Is that a mana measuring device? I heard those are hard to come by. Jaira touched the sphere. First time seeing one for everyone, right? She glanced meaningfully. Now's the time to learn your own mana stats, who knows? A beam of blue light radiated, astonishing the students. Jaira teasingly baited, there may even be a monster among us. Damien glanced at the matrix projected on the ceiling, his finger lightly to his lips. Jaira said with a glance, now, the usage is very simple. She ordered. Arjun, place your hand on the crystal sphere and channel your mana into it. Arjun promptly complied, yes. Immediately after, the girl placed her hand on the crystal sphere. The sphere emitted a blinding light that made Arjun widen her eyes in astonishment. Not long after, the crystal sphere produced a magic circle matrix. Arjun looked up in amazement and gaped, unable to believe her eyes. Jaira turned her cold face and said, do you see clearly? Among the various stats, the central part is the most important. The refinement stat comes from quality and the geoforce ranges from level 1 to level 10. She pointed to the circle and explained, Arjun is level 4, last year's freshman average was level 3, so this is quite good. Arjun scratched her head awkwardly, thank you, ma'am. Jaira watched and then instructed, next, measure total mana amount. It's simple, pour your mana in. Arjun did as told, yes. Then Jaira continued, total mana ranks are divided into 100 levels. The circle displayed the number 17 with the announcement, Arjun is level 17. Considering last year's average was level 15, this year's number is higher. Jaira smiled faintly, looking at her mana quality and quantity shows how diligently Arjun practices. Praiseworthy. Suddenly praised, Arjun blushed. A boy admired, I wish I had such high numbers. As for Asta, he wasn't listening and sat thinking, well, her future is already visible. He mused for a while, that girl will surely become a diligent research student. In the large room someone announced, I have matters to attend to, so I'll excuse myself, please have your mana measured as instructed by the TA. Someone replied, yes. A girl beamed happily, I need to focus more on the breathing discipline. Her friend cheerfully answered, I'll worry about refinement. The white-haired boy smiled and invited, Asta, let's go too. He startled and turned, we should. As Asta was walking, a loud shout made him stop and look. That's insane. The circle reappeared to the class's surprise. Refinement stat is level 6. Wasn't the average level 3? Total mana is level 20. So jealous. Someone asked, what's your name? The girl replied coldly, Furion. Then she turned back and stressed, Furion to deny. Asta thought, same clan as Dahlia. Different hair color, must be some branch, she even hurriedly added her family name when saying it, trying to show off. The teaching assistant looked rather surprised, glanced up and said, truly worthy of a prestigious lineage, the stats are very good. He stroked his chin, although the total mana is a bit low compared to refinement level 6, it's still a fairly high number. Furion nodded with a smile, I see. Damien suddenly woke, too noisy, what's going on? Asta replied, nothing, go back to sleep. But then he paused, alright, don't sleep. Asta looked at Damien and said, they're about to measure mana. Damien vaguely asked, measure for what? Asta helplessly answered, I don't know, but measuring's fine. He thought, after all, it's class time. Suddenly Damien joyfully jumped up shouting, really? Then I'll try too. Asta buried his face in his hands from embarrassment, oh, don't make a scene like that. Someone watching from afar whispered, is that him? Young Master Blander looks so young. And the one beside him must be Asta. You beat Hickster, right? The other asked, who's at the top then? A third replied, you'll know soon enough. Asta worriedly looked into the distance, damn it, I didn't want fame from beating that guy. The teaching assistant cheerfully invited, oh, the young master. Would you like to have yours measured? Damien curiously pointed and asked, do I just channel mana into this? He quickly placed his hand on the crystal sphere. Everyone below went pale, what? Is this even reasonable? Furion's face grew terrible, no, it can't be. Not long after the circle appeared with astonished words, refinement stat level 9, total mana level 67. Hey, is this a glitch? Asta looked at the teaching assistant with resignation, mortals always react that way when faced with geniuses. He recalled, with ordinary common sense you can't comprehend that radiant, towering wall. Asta looked at Damien and thought, well. We knew Damien was a prodigy, but I didn't expect him to far exceed the average like this. Damien, still innocent, asked, is this considered high? A fleeting thought, it's enough to understand why Blander is renowned as a monster. His vitality is inherently different. Asta glanced thoughtfully, if Damien had worked hard in his previous life, the continent's balance might have shifted. So in this life things will be different. He thought of Farron, let Blander no longer be Devlin's obstacle. I just need to help Damien step out of the mundane world. The teaching assistant wiped his sweat with a cloth and forced a smile, Damien lives up to the Blander name. Truly outstanding, but absolutely don't be complacent. A mage's level isn't decided by mana alone. Damien smiled brightly and carefree, yes. He cheerfully ran over and asked, friend, have you measured yours? Asta answered, not yet. Damien, very excited, then you should get measured too. Asta stood still observing everything. He realized everyone was curious about their own levels, someone without a prestigious background clinging to young Master Blander and even beating Delampy's heir. Finally Asta decided, alright then, I'll try. He carefully calculated to avoid trouble, choosing a moderate setting. The teaching assistant asked again, what's your name? Asta answered, I'm Asta. The assistant demanded, remove your hand from your pocket. Then he placed his hand on the crystal sphere and adjusted the mana's properties slightly. Immediately his fingers curled and he poured in a measured amount. But Asta noticed something odd, wait, why is it registering so low? A beam of light illuminated the whole area. A notification appeared, refinement stat level 10. The circle gradually displayed the mana measurement number. Exceeding threshold. Please reset the standard threshold. Everyone murmured, what? Exceeding the standard threshold? They even have that? Damien shouted in astonishment, incredible. Asta nonchalantly turned and said, looks like the device glitched, we'll have to measure again. The teaching assistant replied helplessly, perhaps. But Damien glanced sharply and asserted, no, that's not right. He grinned wickedly, I know what's going on. Definitely so. The teaching assistant awkwardly pointed, reset complete, please measure again. Asta obediently complied, yes. A notice appeared, refinement stat level 3, total mana level 15. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief, so it was an error earlier? Knew it. Asta also relaxed, this time I was more careful, so it's fine. Balancing is really hard. Suddenly someone swore, God damn it. Asta snorted and asked Damien, why say that? Damien seemed furious, you told me to expect things like this, so what's wrong with saying, God damn it? It's a real God damn it. Asta didn't reply but glanced on with worry. On a sunny afternoon outside the school. At the number 1 magical academy. Jaira stood with her arms crossed looking out the window, appearing very serious. She glanced and mused, the number 2 magical academy is undergoing repairs smoothly. Jaira stared into the distance, it's just unclear why Devilan and specifically the mage Kalahini's fighting with Farron. Then Jaira sighed, well, Professor Farron was once renowned, he can take care of himself, it's not my concern. The teaching assistant approached, breaking the silence, Professor, I'm Yorbi. He carried a stack of papers and said, I brought today's mana measurement data. Jaira looked through them and thought, this term the general level is quite high. Farron. Compared to the Denai family it's a bit of a pity. She paused at Damien's file, Damien, the numbers match the greatest talent in Blanda history. He must be guided carefully. Suddenly Jaira's eyes widened in shock. Asta's file appeared and left her stunned, Asta, the first measurement produced an error, so it was retested. Was this error due to exceeding the set threshold? She frowned and grimaced, Asta. Asta pointed straight at Damien and said, the goddamn it is mine to use. Damien retorted, why can't I use it? In an instant a blue dragon formed. Are you alright, gentle friend? Damien frowned and asked seriously, do you think this is okay? Meanwhile Asta lowered his eyes and replied indifferently, I think it's enough. He immediately concluded, then this is version 2 of blood, sweat, and tears. At that moment Asta suddenly offered a suggestion, wait, make it a bit more dynamic. Let the wings spread and the mouth open as if it's about to dive forward. He paused and continued, do you remember the lion statue at home? It looks more stylish with its mouth open. Chinbi sitting beside them widened his eyes in admiration, wow, that method is really easy. Damien suddenly cried out with delight, oh, I like it. He paused and continued, do you remember the lion statue at home? It looks more stylish with its mouth open. Chinbi next to him widened his eyes in admiration, wow, that method is really easy. Damien suddenly cried out with delight, oh, I like it. Chinbi despondently cried without tears, this world is truly vast. I'm a lost cause. Meanwhile Asta glanced at him and sighed, well, I understand how you feel, but there's nothing to do, except reality and keep moving forward. Just as the thought ended, Damien suddenly called out, kind friend. He beamed brightly and said, today's been really fun. I think coming to the academy was a good idea. Asta heard this and immediately widened his eyes in surprise. Then he quickly composed himself and chuckled. What a relief. Not long after, at the academy dormitory building. Asta sat pensively looking down at the bag in his hands. He held the bag with both hands, thinking, Callahan's space bag, it's locked, but given magical security principles and the mana landscape, I can probably break the mana structure the user set. Asta frowned slightly and muttered, with the right tools it wouldn't take a week. Since I have to sneak and work in a personal room, it took a whole month. An image of some spirit elixir popped into his head, well, at least I haven't only been doing this all this time. I also dissolved the elixir I received from Blander into my mana. Then a memory of Asta propping his chin up and absorbing a lot of useful knowledge from this academy surfaced. He forcefully opened the space bag with both hands, anyway, I can open it now. Open it. Asta began rummaging inside the space bag. Let's see. He suddenly pulled his hand back with a handful of found herbs, this is a vial of medicine. Next he pulled out a large cloak, this is useless. Then he took out a silver bracelet, this is a protective item. Asta calmly glanced down and activated the bracelet, might be quite useful. The protection resistance isn't bad for this tier. The next moment, he continued searching, where is that thing? Here it is. Asta held up the book in his hands, Devlin's primordial magic tome, Crimson Fire. Farron's smirking face suddenly appeared, it's a branch of blue fire developed by its researcher. A cursed form of magic capable of burning through energy shields. Thinking that, he slipped the book back into the space, of course only those who reach master level can burn shields. You can't learn it in a night. So I'll study it slowly. Asta unconsciously rolled his eyes and muttered, now that I think about it, today is that day. Midterm exams. Meanwhile the academy courtyard had gathered a large number of students. Damien shouted excitedly, midterms. Midterms. Asta beside him complained, so crowded. Chunbi, hearing this, said, from class M1 to ours we've all assembled. A few seconds later, he suddenly leaned close to Asta and whispered, hey, have you heard any news? Asta asked back curiously, what news? Chunbi smirked, they say the midterm might be a canyon raid. A few days ago, some M1 kids overheard an admin say they had to refurbish the canyon at this busy time. Hearing that, he fell silent and thought, Chunbi says the midterm consists of 3 practical tests. An image of a gloomy stone corridor appeared, a trial room where you must traverse sewer-like channels like a maze to reach the goal. Then images of rolling hills appeared, a canyon raid means reaching target points in order, first come first served. Finally came simulated opponents, a simulation room where you will fight against rivals or monsters. Asta snorted and thought, well, the format doesn't matter, just pass all of them as usual. But thinking of something, he privately remarked, it seems Chunbi won't do well. Meanwhile Chunbi was concentrating and calculating, if it's a canyon raid, everyone here will start from this spot and the kids will definitely be casting spells everywhere. So if we maintain defensive magic and advance forward. At that moment, an authoritative voice suddenly rang out, everyone, be silent. The person stood on high ground, long hair billowing, a pleasure to meet you. Farron looked around and introduced himself, I am Professor Farron, in charge of M1 in the magic department. I have been assigned as the professor responsible for this midterm exam. Asta smiled when he saw him, long time no see, Professor Farron. The dark circles under his eyes seemed darker than the last time he saw him. Farron, standing before everyone, continued, as you know, today is the midterm exam day. He parted his lips slightly and spoke each word gently. Today's exam is. The last 3 words made Chunbi's face darken, the trial room. He muttered tremblingly, no way, my plan. Damien beside him added a line that stabbed at Chunbi's heart, we're doomed, bro. Farron rolled his eyes and said, next I'll explain the rules. Line up by class and get ready. A moment later, he suddenly snapped his fingers. The purpose of the exam was very simple. A spell was instantly cast behind Farron, the trial room is a cavernous sewer-like maze. If you reach the final door, you will complete the exam. No matter which path you take, you will eventually reach the goal, so don't worry. Chunbi heard this and couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief, sounds easy. No sooner had he finished than Farron snapped his fingers again, but that would make it a meaningless race. In the blink of an eye, a simulated monster appeared, a golem. Chunbi froze as soon as he saw it, what? Golems in the exam, what the heck? Damien squinted and warned, watch your mouth, buddy. Farron then continued to explain, after all, it's just a clumsy combat machine. At its level it will be a bit tough. But I've exposed the core and reduced its durability. So you should be able to defeat it easily. He paused a moment and added, still, in an enclosed space it will catch you immediately. Ah, that is difficult. Farron fell silent and listened to the students' murmurs. If it's open terrain it wouldn't be so bad. He clicked his tongue irritably, to be a mage and be so indecisive. Farron suddenly recalled the image of that boy in his mind, Paolo showed determination to push it to the limit. But is it because of the environment? He coldly glanced, still, there are some fairly useful students. The first to catch Farron's eye was a female student with blue eyes who, though worried, still showed resolve. Next was another student with short brown hair and the look of someone unafraid of death. Then his gaze shifted to a male student wearing a proud smile. Finally he saw Damien, listlessly sucking his finger. Farron thought to himself, this student is out, he doesn't seem to have many ideas. He fell silent, slightly parting his lips. Then Farron cleared his throat and spoke 2 words, that's enough. He explained coldly, the golem will only target those who are alert in the corridors. You will decide whether to defeat it or avoid it. Saying that, Farron produced a small bracelet, also, you will be issued experimental bracelets. These rings can provide protection similar to an energy shield. Then he clenched his hand to activate the ring's mechanism, if the energy shield breaks, that person will be eliminated and the golem will no longer attack them. It's a superbly competitive system. The students glanced at one another nervously, no one dared speak carelessly anymore. Farron looked over the gathered crowd and concluded, finally, because all of you have been very passive, I will make a proposal. He suddenly gave a cold smile, show me an impressive face. It doesn't matter who arrives first or how many are eliminated. Farron's words thrilled Asta, those who put on an impressive face will receive a personal reward from me. Farron continued, that reward will not be trivial. Asta grinned inwardly, thinking, not trivial, huh. I like that. At the academy there was a place famous across the eastern continent, La Fighter, the largest library in the region. The library was divided into 3 levels, upper, middle, and lower. And the only level he could access was the lower one. Inside that area, he stood before the shelves, lost in thought. When he came looking for clues about the flame, he couldn't find any magic tomes on the lower level. Information related to the issue flashed through his mind, and he reached a clear conclusion, he had to find any real clue. He needed access to at least the middle level. But both the middle and upper levels were reserved for royalty, high nobles, or major houses. Moreover, the only way in was to be recommended by at least 3 professors. Back in the present, Asta observed the scene and silently analyzed the situation. In other words, he needed to win Professor Farron's reward. Although he only wanted to advance step by step, those around him never seemed willing to leave him alone. A sly smile crossed his face as he murmured inwardly, well, anyway I've memorized the entire layout. Let's see if I can stay calm and get through the midterm evaluation. Above them the sky was clear, while below preparations for an important exam were underway. The explanation for the practical test had just ended. I'll give you all time to prepare. Go collect materials from the assistants. Suddenly 2 students rushed forward. Assistant, while we're doing this, do you have flower bombs and firestones? Without hesitation, the man refused the request. Your primary attribute is fire. Forget it. Another student stepped up. Assistant, I need a golem controller. Once again the man refused flatly. Don't look for shortcuts. Forget it. Behind the noisy crowd, Asta watched the chaos unfold and sighed helplessly. What a mess. Hard to tell if they're mages or just thugs. Then a familiar voice caught his attention. Professor. Asta looked over and saw Damien casually making a request. I want some vine seeds. Just 20 seeds will do. The assistant blinked, flustered. I'm not a professor. But did you say vine seeds? Damien, your primary attribute is. Before he could finish, Damien demonstrated his power right in front of him. I don't have an attribute, but I can use plant magic. The assistant stared speechless and finally sighed. I understand. Damien happily received the materials and thanked him sincerely. Thank you very much. Behind him, Chinbi swallowed and tried to muster his courage. Asta stood quietly beside them, observing every reaction. Even Damien, who always seemed to joke around, was preparing in his own way. Could Chinbi break out of his shell this time? A few minutes later, preparation time ended. Professor Farron's voice echoed, now I will assign starting points. Confirm your names and proceed to the designated locations. Asta and his two friends studied the map intently. He scanned the board, looking for his position. I'm at starting point number 3. After confirming, he checked his friend's location. Damien waved. He set off eagerly. See you inside. Chinbi smiled gently and wished them luck. Asta, Damien, good luck on the exam. Asta didn't answer, lost in thought. Each person had their own starting point. A few seconds later, he reached his position. It seemed 6 people were assigned to starting point 3, all strangers. The situation reminded him of times as an assessor when he was posted to an unfamiliar unit. Not pleasant at all. Suddenly someone approached. Are you Asta? He glanced at the 3 boys and silently sized them up. What's this about? They weren't students from M3, and he'd never seen such arrogant faces before. The boy standing in front, the most conceited looking, boldly said, My name is Daibi. I've heard you're good at fighting, so I want to make you an offer. Asta remained completely calm. Speak. Daibi curled his lip in a sneer. I want to buy the bracelets from eliminated players. He eagerly revealed the deal. 30 gold coins per bracelet, including you and the 3 of us. If we eliminate the other 3, I'll pay you 90 gold. Hearing that, Asta quietly began calculating. 30 gold is about a typical family's monthly income for one bracelet. Not a bad price. Facing him, Daibi continued, this isn't a bad offer for a drifter from the Grey District like you. Even though the young master is protecting you now, how long do you think that'll last? You'd better find your own way. Asta still didn't answer. He simply stared at the boy, his expression unreadable. What the boy said wasn't entirely wrong. His thoughts raced coldly. Others might call this a coward's deal. But these guys were simply using what they had. If they had money, who could complain? Clearly, they held the advantage here. But something felt off. Finally Asta asked, why 90 gold? Daibi assumed the issue was price and casually made another offer. Not enough. Fine. 35 gold per bracelet, total 105. Before he finished, Asta gently interrupted him. Even so, the math was wrong. Asta raised a hand and pointed to the 3 students standing nearby. Looks like I have to do the arithmetic for you, gentlemen. There are 3 of them, right? Daibi answered confidently, yes. Asta pointed to the 3 boys on Daibi's side. And counting the 3 of you, that's 6. Daibi replied cautiously, exactly. Asta's face hardened as he spoke with unbelievable seriousness. So why don't you calculate the price of your own lives at 35 gold each? That would total 210. The 3 boys froze, stunned into complete silence. Anger began to boil up in Daibi's chest. What kind of usurious calculation was that? Did this rude brat not know his place? Where did this bastard get the nerve to talk like that? But he forced himself to answer, restraining his rage. 35 isn't enough. Fine, I'll raise it to 40, but no more. Asta smiled with satisfaction. Good. That makes a total of 240. Hearing that, Daibi cursed inwardly. Was he crazy? Suddenly an idea flashed through his mind and he mocked himself. Now I get it. A pathetic bastard like you is just trying to squeeze every coin from this chance. He scoffed at Asta inwardly, not realizing that the very greed he imagined would be what kills him. A filthy, ignorant mud dog, you can't possibly understand what's about to happen. I've wasted enough time. Gritting his teeth in frustration, he reminded himself of the young woman's orders. No hunting dog was better than Asta for this job. But if this dog went berserk, they'd need another method. With visible disgust, Daibi turned away. So the negotiation was over. Fine, I'll pretend I heard nothing. But Asta had no intention of letting him walk off. His voice dropped into a cold command. Where do you think you're going? All right, pay for the bracelets first, then go. Daibi spun back, shouting angrily, what the hell are you babbling about? Asta remained completely calm as he explained, if we load 3 crates and 3 people onto a wagon and you take those crates, then at the very least you should pay the people for them, shouldn't you? Then he broke into a crafty, scheming smile. Now pay 120 gold. 40 each. At that moment, Daibi's head felt like it would explode. One of his companions couldn't hold back and flew into a rage. You filthy lowlife. I've never seen such a brazen bastard. How dare you forget your place? Another sneered with contempt. Do you think noble DBY is anything like you? Even his ancient ancestors held the rank of baron. Beside him, Daibi spat a chilling word. Faken. Faken ignored him and kept shouting in fury. Daibi, don't stop me. Today I'll teach that bastard a lesson he'll never forget. Daibi called his name again. Faken. This time Faken finally felt something was wrong. He fell silent and turned around. Daibi glared at him, forcing back his anger, and ordered coldly, will you stop? Then he produced a pouch of gold and handed it to Asta. 120 gold. You said so, right? Fine. I'll give it to you. Yet inwardly he was straining to stay calm. Calm down, Daibi. The young lady's orders matter more than these fools. He forced himself to focus on the great gains awaiting them. If we close this deal with her, our guild will grow far beyond anything these idiots can imagine. Asta took the pouch nonchalantly, then spoke as if he had just realized something. I didn't expect I was dealing with someone so important. Instantly, he grinned triumphantly. Then the price for a client of such high status must be doubled. Total, 160 gold. Daibi, astonishingly composed, produced more money. Fine, 160 gold. He stared into Asta's eyes and threatened in a low voice, from this moment, I'll show you how miserable your life can be for 160 gold. Open your eyes and wait. Above them, the sun climbed high. At last it was time to enter the testing area. One of the instructors activated the matrix while reminding the students, and I repeat, if your bracelet stops working, you will be eliminated. The force field will trigger when your body takes a physical hit. Jinbi raised his hand, listening while checking his bracelet. Or if it's an attack containing mana. The evaluator's voice rang across the arena. If your force field is broken, the bracelet will immediately fall to the ground. The wearer will be automatically teleported out of the testing area. Thus, there is no risk of serious injury. Not far away, Dahlia frowned in concentration. A nearby brown-haired girl looked forward with worry. As for Asta, he remained completely indifferent, waiting for the test. Behind him, Daibi stared at Asta with a look of hatred. After the instructor finished explaining the rules, he turned and nodded. Farron raised his cup and signaled casually, begin. Immediately, the matrices lit up in sequence. The other attendants quickly operated the screens, displaying internal video feeds. The teleportation completed. The evaluation had begun. Farron glanced at everyone, assessing them silently. Dahlia and Damien were starting at the same point. Then suddenly one of the screens flickered violently, alarming the operator. What's wrong with this thing? Someone beside him gasped. What? The screen's dead. Didn't you check the magic eye carefully? The operator shook his head in despair. No, I checked it very thoroughly. Farron put down his cup and said calmly, enough. I checked the magic eye earlier as well. Now tell me which starting point that is. The young man grew anxious and hesitated. It was number 3. And right there, Asta stood in a fury and declared, you young masters will be fined an extra 320 gold for insolence. The sun blazed high above. On the ground, the assistant trainer activated the matrix while explaining the rules. Let me repeat, if your bracelet stops working, you will be eliminated. The magic barrier will trigger when it receives a direct physical hit or any attack transmitted with mana. Once the barrier is broken, the bracelet itself will remain intact. In the arena, Asta calmly listened to every word. The wearer will then be forcibly teleported out of the challenge area, the instructor added. So there's no need to worry about serious injury. Behind Asta, Daibi glared at him with hatred. When the explanation ended, Farron immediately announced, you may begin. At once, every group was teleported into the testing area. A few seconds later, they materialized at their designated positions. Teleportation complete. As the battlefield appeared, Asta summoned a green magic orb and said, all right, my dear clients. Asta sent the orb up toward the ceiling, then turned with a mocking look. The way you three stare at me, as if you're trying to burn a hole in my throat. He sneered and added, we don't have much time, so let's begin. Hearing that, Daibi's trio immediately mobilized, hurling everything at Asta. Daibi laughed arrogantly, looking down on them. You arrogant brat. Let's see how long that confidence lasts. A fireball formed and shot straight at Asta. He quickly dodged to the side, analyzing the situation in his head. Let's see. Getting hit by a spell means elimination and instant teleportation. In that case. His body swept past the fireball like a gust of wind. Without hesitation, he closed in on the 3 nobles and drew his leg back to strike. I just need to dodge and counter. And if I withdraw my mana just before impact, Asta's kick will land with sharply controlled force. Daibi didn't even have time to react. Asta's foot struck his throat. Asta calmly thought that the blow wouldn't count as an elimination hit. The next second, he spun and unleashed a flurry of punches and kicks at Daibi's teammates. Using this new method to take them down. To be honest, it felt amazing. Then he ducked under another fireball and finished off the remaining attacker. His spirit soared. Beautiful. Perfectly beautiful. A few seconds later, he stood towering in the now empty corridor. Dust from the scuffle still hung in the air as he declared, our young master must be very wealthy to have recruited all these people so quickly. Now then. Asta looked at Daibi coldly. So that's 320 gold for this act of arrogance. And from now on, I'll deduct 1 silver for each hit. In the maze, dust still floated in the air like mist after the battle. Daibi struggled to stand, his voice full of fury. You bastard. His face was so swollen it was unrecognizable, but that didn't stop the stream of curses pouring from his mouth. Just you wait. How dare someone like you do this? Asta didn't bother to listen. With a quick spell, he silenced Daibi. Then he looked at the glowing ring around the young noble and calculated quickly. Let's see. That was 100 hits. So subtract 10 gold. He sighed in relief. It's hard to control his power without Damien nearby. After all, we can't mistake the victim for the perpetrator. He picked up the bracelet, not even granting Daibi another thought. And clearly, I'm the victim here. Asta put his things away and sat there, bored and lost in thought. Okay, I've collected 6 bracelets. Now what? He plopped down on the floor, legs crossed, weighing his options. I need recommendation letters from at least 3 professors. That means even after receiving Professor Farn's reward, I still need 2 more. So another professor will have to vouch for me. Asta rested his chin in his palm, thinking, how impressive a show should I put on for them? His gaze scanned the surrounding structures, and an idea immediately flashed through his mind. What if I just destroy the whole testing hall? Just bring down the 4 support columns. Then Asta rubbed his forehead and immediately crushed the thought. Am I crazy? If I did that, I'd become an enemy of the entire Eastern continent. Finding no better plan, he temporarily gave up. Why should I stress over this? If there's no one left to fight here, I'll go outside and look around. As he walked, he muttered, by the way, I wonder if those others are okay. Just then, from another part of the testing area, groans and screams echoed nonstop. Hey, that's definitely cheating. Damn it, how could he do something like that? A terrified boy, eyes wide in panic, pleaded desperately. At this rate, we'll all be eliminated. Young master, please. The boy was on the verge of tears as he begged, please let us pass. The thing causing their misery was none other than the golem controlled by Damien. The boy only laughed, delighted, and refused their pleas. No. With no other option, the 3 contestants tried to flee. One of them attacked the golem and shouted, how can he control a golem with a vine seed? His teammate ground his teeth, damn it, those vines are blocking my magic. Suddenly, one of the 2 boys tripped over a rock. He slammed hard to the ground, tumbling across the dirt. The stumble cost him any chance of escape. Frozen with fear, he stared at the golem lumbering closer. As it raised its hand to strike, the boy couldn't contain himself and screamed at the top of his lungs. Elsewhere in the arena, Jinbi pressed his back to the wall and said with a serious expression, all right, listen. I just want to get through this test. Okay. Hiding behind the corner, he shouted louder, so please, stop attacking me. Unfortunately, his classmates had no intention of listening. You're just a commoner. Shut up and hand over the bracelet. Not far away, after attacking for a while, the white-haired girl finally grew exhausted and panted. She ordered, hey, go grab him. The brown-haired girl frowned and refused. What? Why me? What if you stab me in the back? Seeing that argument fail, the white-haired girl softened her tone. Fine, let him keep draining his mana until he's exhausted. But her cronies replied without hesitation, how can I trust you? Didn't you just stab him? Behind the wall, Jinbi seized the moment while the 2 argued. Now's my chance. He immediately stood up and slipped away. Ignoring the chaos behind him, he walked straight ahead. I shouldn't be greedy. Just pass the test. He ran quietly down the corridor for a while. But suddenly a jinbi sensation made him stop. Jinbi, puzzled, raised his hand. What's wrong with my bracelet? He frowned, trying to make sense of it. Could I be under a cloaking spell without realizing it? So I'm eliminated. He sighed wearily and crouched in the corner, hugging his knees. In a few seconds, I'll be teleported out. But time passed, and he was still there. Jinbi blinked, bewildered. Why haven't I been teleported? Just then, a cold voice echoed throughout the examination area. Can everyone hear me? Greetings, bookworms of Zen Ion Academy. At the sound of that voice, Jinbi's eyes widened in terror. That sinister voice isn't from the academy. Panicked, he sprang to his feet, tense and ready to fight. On the other side, the anonymous intruder continued, leisurely and smug, you may not know who we are, but some of you have surely guessed. And if you have guessed, you understand why we came. At the same time, that terrifying voice reached where Damien was standing. We have a message for you, the intruder declared. We demand nothing. Only the price you must pay for insulting a great one. Damien wrinkled his nose in disgust. What is this? Gross. Beside him, the golem suddenly made a strange noise, but no one noticed in time. The intruder's voice grew colder. Today, right here, all of you will die. At that moment, all external surveillance screens went black. A panicked assistant shouted, the control system has crashed. Inside the testing area, the intruder sneered, there's no escape now. Die in despair. Shouts of panic from teachers and students erupted everywhere. All magical eye tracking devices also stopped working. An enraged assistant roared, damn it. Who the hell are you? Just then, Farron sprang to his feet, his voice authoritative, enough. Don't waste any more energy. Go find the professors immediately, and make sure to bring Professor Felina here. The assistant answered loudly, yes, sir, and rushed off to give orders. Farron's fury finally erupted. He slammed his hand down on the table, cracking its surface. Growling, you damned insects. How dare you? Back in the testing area. A wounded golem lay collapsed against the wall. Asta flicked his hair and cursed, damn it. What angered him was that dozens of other golems were closing in from every direction, forming a tight circle around him. Asta bellowed, what the hell is this? You moved at a terrifying speed, continuously taking down the golems before you. But the more you fought, the heavier your heart became. 10 minutes had passed since that horrific voice rang out. Looking at the golems, a cold fear rose in Asta. Golems, normally slow, rigid, and predictable, were now moving with terrifying agility and precision. While defending himself, he analyzed, they're charging straight for our positions. Gatekeeper golems aren't allowed to act on their own. If they're invading this corpse's zone, someone must have tampered with the control system. Someone hauled all the golems out of storage. But instead of fear, the corner of Asta's mouth curled into an excited smile. Who do they think they're messing with? I'm trouble number 1 here. I've survived everything except one aerial battle. With that thought, he summoned a blazing orb of energy and hurled it forward without hesitation. I'll crush them one by one. In another corner of the maze, Jinbi walked in despair. Muttering, if I'd known it would be like this, I'd rather have been eliminated from the start. Now I'm really going to die. Suddenly, he sensed someone approaching. His heart pounded. A survivor? Who is it? As the figure drew nearer, Jinbi immediately recognized him. Waving and exhaling, Asta. But then he froze when he saw a whole pack of golems clinging to Asta. Asta slid past him without slowing, still managing to call out lightly, oh, it's you, Jinbi, run. Jinbi screamed in panic and immediately ran after him. Asta glanced at him, sighing inwardly. I sensed someone nearby so I came to check, but it wasn't Damien. At this rate, Chunbi will be caught. With that stamina he has no chance of surviving. It's time to execute Plan B. Asta ordered decisively, Chunbi, give me your bracelet. Chunbi flinched, bewildered. Asta calmly explained, the golem's detection range isn't that wide. The reason they're stubbornly chasing us is because the bracelet is connected to the control system. It's like an alarm light. Chunbi widened his eyes, hurriedly took off the bracelet to check, voice trembling, what about you, Asta? Asta answered without hesitation, I've been marked as the primary target. If they focus on me, you'll have a chance to escape. I'll hold them off, then go find Damien. Asta's voice turned resolute, you have no family, right? Chunbi froze, those who can live, should live. Chunbi lowered his head as memories flooded back. His father's warm voice, son, don't worry about anything. Just focus on magic. Don't let anyone discourage you, understand? His sister pleaded, brother, after you graduate you'll teach me, right? He pressed his lips together. Tears welled up. Then he shouted with all the strength he had left, damn it. Damn it. You have to live. We must meet again. Asta took the bracelet, smiling to reassure him, I know. Chunbi bowed his head and ran at full speed forward. In his head remained only the image of his parents skipping meals to buy spellbooks for him, his sister forced to leave school because of him. You have to live to repay them for everything. But suddenly, his mother's final words echoed, Chunbi. Our pride and hope. His steps slowed, then stopped. Am I worthy of that pride? He stood frozen, recalling the slurs, hesitant, cowardly, ordinary, insignificant. Chunbi spun around. In the distance, Asta was still fighting fiercely against the pack of golems. The sight stabbed at his heart. Someone like me, can I call myself worthy if I abandon my friends? No. Determination flared. Chunbi raised his hand. A brilliant golden light burst around him. I won't give up anymore. He poured all the remaining strength into it. The image of his master appeared in his mind. Blood streamed from his nose, but he didn't stop. The magic my master gave me, please, work. In an instant, the surrounding earth and stones gathered, forming a gigantic spear. Earth thrust. He gritted his teeth and shouted, Aster. The golden spear tore through the air, piercing and obliterating the entire group of golems in a single sweep. Asta turned, stunned by the scene. This spell not only reshaped earth and stone, it changed their very nature. Chunbi coughed up blood, collapsed, panting. Asta immediately rushed over to catch him. Chunbi. Chunbi forced a smile, pride flashing in his eyes. A long time ago, my master, well, you might call him that, taught me this spell. He called it Earth Thrust. Sounds nice, doesn't it? Asta replied calmly, the name is, not very impressive. Chunbi deflated. Asta softened his tone and added, but whether a spell is impressive depends on its user. You just proved that. Chunbi, moved, only managed to whisper, Asta. But Asta suddenly shoved a vial into his mouth, stop pretending you're about to die. Drink this, you won't die from that. Chunbi choked and croaked, it hurts, my throat itches. After he regained a little strength. Asta closed his eyes to sense. The entire layout of the maze appeared clearly in his mind. He opened his eyes and pointed, Chunbi, go straight this way. At the fork, turn right. You'll meet other students. Chunbi asked anxiously, what about you? Asta didn't answer, only turned his face away. In his vision, a strange red stream of mana was flowing in only one direction, toward the control room. His expression grew serious, there's something that needs handling. He had decided. I have to go see what's happening. Cut to Asta's location. As he dashed forward, he also began to sense something. Where have I felt this before? It's a memory of something, not Deculin, but something that passed by. Thinking this, our protagonist reached the bend. He turned his face to the side and, upon seeing something, immediately froze. Before him was some kind of spatial tunnel radiating an intensely powerful aura. A name instantly sprang to Asta's mind, this is the demon realm. Right. No wonder it felt so familiar. This stream of demonic energy is unforgettable. And there are demonic beasts all around. Thinking that, Asta scanned the area. On the surface above, several black humanoid shadows were emerging. They were even recreating the cursed creatures that had terrorized the continent centuries ago, always committing the worst imaginable acts. Prizen. That damned sewer rat. Elsewhere, inside the control room in the challenge hall, Prizen was grinning broadly. It's a success. It's a success. A demonic beast has actually appeared. The demon realm has manifested perfectly. Before, only half success occurred when demonic energy appeared, but this time it's a complete success. It's all thanks to this artifact. He said, looking at his glove. He began to recall what had happened. By using isolated space, he had slipped inside without any hindrance. And with the invading demonic energy, he seized the control room. Not only did he gain control, he also recreated the demon realm. What a magnificent sight. At the same time, a shadow behind him suddenly spoke up, success. You didn't slack off, did you? Prizen smiled smugly at that, creating the obstruction energy fulfills our contract. The professor you're targeting will fail on his own. The burly man's cold voice replied, setting a limit, fine. I don't care how, as long as the Gen Ion Academy protecting that professor is destroyed. Prizen bowed in reply, but his tone was slightly sarcastic, yes, fine. The great Bimar family's watchdog, act like you have any other choice. At that insult, how could the hound restrain himself? He growled a warning, if you want to live, don't let that filthy mouth mention my family's name again. Turning back to Prizen, he dared not utter another word. However, contemptuous thoughts multiplied in his head, after all, this guy is just a vassal of Deculin, always posturing. What a coward. But once this contract is over, House Bimar will give me a private lab. I can tolerate him until then. More importantly, creating the demon realm also means fulfilling the sex wish. How exhilarating this is. The Magic Prohibition Council will support me. Those old men in the council will be drooling to back me. The more he thought, the more excited he became, even to the point of salivating. However, before this joy lasted long, the burly man in front snapped him back. Hey, Prizen, how's control of the core? A student is approaching. This remark pulled Prizen out of his illusions, but he quickly became cheerful. Huh. A student is coming. Huh. The first test subject has arrived. The burly man, puzzled, looked at Prizen. Prizen grinned and briefed him. Aren't you curious what happens when a human is exposed to such a large amount of demonic energy? As he spoke, he watched the monitor showing Asta standing before the demon realm gate and continued. Perhaps he'll go mad or die immediately. Because they pierce the obstruction energy. That's all anyone knows. But according to ancient texts, humans with magic power or ether are different. They undergo a phenomenon called beastification of humans, where the beasts act solely on madness. Alright, so what are you going to do now? A golem at your back, demonic beasts ahead, there's nowhere to run. At worst you just charge forward, right? It's not that much of a bother. Just as he thought that, he suddenly saw Asta staring at him as if he could see through the surveillance magic. This surprised Prizen a little. Then he noticed Asta's lips quietly muttering a few words. Ready, Prizen. Beside him, the burly man looked at Prizen curiously and asked, have you met that brat before? Prizen shook his head, puzzled. Huh. No. Who is that brat? And how did he know my name? What the hell is going on here? As he was thinking this, his eyes suddenly widened. When he saw Asta take out some experimental bracelets. Then, on the monitor, the demonic beasts all lunged to attack. Seeing this, Asta stepped back, took a strong run up, and launched forward at breakneck speed. As a result, before they could reach him, the demonic beasts were the ones who took the hit first. He acted extremely fast, leaving an experimental bracelet on the demonic beasts. That bracelet is how the golems identify their enemies. So immediately after, they switched their targets to the demonic beasts. Asta himself said coldly, from now on, kill each other. Inside the control room, Prizen quickly realized Asta's plan. His face went pale as if about to die and he shouted, no. My children. But before he could worry more about his children, he suddenly noticed something else. Wait. What about that brat? How is he so fast? Through the monitor, he saw Asta dashing forward like a lightning bolt. He hurriedly turned to the burly man beside him and begged, hey. Stop him. Stop him right now. You idiots. He's breaking through. Move. Hurry up. No sooner had he finished than a huge explosion sounded behind them. Asta himself had successfully infiltrated the lab. He immediately called out, long time no see, Prizen. We finally meet, huh? Nearby, his friend Shinbia, pale with fear, was stammering the same words, yes, we finally meet. How have you been, Damien, right? In front of him, Damien was using his vine magic to control the golems. He smiled and replied, exactly. I'm here to protect my friends. Look, these are Cerberus number 1, number 2, and number 3. Cool. Shinbia stammered, though he was a bit puzzled. Wow, you can use golems like this. Before they could chat more, a white-haired girl asked, hey. How did you get here by yourself? Hearing the question, Shinbia unconsciously spoke the method of discarding the bracelets that Asta had mentioned to him, with the bracelets, right? Didn't they throw their bracelets away already? When he saw the bracelets still on their wrists, he panicked and shouted, everyone, throw away your bracelets. The golems are watching us through them. The white-haired girl then glanced down at her own bracelet. Before she could react, another mocking voice rang out, huh. Divine power laughs. This is the challenge area, why should I trust you and throw my bracelet away? Are you planning to steal everyone's bracelets here? The accusatory voice made Shinbia's face tense up as well.
Shinbi was surrounded by a group of other trainees. He stood alone facing them, and one of the group spoke up, questioning, are you really trying to collect everyone's bracelets? Shinbi, looking panicked, shouted, in this situation, you still think the bracelets matter that much? He explained that the bracelets were linked to the control system, acting like tracking bells. A ringleader, with long black hair, covering his eyes, folded his arms and smugly asked, and you realize that? Shinbi hesitated and replied that Aster had told him. Hearing the name Aster, he curled his lips in a suggestive smile. Knew it, he said mockingly, as if he'd expected this. He continued to taunt Shinbi. You tossed your bracelet after being tricked by some sewer rat in the gray zone, and now so you don't fail the test? You're trying to deceive us again. The others in the group began whispering. A girl looked at Shinbi with disappointment and said, birds of a feather, flock together. Even you, who at least paid attention in class, were sullied by a stray. Shinbi's expression turned vacant. He was shocked and hurt by the insults hurled at his friend. The shock quickly turned to anger. Shinbi clenched his teeth. The man continued to jeer. Don't speak as if he knows everything. A flashback suddenly surged in Shinbi's mind. He recalled how Aster, the friend he trusted completely, had once faced danger courageously. Back in the present, Shinbi's eyes widened as the memory of the first time he met Aster came vividly to mind. Damien remembered asking Aster what he had in his hand. Without hesitation, Aster answered. Damien confidently replied, I have a friend. That's why I trust my friend. That memory gave Damien strength. He decisively took off his bracelet and threw it to the ground, proclaiming, I don't need something like this. Take as many as you want. After discarding the bracelet, Damien turned away with a confident, mysterious smile, his eyes flashing the same heterochromatic hues as Aster's. He called, let's go, Shinbi. Shinbi, his companion, could only stand stunned and call Damien's name. Shinbi was completely stunned by his friend's 180-degree change. He stammered, you don't look like yourself at all.
Who are you, really? Scene shifts to Aster, now standing before a gigantic, brilliantly glowing crystal. He greeted sarcastically, "Long time no see, Friesen. We finally meet again."
With a sinister smile and bright blue eyes, Aster revealed, "Once I even risked entering the demon realm to kill you, yet I never expected we'd meet here." Friesen, a short, seemingly cowardly man, was terrified. He shouted, "You madman! I don't know you. What demon realm?" Then he turned to his bodyguard and barked, "Hound! What are you doing? Aren't you supposed to protect me?" The masked bodyguard turned to Friesen and asked skeptically, "This is your first time meeting him, right?" Friesen insisted, "I told you, it's the first time." The bodyguard sighed, turned his back on Friesen and said resignedly, "Fine, I get it." Magical chains tightened around his arms. He explained, "Kid, this is a contract. I have no choice." He radiated killing intent, gripping his weapon tightly. He declared, "I will have to kill you without leaving a trace." Aster showed no flinch. He looked at the bodyguard and spoke as if he knew him well. "Weimar, one of Declan's vassal houses." Aster continued to disclose what he knew. The secret arts of Weimar, the Phantom Beast Tower. Their speed and piercing attacks were famed, almost like archers, and they produced them by training a backward child separately. Aster concluded, implying that the bodyguard was that abandoned child. "It's this very hound." Aster continued the explanation. "A true hound, a battlefield leader." But Aster squinted, puzzled. Why would Weimar's hound follow a bastard like that? The hound froze. He hadn't expected his identity to be exposed. "What? You know who we are?" he asked, tilting his head. Aster suddenly roared, cutting the hound off. "I asked first." Aster's face went mad. He shouted at him with all his fury. "Why is Weimar's hound with a damn bastard like him?" The hound thought to himself, is he insane, facing death? He couldn't understand Aster's behavior. "And what do you intend to do with that information?" he asked. But Aster didn't care. He simply repeated his question with extreme anger. "Why is Weimar's hound going with a bastard like him? Answer me." The hound grimaced, veins bulging on his forehead. He muttered, "This madman?" His patience snapped. He roared, "Don't repeat that damn thing again." Provoked, the hound lost his composure and lunged to attack, swinging his chained sights at Aster. Chinby nimbly stepped back one pace, easily evading the hound's first strike. The hound continued his relentless assault, chains whipping wildly through the air, but Aster calmly dodged. While evading, Aster kept provoking his opponent, shouting the same question. "Weimar's hound. Why are you with that bastard?" Enraged, the hound cast a magic circle to amplify his attack. "Stop it, you crazy bastard! Do you know who I am? Why are you obsessed with this?" he screamed. Magic empowered his weapon. His chained scythes emitted a potent blue glow. The razor-sharp blades, reinforced by wind magic, flew with terrifying speed. Two scythes shot toward Aster at wind-tearing velocity. Aster kept shouting to taunt him even amid the fight. "Weimar, hound, you bastard!" Aster's constant provocation drove the hound completely out of control. His eyes burned with fury. He snarled angrily, "You crazy bastard, I'll tear you apart," and poured all his strength into the next strike. The hound combined recall magic, a spinning motion, and speed enhancement to produce a complex, powerful attack. He believed Aster couldn't dodge it. Seeing him fully unhinged and charging blindly, Aster mocked him. "You're completely agitated." Aster easily slipped through the storm of chains and magic, demonstrating the gap in their skill. Amid the barrage, Aster gently caught the flying chains. He said, "I've raised dogs before." Aster used the hound's own weapon to subdue him. The chains now lay snug in his hands. He resumed his unfinished sentence, voice full of sarcasm. "Dogs." With a sinister smile, Aster explained, "They get anxious when a sound is emphasized and repeated, just like you now." The hound realized he'd been completely manipulated. "This bastard, he's treating me like a dog," he raged as Aster prepared to strike. Aster delivered a powerful blow to the hound's gut and affirmed, "Because it's true, you are Declan's dog." Watching his bodyguard easily defeated, Friesen panicked and shouted, "What the hell are you doing, hound?" Not giving the hound any chance to counterattack, Aster focused mana into his hands, summoning powerful bolts of lightning to finish the fight. A massive clash of magical power erupted, blue light flashing throughout the room. The hound collapsed, blood spurting from his mouth. He had been utterly defeated. Friesen could only stand silent, staring at the horrific scene. Aster turned to Friesen and said, "Friesen, I see you still like hiding behind others." Lightning still crackled around Aster. He stepped closer to Friesen with a smug smile. "But now it's just the two of us." Friesen, despite his fear, tried to appear strong. He pulled out a magic orb and shouted, "Damn it! You're just a bloodied kid daring to act up." But Aster was faster. He seized the hound's weapon and swung it toward Friesen. Aster's strike severed one of Friesen's arms. He screamed in pain, "Ah! My arm! My arm!" Friesen collapsed, clutching his bleeding arm. He stammered in horror, "Woohoo! What the hell are you? No! Stay away from me." In desperation, Friesen crawled toward another magic orb, the demon realm. That's right, the demon realm. Friesen tried to bargain for his life. He said to Aster, "If you kill me, you won't be able to stop the demon realm. Are you going to let your friends die in there?" Aster coldly replied with a single word, "So." The answer left Friesen speechless. Aster stepped toward the terrified Friesen. "Fine, I'll wait until the demon realm swallows everyone. Enjoy the show." Then Aster turned back, his hollow eyes fixed on Friesen, and issued a chilling threat. "Because you'll be next." Aster's threat completely broke Friesen, while Aster added one final line, "Laugh while you still can."
Friesen recoiled in fear and anger, unable to comprehend what kind of monster stood before him. Friesen was horrified to realize this was not ordinary magic but an entire demonic domain. He couldn't believe Aster remained calm while this power was devouring his friends. Before Friesen, Aster appeared with hypnotic, glowing red eyes, making Friesen wonder if he was still human. In a panic, Friesen tried to bargain, saying he could stop the demonic domain and threatening that Aster's friends would be dead in 5 minutes. Friesen shouted, asking why Aster wasn't acting. The only response was Aster's cold voice, "Why?" Immediately, Aster snapped Friesen's arm. The answer was simple and cruel. Friesen stared in shock at his bare hand. His relic had vanished without him noticing. Aster was now wearing the relic glove. He taunted Friesen, asking if he really thought he was the only one who could use it. Aster touched a blue crystal orb, saying it brought back many memories. A massive surge of blue energy erupted from the orb, activating a complex magic circle beneath Aster's feet, while Friesen could only watch in horror. Frizen couldn't believe his eyes. He stammered, tongue-tied at Aster's unimaginable power. Aster turned, his gaze cutting cold, saying how could he forget Frizen, the one who taught him forbidden magic. Images of forbidden magic appeared, with demonic spirits bearing blazing red eyes. In a flashback, it was said the arm always curled inward. The young master survived, but you did not. Declan would surely pin all the blame on you and Frizen would almost certainly die. An image of Aster in the past appeared. He insisted he could not let Frizen fall into Declan's hands, so he decided to hunt him down himself. Back in the present, Damien continued the story, saying he had chased Frizen for so long that his mind was no longer clear. Aster took pride in catching anyone he pursued, but Frizen was the only one he couldn't catch because of his speed and cunning. The chase stretched from the Black and White district to the kingdom's alleys and even the Empire's underworld. Aster's hands were stained with blood. After relentless pursuit, Frizen finally chose the demonic domain as his refuge. Aster admitted that while inside the demonic domain he thought he would go mad. He couldn't find Frizen, was attacked by monsters, and the demonic energy corroding his body made him lose his grip on sanity. And when Aster finally gave up and escaped the demonic domain, a troubleshooter was waiting and brought news. Aster broke into a wicked smile. The news was that Frizen was dead. He had been captured by Declan and forced to reveal everything about forbidden magic and the relic. Hearing that, Aster felt hollow. He sat before the demonic domain for days, staring up at the sky. Meanwhile, the present Frizen could only let out a bitter laugh. Frizen collapsed, blood pouring, desperately insisting he had never been involved with any young master. Aster stepped closer, feigning pity, saying Frizen had lost too much blood. Then Aster pulled out a vial, saying he had been negligent. It seemed he intended to heal Frizen, but in truth a far more cruel plan was being prepared. With a manic look, Aster forced the vial into Frizen's mouth and declared, "You're not dying just yet. Rest a little and hear the whole story." In delirium, Frizen assumed it was a healing potion. A flicker of hope lit his mind, thinking this was a chance to find a gap and survive. Aster ignored him and continued his story. While I was staring at the sky, one day a wyvern flew by. The image of a wyvern soaring freely through the dark clouds appeared, a symbol of boundless freedom. Aster looked back at himself then and felt pathetic. He realized his revenge was no longer for his comrades but merely an outlet for his anger. So I erased the hatred from my mind. Hearing this, Frizen, somewhat restored by the vial, seized the chance. Now. He tried to cast a forbidden spell to counterattack. But Aster had anticipated it. He covered Frizen's face, stopping his attempt. With bloodshot eyes, Aster punched Frizen to the floor once more. "I meet you again today," he snarled. "Yes, all this time has been for this moment. That is why I kept rereading the knowledge you left behind." Aster grabbed Frizen's face and growled, "The demonic domain. Forbidden magic. And this disgusting relic." Aster formed a magic circle, his voice full of hatred, and the detailed descriptions of how my comrades died. Chains of magic appeared, binding Frizen tightly. "Fortunately, I have plenty of time now," Aster said. Shadows cloaked Aster's face, leaving only his terrifying red eyes. He raised his scythe, vowing to recreate each person's pain before Frizen, and concluded, "This will be fun." A close-up showed Frizen's eyes shrinking in sheer terror at Aster's declaration of torture. The scene cut to a dark, silent stone corridor, lined on both sides with doors like prison cells. The space was eerily quiet, with only cold stone walls. The corridor was littered with shards of stone golems, signs of a battle that had taken place. A passage had been opened in the ceiling above. A rescue team had broken the siege and entered. They hurriedly searched for students, ready to risk their lives to save them. A figure walked through the hazy dust, indicating the presence of the rescue team. A woman with blonde hair and sharp violet eyes appeared. It was Professor Felina. She swore when she saw the chaos. Professor Felina was irritated that this damned magic had wasted 2 hours. She resolved not to let anyone die here. A rescue team member rushed up to report, Professor Felina. He handed her the surveillance orb that had come back online and reported that all disruptive magic in the area had been neutralized. Professor Felina ordered that the top priority was finding survivors, not capturing the intruder. She also instructed that no information be released to avoid provoking them and that the search team use magical sight or proceed on foot. The rescue team immediately scattered and began searching the rubble-strewn area. They found the students, luckily all alive, only slightly injured and seemingly disoriented. A brief flashback showed the students happily with the golems before the disaster, a stark contrast to the current scene. A wider shot showed the rescue team tending to many students found amid the wreckage. Professor Felina frowned. She felt something was off and exclaimed, "What?" She couldn't understand it. The intruder had controlled the trial gate for 2 hours, yet not a single student had died. Just then, a voice came from the magic orb. "Professor Felina, can you hear me?" Felina recognized Professor Farron. Professor Farron reported that he had entered the internal control room and wanted her to view his crystal screen herself. Felina looked into the orb and fell silent. The sight before her left her aghast. This is. On the screen were the 2 intruders, ruthlessly defeated, lying motionless in a pool of blood. Professor Farron confirmed their condition. Felina, though accustomed to horrific sights, had to admit this was hard to look at. She wondered who had reduced them to this state. A thought flashed through Felina's mind as she noticed something unusual. Wait. The scene shifted to a desk, a hand placing a student's file down. It was Aster's. In the office, Felina read the file and learned that Aster was a drifter from the Black and White district, admitted via the Blando family. The information stunned her. Aster's magical power far exceeded standard values, causing readout errors and reaching levels well beyond a student's. In another scene, a powerful red-haired woman in the library also concluded that this student needed to be closely monitored. Back in the ruined corridor, Aster appeared with a cold expression, as if being watched from afar. Professor Felina startled and turned as someone approached, exclaiming in surprise, "Prink. Principal." An imposing old man with a monocle appeared. It was the principal. He gently corrected her, "Just call me principal." The principal said he had come as quickly as possible from the eastern outer continent but it was already over. Felina thanked him and said she was glad she had trusted him. The principal wasted no words. He looked directly at Felina and asked an important question. He raised the crystal screen displaying Aster's file and asked, "Do you think this boy is the one who caused all of this?" Night fell with a torrential rain, washing clean a corner of the sky. In the downpour, an ancient mansion emerged. And within that scene, a truth about the world of mages was revealed. Each of them carries their own demonic heart. This demonic heart was likened to a bastard who appears abruptly and without warning, sowing chaos in the mind, and its consequences are rarely good. Our protagonist recalled his previous life. When he was a troubleshooter, he had none of that in his mind. He only did the tasks assigned, regarded his comrades' deaths as fate, living an emotionless life. But precisely because those emotions were absent, he realized that the long-suppressed rage was actually his true driving force. He had mistaken himself for having successfully suppressed those feelings. Yet the explosion in the trial maze proved otherwise. It was the seed of his demonic heart. He felt the situation was messy, like holding a ticking time bomb that could go off at any moment. Amid the tangled emotions, he asked himself, "But who am I?" He remembered his nature, a former troubleshooter. To him, nothing was more familiar than uncertain situations, and that very level of stress was an advantage. A week after the dungeon incident, when things had calmed, he realized this was his opportunity. Both body and mind were at peak condition, ready for a breakthrough. He pulled out the book containing the secret technique, Crimson Transformation, and confidently declared it was time to subdue the bastard demonic heart within him. This was a secret technique he had learned in his previous life, originally a non-elemental technique reserved for troubleshooters. But Crimson Transformation was different. It was the first time he'd encountered a technique with an elemental attribute. Although he had comprehended the first stage assimilation dozens of times, the caution of an expert forced him to recheck it thoroughly up to the last moment. He analyzed that the main mana channels used in Crimson Transformation were not much different from the heavenly origin method he already knew. However, he understood that merely circulating mana would only produce ordinary fire magic. Crimson Transformation required something different. The secret lay in imagery manifestation. He had to grasp and clearly visualize the form of the flame he wanted to create. In his mind, a solitary flame flared in the darkness, a fire that existed without any conduit. It was born from mana but would continue burning even after the mana was exhausted. A pure flame, self-sustaining, needing no external agent. Then, from the idea, the flame began to take shape, raging fiercely in his palm. He brought the flame into his body, contained it in his heart. The assimilation stage was complete. He was astonished by the power he had produced. This flame had extreme destructive potential, at least twice as strong as the ordinary spells he used. He tried to compress the firepower and discovered his current limit. He could only perform the compression once. The thrust and feedback from it were too strong compared to the non-elemental mana he had used. He bitterly admitted that, in this state, applying it in real combat was impossible. Although a bit disappointed that he couldn't use this powerful magic in battle yet, he was not discouraged. He believed that with more time he could overcome those weaknesses. What mattered was he had taken a step closer to the talented mage he admired. By adding the fire attribute to the foundational heavenly origin method, he had built a solid base for future development. He was confident that just a few more advanced combat spells would suffice. With the advantage of the fire element being not overly dependent on compatibility between technique and incantation, he could flexibly choose any grand spell. Putting those considerations aside, he decided to leave. But suddenly, a strange pressure of mana descended. He clearly felt someone blatantly flaunting their presence. Without hesitation, he immediately went outside to check. The door opened, heavy rain and a powerful surge of mana greeted him. Standing in the courtyard was an old man with silver hair. He observed that Professor Felina had been right to be wary of him, praising his sensitivity to mana and his handling of flame mana. The old man concluded with a short but weighty sentence, "You're very good." The protagonist froze as he recognized the man opposite him. "The dean," he blurted. The old man casually corrected him, "Call me principal." The principal squinted, a sharp glint flashed in his eyes, signaling trouble, however. Immediately, a colossal wave of mana pressure erupted from the principal, like an invisible tsunami crashing straight at the protagonist. Taken by surprise, sweat poured down his brow. He cursed inwardly, "Damn it, what kind of freakish situation is this? Why does everyone like poking into my business?" Faced with the overwhelming force, he reminded himself once more, "But who am I?" He mustered strength to resist, refusing to yield. "I am a former troubleshooter. I may break, but I will never bend. An undying belief will keep my spirit firm." Seeing his resistance, the principal spoke in an authoritative voice, "Aren't you going to greet me? I may look like this, but I am the head of this entire academy." The pressure intensified, his eyes showed extreme astonishment and strain. Sensing the unfavorable situation, he immediately changed his attitude and bowed deeply, "Greetings, Dean." "Oh no, Principal." He added a flattering line, "Belts exist to be bent, right?" The principal laughed at his flattery. Meanwhile, the protagonist hurried over, profusely apologizing for his worry. At that moment, the principal's voice rang out again, revealing he had sealed off sound in the entire area. He could only curse inwardly, "That bastard." When he asked why the principal had come, the man replied it was out of curiosity about a few matters, and he wasn't sure whether the protagonist would answer honestly. The principal invited him to sit, but at the same time an even more terrifying wave of mana was unleashed. Unable to resist, his legs buckled. He realized in horror that this wasn't killing intent but pure mana created without incantation. The principal finally revealed the reason. "Professor Felina told me that you seem to be hiding something." Amid the rain, the academy tower loomed like a witness to the confrontation. "So I'll ask directly." The ground cracked beneath their feet from the tremendous pressure. In that scene, the principal's question rang out, both curious and threatening, "What are you hiding?" Gritting his teeth and enduring, he couldn't believe this powerful principal was the same man who had once stammered at the podium. He cursed inwardly, "He's truly a monster." However, in his heart he thought differently. Compared to the bastard he had faced in his previous life, this principal was not a true monster. And in that life-or-death moment, an idea flashed through his mind. He decided to read the flow of mana pressing on him and use it to adjust his own mana. It was an extremely advanced and dangerous technique. If the mana flows of both sides synchronized, the oppressive force would naturally dissipate. He began executing the intervention formula. His mana and the principle started to resonate, and as predicted, the heavy pressure gradually vanished. Principal, you came here surely because of the matter in the trial maze. He calmly admitted, yes, I did clear out those pesky rats. The principal just chuckled, haha. Did he say you didn't even bother to hide it? The protagonist kept a calm face, thinking it wasn't a big secret as long as it didn't get out. He looked the principal straight in the eye and countered, so, is there anything else you want to ask? His confident attitude seemed to have annoyed the principal. A dangerous glint appeared in his eyes. Suddenly, the principal asked about the wyvern. This made the protagonist uneasy. He cursed himself inwardly that maybe he shouldn't have eaten that wyvern. Now things were complicated. The principal seemed to be enjoying his discomfort. He said nothing, silently observing. The principal's sudden shifts from serious to mocking and back again made him hard to read. He remarked that the principal was a rare kind of madman. Unexpectedly, the principal praised him. Your gaze is not bad, then gently said, here's the deal. I'll only ask. You just answer within the limits of what you can. Isn't that better than getting beaten? The remark was both an offer and a threat. Then the principal ordered him to sit. In the pouring rain, he obediently complied. They both sat under the rain, an odd and tense scene. He sensed the atmosphere had completely changed. It felt wild, like a true battlefield mage. He realized the principal's exterior was a facade, his true nature had been forged in combat. Then the principal began his interrogation. Now, I'll ask first. Coincidentally. He looked the principal in the eye and asked, do you know the wyvern became my meal? The question left the principal dumbfounded and speechless. Seeing the principal flustered, he quickly said, it's nothing, please continue. Then he tried to downplay it, lowering himself, Junior. I'm a student, you're the teacher, principal. The principal immediately waved it off, voice stern, if you call me that foolishly I'll hit you. If I say you're junior, then you're junior, and I'm your senior. On the battlefield there are no teachers and students. He thought to himself that the old man was talking nonsense. This wasn't a battlefield, he had no master, no senior or junior. He understood that despite the absurdity, in this situation he had no choice but to accept the rules of the strong. So he knelt and said yes, admitting the senior's authority. The principal praised him for being obedient. The principal said, now, let's continue our conversation. The protagonist's gaze sharpened, he knew the real talk was beginning. The principal called, Junior, and his one-eyed gaze through the lens became grave and mysterious. Then he emitted a strong killing intent, his eyes lit up and his voice hardened, revealing his true concern, which bastards put those monsters in that maze. On a torrential night, the conversation between Aster and the headmaster continued. The headmaster told Aster to go on, Junior. Suddenly, the headmaster emanated a powerful murderous aura, his eyes flared brightly in the dark. He growled angrily, wondering who was pulling the strings and driving things to this point. Aster asked him about the next move. He declared they must crush the enemy beneath their boots, and to do that he needed to gather his old comrades once more. Aster stared pensively at the rain. He knew the people the headmaster mentioned were famed mages and knights who once fought shoulder to shoulder with him. They were certainly no ordinary force. Aster turned back, his face showing a bit of worry as he spoke of a specific name. It was a story involving Deculin. He listened in silence, his white hair stirring slightly in the wind and rain. The headmaster suddenly asked Aster if he knew which mage had baited the wyverns. Aster honestly answered he did not know, which made the headmaster feel his attitude was somewhat insolent. Aster thought to himself that the old man was unerringly perceptive. He briefly wished all the blame could smoothly fall on Deculin. Aster continued listing names, and this time Vimar. The headmaster flinched, not expecting Vimar to be involved. In Aster's mind appeared two fearsome villains, one named Vimar, the other Prizan, a conduit magic engineer. The headmaster then asked Aster if he had any evidence in hand. Aster suspected whether the headmaster truly didn't know or was testing him. The headmaster only replied mysteriously that Aster's manner of speaking was insolent and asked how he knew about them. Aster turned away, silently mulling over what he had just heard. The conversation contained far too much important information. The headmaster remained seated, looking pensive amid the unceasing rain. Next was. The rain kept falling steadily, creating a quiet but tense atmosphere. After a while of silence, Aster clenched his hands and placed them on his knees. He had grasped the issue. An epiphany had just flashed through his mind. Aster told himself he had presented what was necessary. Despite his efforts, he absolutely could not reveal the secret that he was a regressor or the existence of the demonic tome. Aster realized the headmaster's fury was genuine. But the cause was not that his answer was particularly bad. The headmaster posed another question, this time about which mage had been turned into food for the goblins. He looked Aster up and down, feeling the boy's attitude was somewhat rude. Suddenly, Aster gave a strange smile. The headmaster scolded him not to put on that grinning face with eyes like those rotten goblins. Aster hurriedly withdrew his expression and bowed in compliance. He thought to himself that the old man was indeed stubborn and difficult. At that moment, the headmaster had pieced everything together and guessed Aster's intention, to build a vast library, tall as a tower. He confirmed it was a meaningful project. He promised that if Aster left the top floor empty, he would personally fill one wall with precious bookshelves for him. Aster smiled and sincerely thanked the headmaster. Once again, he realized this world ran on ties of blood, homeland, and school. Everything has its price. And the price for entry to the library was set. The headmaster said he would grant it if Aster completed a resolution. Hearing that, Aster silently cursed, knowing the upcoming requirement would not be simple. He asked Aster to open his eyes wide and observe carefully, for sometimes a single eye is enough to see through the world. Aster grinned and replied that he was eager to know the master's demand. But inwardly, he thought the headmaster looked as if he were ready to gouge out his eyes. The headmaster said the minor matter could be discussed later, now there was a more important mission. He tasked Aster with finding a relic capable of creating a magic realm. The item carried many risks but had extraordinary utility, especially the ability to sever space, which was essential for the tower he planned to build. Aster listened attentively, sweat beating lightly. The headmaster explained further, the relic's primary function was to separate space. Thanks to that power, even the teleportation circles in the trial corridors would be completely nullified. It was a kind of magic that even top professors could not decipher, immensely useful for protecting the tower later. However, the problem was how to obtain it. Aster looked surprised and admitted to him that he wasn't really knowledgeable about conduit magic techniques. Hearing that, the headmaster pointed him in a direction. He told Aster to seek out Professor Felina, assuring him she was someone worth trusting. The headmaster warned that although he had agreed not to probe Aster's past, convincing Professor Felina to accept him would still be a great challenge, even for the headmaster. So the headmaster showed Aster a method to follow. He instructed him to do it this way. Aster was surprised by the way the headmaster had advised him. The scene shifted to the next day, under bright sunlight, a stark contrast to the gloomy rainy night before. The majestic view of the Magic Academy unfolded, heralding a new day with new events. Inside the academy, Aster sat quietly reading alone when someone approached from behind. A voice called out, "Hey you." Aster looked up from his book, turning his gaze toward the caller. It turned out to be two classmates, Chinbi and Damien. They ran up excitedly, calling Aster a close friend and saying it had been a long time. Aster asked in surprise what had happened to the two, wondering why they had suddenly grown plump. Chinbi was embarrassed and at a loss for words. Another student came to greet Chinbi and invited him to practice magic together later. Chinbi gladly agreed. Meanwhile, another classmate turned to thank Damien for his efforts in the trial corridor. Damien waved exuberantly, looking pleased with himself. Chinbi explained to Aster that thanks to the information about the bracelet he revealed in the trial corridor, everyone expressed deep gratitude to him. Even their parents had helped Chinbi's family a great deal. Another friend solemnly expressed thanks to Aster. Aster put the book down and humbly said that it wasn't something people needed to thank him for. The group looked at him in surprise, not understanding why. Aster explained that he hadn't forced anyone. It was the friends who had persuaded the others. Chinbi fell silent, pondering Aster's words. He realized that the positive change was entirely the result of his own efforts. Everyone curiously asked about Damien, what had he done in this matter? Chinbi pulled out a chair and sat down, cheerfully inviting everyone to begin their conversation. He said it had been a week since they last met and surely everyone had much to share. Suddenly a voice from behind caught Aster's attention, really? I also have a lot to say. The group's conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a powerful woman with golden hair and violet eyes. She requested a moment of Aster's time. Aster immediately recognized her. It was Professor Felina, the one the headmaster had told him to seek out. The scene moved to another area of the academy. They arrived at Professor Felina's private office. Inside the elegant office, Professor Felina asked Aster if he understood why she had summoned him. Aster calmly replied, guessing it probably wasn't for a counseling session. Professor Felina acknowledged Aster's remark. She sat down, crossed her legs with authority, and declared, I've heard the whole story. Professor Felina stared straight at Aster and fired questions. Are you really a descendant of a war mage from the past? The mastermind behind this entire plot is Vimar, isn't it? Felina sneered, saying they were nothing but scum. In short, anyone linked to Deculin was trash. Aster thought to himself that this matched perfectly with what the prophet had foretold. He recalled his plan, drawing attention in Blander under a false identity as the descendant of a wandering former war mage was extremely risky. He remembered the headmaster's words, the man who had vouched for this identity of his. In Aster's plan, someone had a master who bore a blood feud with both Deculin and Vimar. This circumstance fit perfectly with the scenario he had constructed. Professor Felina said that although many doubts remained, since the headmaster himself had vouched for Aster, she would not pursue it further. However, before that, she fell silent for a moment, her expression shifting slightly. The powerful professor's cheeks flushed unusually pink. Regaining her composure, Felina said that for now she would keep everything confidential for Aster. At least he didn't seem like the type to endanger the academy. She added, and, one more thing. Aster remained respectful and replied formally, yes, Professor. Aster's answer seemed to fluster Felina further. She muttered that she was the professor and he was a student, the age gap between them. Her trailing words made the atmosphere very awkward. Felina mumbled, what the hell is this? The professor looked furious, his eyes reddened, silently cursing Aster as a brat. The air between them grew extremely tense. It seemed Aster's words had touched the professor's anger. The professor bit his lip, trying to maintain a stern expression. But it turned out all of that was only in Professor Felina's mind. She was struggling internally, trying to say things that didn't fit her nature. Finally, she thanked Aster. Thanks to him, the trial hall and the students were safe. Aster was extremely surprised by this sudden gratitude. But he quickly regained his composure, pondering the professor's true purpose. Seeing Aster hesitate, Professor Felina urged him to get straight to the point. Taking the cue, Aster presented his goal, to establish an open library for everyone, and he hoped Professor Felina would donate some of her books. Professor Felina seemed quite pleased with the proposal and agreed at once. She thought to herself that this would be her third academic connection. After the agreement, Professor Felina turned away, signaling that it was time to discuss the main issue. Her expression became more serious than ever. She mentioned an artifact capable of creating a demonic realm and said researching it would take a long time. It was a glove filled with dark magic. Felina believed that although it was very dangerous, Damien could destroy it if necessary. Aster remained silent, listening intently to every word the professor said. However, Felina emphasized that the real danger wasn't the artifact itself, but those who would hunt it down. They were the Forbidden Magic Society, Salvation, an organization of those who use banned magic. Aster seemed to have misheard the name of the organization. Immediately, Felina's tone hardened as she corrected him, warning him not to speak unnecessarily. She explained further that Salvation was an alliance of those who had mastered forbidden magic. Although they operated independently, they shared a common goal. Felina's eyes flashed with determination as she revealed their ultimate aim, to recreate the demonic realm. She also mentioned Prizen, who once possessed the artifact and had ties to the Forbidden Magic Society, but was now dead. And because of that, they would certainly come after Aster to reclaim the artifact. Felina warned that they would be relentless, rivaling the Deculan family. She didn't know what power Aster was hiding, but if he became a target of the Forbidden Magic Society, he might pay with his life. Faced with that weighty warning, Aster only muttered, "Could die, so what," with an oddly calm expression. Contrary to Felina's expectations, Aster merely smirked. He asked back whether a confrontation was inevitable. To him it wasn't a big deal, he would just slaughter them all. Aster flashed a frighteningly confident smile, assuring her he would remember the warning. Professor Felina couldn't help but laugh maniacally. She couldn't believe the arrogance and cruelty of this student. Afterward, Aster summoned dark energy from the glove, officially asking Felina to study the artifact. He placed the glove on the table, an offer she couldn't refuse. Felina, impressed by Aster's ambition yet somewhat disdainful, called him a goblin, but agreed to examine the artifact. Their tense conversation was abruptly cut off by a student who ran in, panic-stricken, calling out Professor Felina's name. The student was out of breath, stammering that an emergency had just occurred at the academy. And the news was, the head of the Deculan family had arrived. Aster's expression grew serious at the name. The news caused a major shock. The entire academy was ordered to tighten security, control entry and exit, and send students back to the dormitories. A carriage was approaching from afar. The luxurious carriage entered the academy grounds, signaling the presence of an extremely powerful figure. Professor Felina, along with Elder Bimar and another man, stood ready to welcome him. The carriage's wheels stopped right in front of them. The coachman was a blindfolded man, exuding mystery and arrogance. Elder Bimar looked at the newcomer with a sharp gaze, while the Deculan head returned a challenging stare. Elder Bimar thought to himself, so this brat is the current head of Deculan. He recalled the rumors about him, a prodigy who earned the title of Archmage and became family head at 30, yet increasingly a tyrant growing more cruel. Elder Bimar did not fully believe the rumors, but one thing seemed certain. He observed the Deculan head still seated in the carriage. By academy tradition, even royalty must disembark and walk, but this one arrogantly refused to set foot on the ground. Yet he humbled himself by playing the coachman, a move that trampled the academy's traditions while preventing others from protesting. Elder Bimar had to admit he was cunning. The Deculan head muttered to himself, as if calculating something. He glanced toward the crowd and asked cryptically, "Still nothing?" Elder Bimar appeared confused. Immediately, the Deculan head sneered, asking if he had heard that the trial hall had been occupied by a bunch of pests. This blatant provocation stunned Elder Bimar. The Deculan head's mockery was like a slap to Elder Bimar's face. He could only grit his teeth, cursing inwardly, "That bastard." Elder Bimar's rage flared. He couldn't understand why the Deculan head dared to come here and openly utter such brazen taunts. He wasn't merely babbling, he was testing his patience in front of everyone. Professor Felina and the long-haired professor beside her were astonished. They hadn't officially revealed the mastermind behind the attack, only a few knew the Deculan family was behind it. The long-haired professor wondered silently what the Deculan head's intent was in stating it so bluntly. The Deculan head curled his lips in a suggestive smile, as if mocking their confusion. He calmly declared he had come to help because the academy seemed incapable. He even boasted that he had personally captured those pests from his own family. A terrifying red murderous aura radiated from him, enveloping the space. Elder Bimar froze when he felt that horrifying killing intent. Then the Deculan head revealed a horrific truth. He said he had eradicated the entire Bimar family, root and branch, and asked the elder whether that flavor suited his taste. It was a vicious confession of his crime. From above, Aster had witnessed the whole scene. He was not surprised, as if he had anticipated the Deculan head's actions. To Aster, the act was unsurprising given Perrin in his past life, a man willing to turn on his own kin for Deculan's sake. Memories of his past life surged back, when Perrin, the Deculan head, had once approached him. Back in the present, Aster felt something was wrong. The timing of the Deculan head's appearance was too coincidental. He had just mentioned the Deculan and Bimar families to Professor Felina last night, and today he had appeared. Aster wondered whether this was luck or a meticulously planned scheme. Aster stood above, looking down at his enemy. He recalled that in his previous life, Perrin was an existence he could never understand. But now it was different. Aster curled his lip into a smile. He might be a towering mountain. But that was only a matter of the present. Aster clenched his fists, his eyes full of resolve. In this life, he might take his head. He tightened his grip, a mad smile appearing on his face. A fateful confrontation was about to begin. The scene shifts to a few days later, the sky is clear and the academy is bustling with activity. People were still abuzz about recent events. The Vimar family's exhibition, featuring Farin, had already caused quite a stir. But Farin, a mysterious man with red eyes, went even further, plotting something far bigger. He declared he would send a direct descendant of the Declan line to the academy as a hostage. It was a powerful political move. In response, whether planned or not, the royal side immediately announced that the third princess would enroll at the academy. However, that was a story for the future. Aster knew that at the earliest they'd enroll next term, or at the latest next year. What mattered now was the festival. Chindi and Damien, Aster's friends, couldn't hide their excitement, cheering in the festive air. It was the Pistinite Festival, a celebration of victory for academy students who had been mobilized during the war. Aster thought the academy treated the hallway incident as equivalent to that, and it was a good excuse to revive the academy's stagnant atmosphere. Perhaps because it was a victory celebration, the academy permitted alcohol at the festival. Students and mercenaries gathered, happily drinking. Only the mercenaries on duty refrained from drinking publicly. Everyone else was celebrating, even arm wrestling. A burly man laughed loudly, boasting of his drinking capacity and challenging anyone to the next drinking contest. Immediately, a purse of coins was slammed onto the table, apparently the prize for the winner. Seeing that, Damien's eyes lit up, he eagerly wanted to join. His companion shouted his name in alarm to stop him. Just then, an announcement rang throughout the academy. The Pistinike Award ceremony was about to begin, and those wishing to attend were asked to gather before the Hall of Wisdom. Hearing the announcement, Aster grabbed Damien by the collar, startling him. Aster dragged Damien away while Chinbi laughed in delight. Aster said whoever had put in the effort deserved recognition. Aster curled his lip in a suggestive smile. It was time to claim their reward. In the hall, the headmaster was offering a few words before the ceremony began. The award ceremony officially commenced. Recipients were asked to come to the podium when their names were called. The first name announced was Dahlia de Denai. A girl with silvery white hair smoothed her hair calmly, appearing very composed. Next was Damien von Blander. He looked rather smug when his name was called. The third was Evelyn de Plancher. A confident red-haired girl looked up. The next name called was Chinbi, Aster's companion. And then Aster's name was announced. He responded with a determined look, ready to step up and receive his reward. Aster stepped up, inwardly assessing Evelyn de Plancher, daughter of the Gladron Trading Company. He sensed something shady about her. Aster couldn't recall anything notable about her from his previous life. Still, by the student's testimony, she was recognized for her contributions. In any case, it was time to receive the prize. Chinbi excitedly held out both hands, ready to take her share. The prize was a top-grade elixir, placed in a glittering, valuable box. The headmaster presented the prize to Aster, expressing the academy's deepest gratitude for his contributions. Aster took the box of elixir, but a mischievous thought crossed his mind. Senior, do I have to return the box? It's not even pretty, it's just junk. As if reading Aster's thought, the headmaster warned sternly, if I find it in the burn pit, I'll burn you with it. Aster only smiled slyly, thinking to himself, oh, then I'll secretly burn it. With that, the award ceremony concluded. Aster and his friends resumed wandering the academy, enjoying the festive atmosphere. Aster thought to himself that they'd been running non-stop, facing countless dangers, while Damien happily ate a skewer, utterly carefree. So today it was fine to relax a bit. The academy looked peaceful and beautiful under the sunset. As night fell, a streak of light shot into the sky, signaling the upcoming display. Moments later, the night sky lit up with splendid, multicolored fireworks. Aster, Chinbi, and Damien all looked up, their eyes reflecting the brilliant lights of the fireworks, amazed and delighted. The three stood side by side, admiring the spectacular fireworks exploding across the night sky. Aster remained practical, thinking it was a bit extravagant, but he couldn't deny how impressive it was. He closed his eyes, seeming to savor this peaceful, beautiful moment. Then Aster suddenly opened his eyes, determination shining in them. A grand thought flashed through his mind, one day. He pictured a future when he built his own tower and held a week-long festival. From the top floor, where he could see the ground, he'd gaze down and witness it himself. And the festival's finale would be the ascension of the sage. Great Sage Aster, who ushered in a new era for the continent. He smiled, thinking a white wyvern would be perfect. The scene snapped back to reality. A large white owl with a scowl perched on the sill of his window. Sitting on his bed, Aster looked at the owl and thought, no, not that kind of white bird. He was clearly imagining the white wyvern from his dream. He removed a carefully tied note from the owl's leg. The note contained only 3 words, old location. After reading it, Aster looked out the window and called loudly, Senior. Aster remarked, calling me first thing after the festival, you're diligent. Even your familiar matches you exactly. Aster descended gracefully, white feathers drifting through the air, creating a picturesque yet mysterious scene. After landing on the ground, Aster quickly moved across the grass. Aster looked around and commented, well, this building has seen better days. He approached an old building. It had once been used by those who handled troublesome matters long ago, but it was now abandoned and forgotten, a perfect spot for secret conversations. Aster poked his head through the door, the owl still on his head, and announced, Senior, I'm here. A familiar voice from inside replied, you're here. The owl flew off Aster's head as he realized that Senior was none other than the academy's headmaster. He was a bit surprised. Aster was even more surprised to find a luxurious office inside the abandoned building. He blurted, what the hell is this? The headmaster explained it was tradition, so he had no choice. The headmaster leisurely took a sip of his drink while his owl perched nearby. He invited Aster, care for a drink? Aster asked what occasion brought them together so early. The headmaster poured a drink and reiterated, didn't I tell you before? I have a favor to ask. Aster recalled, it was the favor he had exchanged for a library pass. The memory of that rainy day resurfaced in his mind. The headmaster folded his arms and said it was a fairly simple request. He handed over a carefully sealed letter and said, deliver this letter to my friend for me. Immediately, Aster's senses warned him something was wrong. He detected the scent of trouble, very annoying trouble. Aster asked where he needed to go. The headmaster explained that he'd asked his old comrades and pinpointed the man's location, someone hiding quite well. Then he revealed the destination, the Hammer'n Great Forest. At the name, Aster broke into a cold sweat and cursed under his breath, damn. The Hammer'n Great Forest, a land preserved since ancient times. It hosted all kinds of monsters, like giant wolves with blood-red eyes, as well as priceless magical ingredients. Aster couldn't help feeling dismayed at having to find someone in a place like that. The headmaster reassured him that it wouldn't be too difficult. Since people lived there, checking a few camps would quickly turn him up. Aster was about to refuse, Senior, I'm sorry, but... When the headmaster interrupted, right. I almost forgot to mention this. He produced a list of rewards he'd prepared for his diligent junior. What caught Aster's eye were 2 top-grade elixirs, 5 high-grade bottles, and 10 mid-grade ones. The headmaster asked again, by the way, what were you going to say after I'm sorry, but? Aster sat there trembling, replaying the unfinished line in his head. Finally, Aster broke into a crazed, radiant smile. He thought he was about to retire from the academy, the price offered was simply too great to refuse.